Woke up primal, starving, yet somehow feast ready. Playboy chief with a loyal tribal entourage. Rivals begging for my favor. Suddenly, I'm the primitive tribe's lord. We ride behemoths, others use rocks. Natural gas beats their wooden drills. Waking to a dying man's circle. Mokfong leads now, he rasped. I'm the chief, this is insane. Relic stolen, old chief fading away. His final strength passed into me. Secrets flooded my brain like lightning. His breathing slowed, time was up. Inherited a mess of primal proportions. System activated, my luck just changed. 100 points for being legendary. Reincarnation system, I'll take both. Life-saving pill confirmed the purchase. I popped the pill into him. He gasped, the tribe stood shocked. 3 days bought, not enough time. Move east, the old man urged. No fire means we all die. I'll bring the fire, I promised. Give me wood and dry fur. They doubted, but I started drilling. Spinning the stick, carving the wood. The tribe watched, holding their breath. Smoke rose, added the thunder. A flame flickered, hope was born. We stepped out into the village. Fire's back, all hail chief. They knelt, the system chimed again. Firemaker achievement, 1,000 points. I bought the healing art immediately. Spells and power surged through me. I returned to finish the job. My hands glowed on his brow. Magic light flooded the dying chief. He woke eyes wide open. Have you attained spiritual insight, son? He's alive, now the real work. Warriors sharpen your blades now. Mountains behind, a narrow path ahead. We build a wall no more. Staring at the ceiling that night. The day's events felt like a haunting, feverish dream. I choked down 2 bitter meals of charred fat and water heavy with river silt. At dawn, White Fang waited by the great dragon caves, just outside our tribal borders. My hunters had already harvested black bamboo, sharpening them into primitive but lethal fishing spears. Cut the ice, and the fish will rise, I told the 50 men gathered there. We each carved a hole in the frozen crust and waited, breathless for a sign. A mouth broke the surface, gasping. I drove my spear down with a sickening thud. The tribe watched, frozen as I reached in the numbing black water with both hands. I hauled a thrashing, 1-meter beast onto the ice and collapsed under its weight. It nearly slid back, but Min Kwang pinned it down before it could escape the surface. The creature went still, and a roar of pure triumph shattered the morning silence. Every man lunged at their holes, spears poised like vipers above the dark, icy water. Laiho's spear struck deep, and he dragged another 1-meter fish from the depths. Food for the winter, he yelled, help me, this monster is dragging me in. Cheers erupted as we hauled in a bounty that changed our fate in an instant. My men were flush with adrenaline, watching the stacks of silver scales grow hot. The fear of starvation vanished, replaced by a reverence that brought Li Ho to his knees. The entire tribe followed, grounding their spears to offer a silent, powerful salute of respect. I felt a heavy wave of responsibility settle over me as the harvest finally slowed. Men carried 5 or 6 fish each, their faces glowing with a newfound, desperate hope. I never imagined such a simple trick could secure our survival so effectively and completely. The old stories of clubbing fish from the banditti seem so impossible anymore. I recall tales of ancient lands where the wildlife was so thick it fed everyone. My wandering thoughts were cut short. I froze. Min Kwang stopped dead beside me. A war party approached. Men with painted faces and hair bound in intricate, high-status knots. These weren't nomads, they were from a great tribe where aesthetics were a show of power. Every braid and pigment was a warning. Clear distinction between warrior and commoner. Leading them was a girl atop a massive, armored beast that made the earth tremble. Clad in snow-white furs, her eyes were colder and brighter than the winter stars. Her sharp gaze projected a ruthless authority that demanded immediate, total submission. Her guards radiated an arrogance that chilled the air more than the ice beneath us. A dragon-scaled beast, Leho whispered. His face turned a ghostly shade of pale. I offered a traditional salute. What brings the high tribe to our humble territory? She dismounted with a predator's grace. I am Changning of the Blue Bird clan. We are merely travelers, she said, though her presence felt like an inevitable invasion. My men held their breath. The Bluebird clan was a legend of Western power. They ruled thousands. I bowed again, masking my fear with a calm, steady gaze. If you are only passing through, then we shall not impede your journey, I said. Wait, she countered, a sharp curiosity dancing in her eyes. How did you catch these? I knew the rules of the wild. You don't refuse a wolf's question. I nodded. I walked her through the simple physics of our ice fishing breakthrough without hesitation. She was brilliant, eyes darting, calculating the strategic value of my every word and tool. She recognized that these bamboo spears represent something far more dangerous than simple luck, small sparks of ingenuity, like the discovery of fire, or what truly reshaped the world. From the first sharpened stone to this spear, we were no longer just animals. Survival in this cutthroat primitive era often comes down to whoever builds the better stick. A basic harpoon looks harmless until it's flying at your chest. Then you realize how lethal it is. This weapon was a total game changer. Suddenly, Trong Nen flashed a grin and asked for a tour. She promised no trouble and zero interest in our food. She wasn't there to raid us. As long as she was around, her bluebird warriors would behave. She just wanted our leader. She wanted guidance from our great chief. Leho gave me a confused look and turned away. He was baffled. What could you possibly want with him? She just laughed it off. She wanted to know if he had more deadly inventions. She was looking for a handout. She pointed at that massive armored beast. Give me the tech, and the dragon is yours. Leho gasped. That monster wasn't just a ride, it was a prehistoric tank. Every predator in the jungle feared it. Having one man our village was finally safe. It was a status symbol. proof that a powerful tribe had our backs. No one would dare harass us again. A blue bird never breaks a promise, she declared. Her painted warrior tried to protest, but she shut him down. One more word, she warned, and I'll have you banned from ever leaving the camp again. He went dead silent. She turned to us, looking genuinely sorry for his outburst. I truly just want to learn. You're looking at the chief, I said flatly. She froze, her brow furrowing in disbelief. You the chief? You're barely a teenager. In my tribe, you'd still be a trainee. I figured she did to know how fast poverty makes you grow up. She quickly regained her cool. Saves me a trip then. Does that spear do anything besides kill fish? Show me your secrets, she pressed. And the armored dragon belongs to you. My heart raced. Riding that beast would be cooler than any supercar from my old life. Deal. I grabbed a spear from my men. It looked like a simple pointed stick. It was just sharpened black bamboo, but I knew the physics. I took a deep breath. I channeled every javelin drill from my high school gym class. I paced back, then charge. Using a reverse grip, I launched at a massive trunk. It sliced through the air. The shaft hummed as it slammed home, burying itself deep into the wood. It sank 3 inches in. The raw power stunned them. Min Kwang, our hunter, knew the potential. He looked at me with a mix of awe and regret. Chief, you really shouldn't he have. I just smiled and waved him off. Trong Nun stood there, eyes wide and jaw dropped. That's a fish spear. That's terrifying. She turned to her man. Let him try it. I handed over a fresh spear. She passed it to the painted warrior, a Koluk. He looked surprised but grabbed it. He was a natural athlete but lacked the proper form. His throw grazed the bark instead of hitting center. Still, the impact was brutal. It shredded a huge chunk of wood before thudding 10 centimeters into the dirt. The guy was a powerhouse. He looked embarrassed by the miss, but she didn't care. She ran to the tree, inspecting the deep gouge left in the wood. The crater was 1 centimeter deep. Her eyes sparkled. A Koluk traced the gash. Stunned, he yanked the spear out, feeling the vibration. Impossible. How is this stick so strong? If our warriors had these, he muttered, the carnage would be absolute. His excitement turned into cold calculation. This would change everything for us. A Koluk was beaming. With these, no local tribe would ever touch us again. Trong Nine patted the dragon. He's yours. And for your help, I'll give you more. She offered the things we lacked most. My mind went to our empty storehouse. We desperately needed salt and furs. The spring air was still biting cold. The frost was a silent killer. If we didn't act, the biting winter would claim us long before any monster could. One slip-up spells the end for a small clan. I weighed my options, then finally signaled my agreement to her terms. Trong Nen nodded, her face set. She would hand over the beast now. The salt and pelts would come later. She seemed on edge, her cheeks flushed as she insisted they were never the type to be thieves or scavengers. Her people had never been the type to plunder. If they were, they wouldn't have been driven out like dogs. Now they were refugees, surrounded by hostile forces that poked and prodded at their borders every single day. No matter how strong they once were, being the new arrivals meant everyone else wanted to crush them. The locals were sharks in the water looking to swallow them whole. Their situation was becoming truly desperate. I led her back to our camp. She stopped, staring at the spiked wooden fortifications we had recently erected. She ran a hand over the timber and offered 300 furs and 30 kilos of salt for our secrets. My men gasped at the fortune she was offering, but I kept my eyes locked on hers, unmoved. She wanted to start with the walls. Her people were many, and their crops needed serious protection from raiders. I walked her through the triple-layered design, showing her exactly how we held the line against intruders. Then she stopped dead. She had one more condition. She wanted my entire tribe to merge hers immediately. Her eyes were desperate, searching for any sign of surrender in mine as she made her final pitch. I shut her down instantly. My people might be few, but we have our own will and independence. She pushed back, arguing that they had a totem and resources while we had nothing but dirt and struggle. I told her we would find our own way. My calm demeanor seemed to catch her completely off guard. She was visibly irritated by my refusal, clearly unaccustomed to being told no by someone in my position. Fine, she said. She would bring the payment. There was a flicker of genuine intrigue in her dark gaze. She gathered her guards and vanished into the trees. My second-in-command, Li Ho, looked incredibly pale. He was convinced they would come back with spears instead of salt once they realized we were a threat. I ignored his panic and started weaving a makeshift shield from tall grass, wood, and thick vines. I handed the meter-wide square to him and told him to brace for impact right in front of me. I hurled a bamboo spear straight at him. The grass held, his arms were numb, but he was alive. He was still shaken. If they took our rejection as an insult, we were as good as dead. I told him we needed to move fast. I summoned the system and spent 100 achievement points on iron. I managed to pull 2 iron shovels from the void, cursing the system's stingy daily limits of 3 items. It was a ridiculous restriction, but I did not have time to argue with a ghost in my head. Liho stared at the metal like it was a gift from the gods. Only the massive empires had steel. I did not bother explaining the magic. I told them these were for digging, not for praying to. He was horrified. To him, using such a masterpiece for dirt was a sin against the heavens themselves. I shut down the debate with a single look. I am the chief, and I said we are digging. I marked a 2-meter circle beneath a massive tree and stepped into the center to begin the work. The first strike of the shovel sent a shockwave through the crowd. They watched like I was performing a miracle. Whether it was the steel or the fear of me, they started working like men possessed by a demon. Every man with a shovel dug as if his life depended on it, sweat pouring down their dusty faces. 6 meters down, the earth turned amuck. By 13 meters, we finally hit something solid and wet. A shout erupted from the pit. Water, the men below were scrambling to get out as it bubbled up. We hauled them up, 4 mud-caked shadows, just as the sound of rushing water filled the deep air. The level rose rapidly, smelling of fresh rain and deep earth. It was pure, mountain-fed spring water. The camp went wild. I lowered a leather pouch on a vine and took the first long sip. It was ice cold and sweet. Liho grabbed the next bag and practically drowned himself in it. His eyes nearly popped out of his head. He went from shock to pure, unadulterated joy in a heartbeat. He started howling like a madman, just as the second crew struck a vein in the next pit. Just like the last well, the crowd erupted as Lihu grabbed a bucket and bolted toward my hut. Sprinting, he screamed for everyone to fetch their jars, crediting me with finding our new lifeblood. The tribe flooded out from every cave and shack, racing toward the perimeter wall in a frantic surge. Revitalized by the cool, sweet water, we broke out the day's catch and our prize pork belly stores. We sat by the fires, grease popping and voices rising in song, right up until the next morning's meal. I headed to the eastern cave where Lihu and Min Kwang stood staring at the slumbering earth dragon. The beast ignored them, and Lihu looked defeated, sighing about the bluebird girl leaving no instructions. Without her password, the monster was useless, and I realized taming beasts required specific, ancient commands. I recalled a taming skill buried in my system's shop and quickly pulled up the interface to check. My heart sank. The basic skill cost 500 points, essentially draining every resource I had left. 500 points for a starter skill felt like a robbery, but looking at that lazy dragon, I fumed. You have to spend money to make money, so I pulled the trigger and bought the taming ability instantly. New knowledge flooded my mind, and I stepped toward the beast, whispering a strange, guttural chant. I spoke the nonsense words, Tululuhululu, while the others watched me with pure confusion. To their absolute shock, the massive creature shifted, its heavy eyes locking onto mine with sudden, sharp interest. Emboldened, I repeated the chant, and the dragon froze before slowly inching its massive head toward me. It sniffed me, huffing like a steam engine as if verifying my scent, before letting out a low, rhythmic grunt. I reached out, patting its thick hide, and the beast leaned into my touch like a loyal, overgrown hound. My men looked at me like I was some kind of freak. Their chief was now a master of monsters. Then the unthinkable happened, shattering everything they knew about the wild and dangerous earth dragon. The beast knelt, wagging its tail, practically begging me to climb aboard its armored, prehistoric back. Fighting back the adrenaline, I hoisted myself up, patted its neck, and commanded it toward the spiked wall. It settled by the gate, a living fortress that would keep the forest's many nightmares at a safe distance. I rounded up 10 men to clear the brush and build a massive stable for our new scaly guardian. Under my direction, we hammered out a thatched shelter in less than an hour, much to their amazement. As the crowd dispersed, I pulled Min Kwang aside to prep for the hunt. We needed meat and fast. I told him the prey was already closed, but he just shook his head, calling the local antelope too cunning. He insisted they were impossible to catch, but I just smiled, knowing they'd walk right into my trap. The men shared a look of pure doubt, so I kept my secrets until the sun began to rise. We prepped salt, leather straps, and vines, which I braided into thick ropes and heavy, durable netting. Before dawn broke, Lihu was at my door, waking me to meet 50 eager, able-bodied men. They carried salt bags, vine nets, and their 5-pronged bamboo spears, ready for whatever crazy plan I had. I made sure they grabbed 2 iron shovels before we marched toward the valley Min Kwang had suggested. Using a torch in the pre-dawn gloom, I scanned the area for signs of where the herbivores usually grazed. I picked a thick patch of grass with minimal tracks and gathered everyone around to start the work. I traced a massive rectangle, 8 meters by 2, and told the men to start digging like their lives depended on it. With 50 bone knives and our iron shovels, we excavated a massive pit in less than an hour's time. We laid branches across the mouth and draped the vine nets over them, hiding the dark void beneath. My men were baffled, so I ordered them to cover the nets with fresh grass until the trap vanished. Once the camouflage was perfect, we had a seamless green floor that looked just like the surrounding meadow. I had them sprinkle the salt water over the grass, making sure the brine soaked deep into the bait. After dozing the surrounding 10 meters, we scrambled in the thick brush to wait in total silence. Minutes later, 30 antelopes emerged, and 2 of them immediately caught the scent of the salt on the wind. The whole herd swarmed the salted patch, shoving each other aside to get a taste of the treated grass. We watched in awe as 3 of them lunged for the center, disappearing instantly into the hidden earth. One by one, the antelopes plunged, hitting the pit like heavy stones, sinking into deep, dark water. Only 7 escaped the trap. My people watched, breathless and paralyzed by the sheer violence of the scene. The carnage stunned me. I never imagined these creatures would gamble their lives for a single salty leaf. 50 men closed in on the survivors, forcing the remaining few to leap into the waiting abyss below. The pit became a thrashing sea of fur and tangled vines, every limb snagged in a natural net. They were paralyzed, stuck as if in quicksand. From the first shovel hit to this, only 2 hours passed. Their survival instincts were pathetic, barely half as sharp as the wild animals I remembered from my past. It made sense, though. These beasts had never seen a human trap, let alone one this deadly. 30 captures had the tribe roaring in triumph. I immediately ordered the next phase of our makeshift fortress. We erected a jagged perimeter of thorns and thick brambles encircling our new, terrified wealth and wood. 30 animals. I rubbed my chin, feeling like the world's most pathetic rancher with such a tiny herd. That night, the celebration fire rode. I sat with a mutton leg, the grease coating my tired hands. I craved the old world flavors, cumin chili and the sharp kick of black pepper on roasted meat. An ice-cold beer would have been heaven. Instead, I had nothing but salt, smoke, and bitter longing. The meal felt empty, great meat, but no soul. I stared at the well water and nearly broke down. Our survival diet needed a revolution. I looked at my lieutenants and told them we hunted dawn. Their eyes lit up, expecting more antelope. I shook my head, planning for something much smaller and faster. We were going after the primitive ancestors of the chicken, fast, flighty, and incredibly difficult to pin down. I told the men to gather vines and bamboo, no spears this time, just cleverness and patience. We needed thorns and a massive fish, sliced into tiny, tempting morsels to serve as our lethal bait. They looked at me like I'd lost my mind. The next morning, we split our forces 2 ways. I led 40 men toward the thickets, carrying nothing but light gear and a strange sense of hope. We reached the hunting grounds and I unwrapped the fish slices from their raw, bloody leather casing. I scattered the bait, then folded leaves into tiny, triangular funnels held together by sharp wooden spikes. I tucked the fish inside the leaf cones and dropped them across the dirt like little green landmines. 200 traps were set. Now, we just had to wait for nature to take the bait. We vanished into the tall grass. Moments later, the first rustle of feathers broke the silence. Huge birds with primitive bone crests emerged. A gold mine of protein was walking right into my hands. The flock was massive. My heart hammered as they discovered the first few pieces of the fish. A feeding frenzy erupted. They swarmed the leaf bowls. Driven mad by the scent of the fresh meat, they struck fast, but as they bit down, the trap's design worked its cruel, simple magic. The thorns acted as hinges, snapping the leaves over their heads like heavy, blinding executioner hoods. Blinded and confused, the birds stumbled in circles, unwilling to drop the food but unable to see. My men watched in awe, convinced I'd used black magic. I gripped my net ready to move. I gave the signal and screamed. We charged from the grass like a pack of starving wolves. Within 10 minutes, 100 birds were tied up. It was the most successful harvest we'd ever seen. We marched home as heroes, every hunter burdened by the weight of 3 or 4 fat jungle fowl. If we kept them in the dark, they'd suffocate. We needed a massive enclosure, and we needed it fast. I rallied the entire tribe to weave a giant coop. Everyone realized this was the key to our future. Every able-bodied person worked the branches, weaving a prison for our feathered prize with feverish intensity. In 30 minutes, a 9-foot-tall structure spanning 200 square meters rose from the dirt. We secured the birds, and I retreated to my cave. It was a bleak, empty hole in the rock. A chief living on straw and animal hides. I felt like a fraud in my own kingdom. My head throbbed. I had to prioritize. We were surviving, but I wanted us to actually live. At first light, the mission changes. 10 men are going back out to bring in the sheep. I mobilized 20 warriors. Mixed mud and bamboo. Dax stones for defense. The dragon tribe approached. They want women terror. 600 savages attack. 120 fighters. Leo offered life. I prepare our stand. Build a massive wall. Stone, wood, and vines. 2-meter spears were ready. Practice spear throwing daily. Accuracy became deadly fast. Hunters, they are here. Saw their painted faces. Primal demons stood there. Chief demanded our women. Surrender them or die. I refused to surrender. No movies, just survival. They charged with fury. I signaled the strike. 90 spears flew out. They stopped completely shocked. Frontline collapsed instantly. 30 died in seconds. Panic caused a rut. 1/3 fell in chaos. Third wave hit hard. Spears pinned them down. Chief signaled a retreat. 100 stones crushed. Leo wanted blood. I held the line. Patience wins brutal wars. Wait for their spirit. Sorcery, the chief shrieked. They abandoned their wounded. Capture them, I roared. We hunted the invaders. Leo had chick. Captured their fallen leader. Offered a mercy deal. Pay double for lives. Decline, and I'll walk over your corpses to take 9 myself. Your choice. Coat day buckled. Any other tribe would have executed the prisoners and pillaged immediately. We broke the mighty dragons. In under 30 minutes, they were a joke. I watched Min Kwang loot the dead, feeling a cold, hollow disappointment. He found an obsidian rod, dense, icy, and forged from the heart of a star. Min Kwang offered it up. Tribal law dictates the chief takes the first prize. This wasn't iron. It had the heft and chill of something truly ancient. I swung it, the metal screaming through the air with lethal, predatory grace. Back in my cave, I summoned the system's glowing interface once more. 19,800 points, 200 more. And I unlocked the Genesis art. I found a mundane task, crafting furniture, a small price for such power. I sent Lei Ho for timber and gathered the elders to watch me work. If they couldn't hunt, they'd manufacture. I'd give the old ones a purpose. Passing down these skills ensured the tribe would thrive long after I'm gone. The elders were desperate to be useful, clutching at every word I spoke. I set to work my saw and chisel, biting deep into the seasoned wood. Joints aligned perfectly. Within an hour, a sturdy four-leg table stood ready. I finished a stool next. The silent tribe watched like I was summoning magic. I sat and laid out 10 pairs of chopsticks. The message hit them instantly. Lio's eyes burned with a dangerous ambition. Chief, teach me this craft. I handed over the tools and sent them into the night to practice. The points tallied. Finally, I traded my soul's currency for the Genesis art. This wasn't just skill. It was raw sorcery, the same power that saved a Kong. A torrent of forbidden knowledge surged into my mind, burning with ancient secrets. Healing and growth techniques fused with my Da, unlocking my true, terrifying potential. I felt my frame expand, my muscles hardening into something far beyond human. I tested my strength on a thick plank. It disintegrated into fine dust. I threw a punch at nothing, the air crackling under my newfound absolute power. The interface bloomed with elemental paths, fire, storm, shadow, and even beast taming. But power won't feed a tribe. We needed to dominate the very soil. Livestock was a start, but true security meant taming the wild, stubborn flora. I recalled the wild onions and mushrooms, the earth's hidden, quiet bounty. I tasked Men Kwang with gathering every sprout and fungus he could find. He returned by dawn, hauling rotting logs heavy with thick, edible growth. Keep them in the shade, I ordered. Water them twice every single day. We planted the onions next, then I asked about the mountain's wild boars. Min Kwang grinned. Over 100 boars were roaming the high eastern peaks. If they can thrive there, that mountain is a goldmine of meat and hide. Tomorrow we hunt, I said, but first we build their stone prison. I mobilized the youth, mapping out an enclosure on the western slope. We built downwind, keeping the stench of the beasts far from our water. Stone walls, thatched roofs. I wanted a fortress that no animal could break. We hauled jagged thorns from the north to line the inner perimeter. A boar's hide is thick, but my planning is even thicker. The trap is set. Soon, even the wild will bow to my world. Pushing our luck with extra security, I led 15 elite trackers toward the eastern peaks at first light. Our objective wasn't a kill, it was intel. I needed to find whatever was fueling that massive sounder. Min Kwang guided us through the dense undergrowth until we hit a wall of tangled vines and thorns. He signaled for silence, then dropped low. He carefully parted the brush, revealing the hidden clearing beyond. The gray dawn suddenly flared with light. My heart hammered as I saw the ground alive with movement. Hundreds of tusks glinted in the shadows. The sheer number of beasts froze the breath in our lungs. We lay motionless for over an hour. Finally, the alpha grunted, shifting the heavy mass of the pack. A monster with ivory tusks led them in the deeper thicket. The others followed like a dark tide. We trailed their ruckus through the brush until the sound of frantic cheering filled the humid air. I crept forward on hands and knees, peeling back the leaves to find a massive opening ahead. Instead of mud, I saw stalks of gold swaying in the breeze. My heart leaped. It was wild maize. This wasn't a manicured farm crop, but the genetic data in my head confirmed its incredible potential. 2 harvests a year, sweet milk corn in spring, hardened grain for winter, flour in the summer. Discovering this grain was a bigger victory for our survival than 1,000 slaughtered wild boars. We waited for the last pig to retreat before I burst into the field, adrenaline surging through me. I snatched a cob, stripping the rough husk to reveal 10 centimeters of tiny, resilient yellow pearls. This is maize, it's life, I told my confused men, trying to explain its untapped nutritional power. Well, Hugh took a massive bite and immediately spat it out. It's like chewing on pebbles, he grumbled. I laughed, explaining the magic of boiling and milling. The others just stared, unable to see the future. We repurposed our piglet cages, stuffing them full of the unhusked gold until the wicker frames groaned. Under my direction, we loaded hundreds of pounds of corn, each man carrying a heavy, hopeful burden. Back home, I saw the hull, small grains for the mortar, the largest, healthiest seeds for the soil. I dreamed of giant cobs while preparing the first porridge. By noon, the camp smelled like heaven. I ordered 20 chickens slaughtered, simmered with wild mushrooms and bamboo in a fragrant lotus leaf broth. The tribe feasted on the rich stew until they were dazed. Afterward, I led the men to the coop. 200 eggs sat nestled in the dry straw. We gathered them with the care of diamond merchants. Don't break a single one, I warned. Tomorrow we head back out to bring home the real bacon. Before the sun touched the horizon, 50 hunters were armed and ready, carrying our specialized bamboo bait. We wrapped the fermented shoots in grass, mixing in the scent of wild rape blossoms and mushrooms. The war party moved like ghosts toward the cornfield, the air thick with the smell of the hunt. I chose a wide flat and ordered the men to dig 3 massive, strategic pits in the earth. We linked them with narrow channels, creating a funnel that led straight into an inescapable death trap. We camouflaged the pits with brush and scattered the irresistible bait over the top of the hidden holes. We vanished into the tall grass. The scent of the fermented shoots acted like a siren's call. The sounder erupted in squeals, charging blindly toward the trap, lured by the promise of easy food. It was a massacre of gravity. The lead boars plummeted into the pits, unable to stop their momentum. The middle of the pack was shoved in by the weight of those behind, creating a chaotic pile. We emerged with heavy clubs, blocking the only escape route and driving the stragglers into the pit. We caught 66 beasts. The men worked in pairs, hauling the heavy, squealing prizes back to camp. The tribe went wild at the sight of the meat. We ushered the boars into the reinforced pens. Watch them like hawks, I told you. Use the clubs if they try to ram the walls. Feed them the mountain bamboo and the wild corn. We need them fat and we need them docile. I was planning our next harvest when I spotted movement near the perimeter of the maize field. 20 strangers in animal pelts stood outside our walls, clutching jars of salt and bundles of fur. They were the Man-Long tribe, here to pay the ransom. I told Min Kwang to release them. Get out, I snapped. Moments later, Min Kwang returned, scratching his head. Chief, more strangers are at the gate. Chief Mufeng, it's me, a voice cried. Someone rushed toward the entrance with frantic, inexplicable energy. I couldn't have fathomed her excitement. Changning turned, pointing at several armored ground dragons trailing behind her. Ivy kept my promise. Here are the skins also. I'm here for guidance. Where are those Man-Long people from? Why did you skin them, she asked. I detailed the Man-Long tribe's horrific atrocities to a stunned Changning, all for some skins and salt. Before I could speak, Min Kwang blurted, they stole our sacred fire, too. But our chief taught us how to create it. Changning gasped, could you teach me that secret as well? She waved her people forward, presenting bundles of hides to show her sincerity. I smiled and finally nodded. Follow me, I said suddenly. A warrior behind her screamed, Princess, stop, we were here for wisdom, not trouble. The man went silent. Changning entered our village, but once past the defenses, she froze in absolute shock. The 2-meter-high fortifications, rain catchment basins, and strange wooden tools left her completely breathless and utterly stunned. What shocked her most was a massive wall nearby. She heard a chaotic chorus of boars squealing from within. There were at least 50. Clearly, none of these things existed during her last visit to our tribe. I signaled White Fang, who was nearby. Go and show the sister how we summon the sacred flame. White Fang gathered dry twigs and animal fur. Changning tracked every single movement with predatory focus. Smoke rose, then a fire erupted. That's it? It's really that simple? She asked, her voice filled with wonder. She tried it herself and succeeded instantly. In the name of the Bluebird tribe, please join us. I'll recommend you as our seer in the alliances. Seers hold the highest, most untouchable rank imaginable. They answer to no one, but receive the best treatment. She looked at me with desperate, hopeful anticipation. I just smiled and shook my head. My people have food. We prefer the quiet life of the forest. She tried to argue, but I waved her off. If you have nothing else, you should probably leave now. Changning blushed. Forgive my offense, she whispered, bowing. Will you teach me about this water vessel instead? The bluebirds were large, but clean water was their biggest hurdle. I nodded toward the deep shaft. It's a well, dig deep and the earth gives clean water. I explained the technique to a fascinated Changning. If only you'd join us, she sighed. But can you teach me weapons? I'll give 100 pounds of salt. Let me think. She went silent. I wasn't deciding which weapon, but how much power was safe to share. The bow and arrow, I decided. I called Li Hu and Min Kwang to watch the demonstration closely. It was our simplest design, but our most vital asset. I let her guards inside to keep the peace. I didn't want any misunderstandings turning violent. I sent Min Kwang for black bamboo from the North Mountain. In front of my cave, I prepared to craft. Holding the bamboo, I turned to her with absolute gravity. I'll teach you, but never use this against us. The air grew heavy. No one dared to breathe. My men heard the hidden warning. This weapon could one day destroy everything we have worked to build. Changning froze, then her eyes lit up. She nodded vigorously, placing a hand over her heart in solemnity. I swear by our totem, these arrows will never aim at you. If I lie, we shall perish. This design would be our most common weapon. I watched Changning closely to gauge her reaction. I allowed her guards to enter, preventing any tension from spiraling into a deadly, unnecessary confrontation. I ordered Min Kwang to harvest black bamboo right there. I began shaping the future of our warfare. Gripping a 6-foot bamboo pole, I looked her in the eye. I'll teach you this, but listen well. I hope this weapon never points back at my home. It is a tool for survival, not betrayal. If you can guarantee our safety, I will share the secret. The weight of my words chilled the air. No one moved. Li Hu and Min Kwang sensed the danger. This bow could eventually threaten our existence. Changning was stunned, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Then, a sudden realization sparked in her eyes. She nodded frantically, her phoenix-like eyes shining with awe. She understood the power I was handing her. Touching her chest, she pointed to the sky. I swear by the bluebird, we will never betray you. I vow on the bluebird tribe's sacred honor. My arrows shall never target the Chuang people. Impossible, they mocked, dismissing me. I signaled silence, splitting wood. Fire softened the stubborn timber. Earth helped me bend it. Sinew anchored the new curve. None doubted the weapon's power. Form first, then we eat. Stew steam broke their pride. Mushrooms tasted like pure salvation. The rigid Scots finally yielded. They feasted without any restraint. I bore holes through wood. The dark bow was finished. How does it actually work? I sharpened a 1-meter reed. See the distant white bloom. I inhale, aiming with intent. The shaft hissed, hitting home. They witnessed a lethal revolution. Reach had become the killer. The Scouts felt bone deep fear. sir. No one can survive that. We need this, they whispered. Nin saw the world change. This was a mere toy. Real armor would stop it. I kept the lethal secrets. May I try? Nin asked. She mirrored my killing stance. I corrected her lethal aim. Impact brought her sudden joy. We've learned too much already. She pledged her tribe's gratitude. We'll return for your mastery. What animals do you herd? Stags and curved horn cattle. Bring me salt and hides. They disappeared into the forest. Train our strongest men now. This bow is just bait. I lied to her face. The old ways are dead. They begged for my guidance. We need lighter, moldable vessels. Find the river's gray clay. We needed reverbed silt. At dawn, I grabbed my bow and led a dozen men out. Kwong led us southeast through the wolf woods. Luckily, we did T-spot any predators at first. The riverbank was thick muck. I dug down 20 centimeters into the dark, heavy sludge. The gray mud shifted to a soft golden hue at 30 centimeters deep. Losing its gloom, I sought silt but found prime yellow clay instead. A potter's stream hidden in the bank. This clay promised tough, smooth pottery with a striking black finish. I held it up high. Quickly bagged this up. I told the men. Kwong led the charge, filling our leather sacks. We shouldered the heavy loads and began the trek back, retracing our steps through the brush. Suddenly, Kwong stopped dead. He signaled us to freeze, his eyes scanning the thick, green wall. We crouched low as a rhythmic rustling grew louder. Something massive was moving nearby in silence. He peeked through the grass, his face turning pale. He parted the stalks with trembling hands. A collective gasp escaped us. A colossal python, head raised high, was gliding through the weeds. It moved like a heavy ship through water, even from a distance. Its size was utterly terrifying. It looked 7 meters long, a prehistoric titanoboa. The name flashed through my mind like a warning. Nobody moved. Kwong's hand was frozen on the grass, fearing the slightest sound would bring death. We held our breath as the beast surged past. It was locked onto its own distant prey. It vanished into the shadows. We exhaled in relief and hurried forward, burdened by our clay. We didn't get far. Kwong stopped again, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated cold terror. It's back, he hissed. I ordered everyone to drop the clay and form a defensive circle. Back to back, we sat low. The grass hissed again, followed by heavy, wet thudding sounds. Kwong peeked out. The python was there, but gray shadows were leaping and snapping at it. The snake and a wolf pack were fighting directly across our only path back to camp. The battle raged 30 meters away. A dozen wolves swarmed the giant snake like hungry locusts. The python thrashed, but the wolves were relentless. Low growls echoed as they tore into it. The wolves won. The forest giant lay broken. The scent of raw blood filled the air. We stayed frozen, the stench of the kill drifting toward us. No one dared to even breathe. Then a snap, someone shifted. The pack froze, their bloody muzzles turning instantly toward our hiding spot. They snarled, eyes locking onto us. Kwong and the men stood, gripping their spears with white knuckles. I screamed at the beasts, a desperate attempt to scare them. My head throbbed with pure regret. It didn't work. They fanned out, lowering their bodies to surround us in a deadly, coordinated circle. I handed the iron spade to Kwong. 20 wolves bared their teeth, ready to tear us apart. Is this where I die? I wondered. 20 wolves snarled. My heart hammered as I drew my bow. Don't panic when they charge, I whispered. Wait for my signal. Hold the line at all costs. Aim for the eyes and noses. Strike their ribs if you can. Stay close and don't break. The alpha was a monster, scared, massive, and clearly the one who would lead the first strike. Kwong hit his nose with the iron. The rest of you, Dunny, leave the circle, no matter what. The alpha roared and lunged. Kwong swung the spade, the air filled with the sound of combat. The wolf blocked the iron with its paws, dodging the spears of the terrifying, fluid grace. Kwong was fast, though. He slammed the spade down, knocking the massive beast into the dirt. The alpha whimpered. 3 more wolves charged. The leader recovered, fixating its yellow eyes on Kwong. It realized Kwong was the greatest threat. It ignored the others, preparing for a final, lethal spring. I saw my opening. I pulled the bowstring to my ear, focusing every ounce of my will. I let fly. The arrow hissed through the air, catching the alpha as it prepared to kill. The beast tumbled. The pack stopped mid-charge, their coordination shattered by their leader's sudden, agonized scream. They wavered, looking at their fallen king. The fear we felt had finally shifted to the predators. Lunging through the frenzy, I snatched the iron bar from Min Kwong and delivered a bone-shattering sweep. A sickening crunch echoed. The alpha's thrashing stopped instantly, its dying roar cut short by cold silence. It convulsed in the dirt, coughing crimson. Driven by madness, the pack went absolutely feral. Charging again. Teeth flashed as they lunged, a few dived straight for us, their eyes burning with primal hunger. I rolled across the dust, parrying a wolf with steel, then touched the dying leader's mangled neck. I smeared warm blood on my face in 5 jagged streaks. I roared at the pack, looking like a demon. Terrified by the gore, the wolves fled. I collapsed, drained of every ounce of my remaining strength. Min Kwong noticed it then. Broken bamboo row buried deep in the alpha's left eye. Still bleeding, he pulled the shard out and began skinning the beast expertly, though his voice was thick with worry. Chief, the bow is lethal. Why hand it to those bluebird girls? They might raid us next. I gave a wary laugh. No bow, no salt. Besides, she swore a sacred oath on the wild horse. She is their future leader. If she breaks a totem oath, her bloodline will never be trusted again. Min Kwang's eyes lit up a totem oath. When do we get one? Our time is coming, I promised. The men made quick work of the kills. Wolf and python meat were packed into baskets for the tribe. We returned home carefully. I ordered yellow clay brought to my cave to begin our first pottery. I built a turntable from timber and prepared some crude wooden shaping tools for the new craft. We dug a 2-meter square kiln and lined it with layers of stone and wet mud. I left air vents in a chimney for the smoke. By sunset, the primitive oven was finally standing. I told Min Kwang to dig a charcoal pit while the first batch of wood started to cure. I handled the first pile of timber, then let the boys finish the rest of the heavy work. Next morning, I ate quickly, desperate to replace our heavy, clumsy stone pots with real clay vessels. I summoned my lieutenants today. I teach you the art of fire and earth pottery for survival. You'll use these for storage and cooking. White Fang was skeptical, looking at the stone pots. Why change? These stone ones are strong, I smiled, because these are lighter and hold much more. Today, you learned to make something versatile. I worked the yellow clay until it was perfectly smooth. I threw the clay onto the wheel, adding a little water to knead it until it was supple. I kicked the wheel into motion, my fingers danced, and an oval mass rose from the spinning mud. I narrowed the neck, a jar appeared out of thin air, stunning the tribe into total silence. I smoothed the walls then while they watched with absolute focus. The vessel was finally perfect. I placed the wet jar in the shade to dry. It was ready for the firing process. Clay takes days. Meanwhile, I accessed the system and spent 100 points for bow technology. The blueprints for the composite bow were surgical, measured down to a single centimeter for precision. 1 centimeter is about a pinky nail's width. I carved a bamboo ruler and gathered my materials. Get the dark bamboo and animal sinew. We're building real heat now, I told the team. Construction began. Even with the system's blueprints, the 2-piece bow required absolute, perfect craftsmanship. I checked every strip of bamboo. Each piece had to match its counterpart with surgical alignment. I pressed the limbs together with force. They clicked into place perfectly. Then came the heat shaping. We used heavy stones to set the curve and wrap the grip in python skin for durability. The challenge was the seamless fit. I had the men follow my lead, crafting their own. For 3 days, the hunters practiced tirelessly. Under my guidance, their accuracy became terrifyingly lethal. Their skills skyrocketed. I pulled my leaders aside. We need a wall, a real defense for us. It might seem unnecessary now, but safety is just an illusion. They stayed silent, knowing the risks. No one wanted to be raided again. Fear provided the drive. The tribe began hauling stone. They gathered boulders from the south ridge. Every heavy stone was a brick in our future. We dug deep into the mountain, moving the earth to build a fortress that would endure. We hit the outer perimeter to raise a defensive wall over 3 meters high and a meter thick. This massive project forced me to mobilize the entire hunting party, taking 5 grueling days to complete. We reinforced the exterior with mulberry and elm trees, creating a thicket that would stop any beast cold. Such a fortification was unheard of in our history. Afterward, I prioritized 3 tasks. First, mine more clay. Second, scout for edible wild plants. And third, see if we could capture wolf cubs to domesticate. At dawn, I led 30 hunters out, leaving 20 behind to drill with their bows for tribal defense. 20 eager young recruits followed us to gain experience. This time, Handlu took point instead of Min Kwang. Handlu's archery had become legendary, making him the tribe's top marksman, second only to me. In a dense thicket, I spotted a patch of vibrant green leaves and yanked them up. Wild carrots. I brushed off the dirt and handed one Handlu, who looked like he was facing execution. He crunched down with his eyes shut, braced for the worst. I laughed at his sheer, dramatic terror. I told him it was just a vegetable, not poison. Handlu chewed twice, then snapped his eyes open. Chief, this is sweet, he shouted. I asked why he ate it so readily. Handlu turned serious. He said the elders told him you saved the tribe from death and gave them a reason to hope. They said if you give an order, I just follow it. His loyalty left me momentarily stunned. I shook it off and ordered the harvest. We needed to cultivate these back at the village immediately. The carrots are year-round crops and packed with far more nutrients than any other wild greens we find. Once finished, we reached the river. With our experience, the digging went much faster this time. We needed clay for a new kiln to fire pottery for the tribe and for future trade. We loaded up the clay and headed back, but before clearing the grass, we spotted several deer. Handlu signaled the group to drop. He quietly drew his bow while kneeling, aiming at the herd. The rest followed suit. On my command, they loosed a volley that brought down 5 deer instantly. I waved for everyone to stay hidden. My analysis suggested that wolves were migrating here following the prey. I decided to use the fresh deer blood as bait to lure the pack out of hiding. Handlu crouched low, staring into the brush. The hunters were ready, but the recruits looked visibly shaken. As the wolves emerged to feast, our group of 50 moved in silently to surround the entire pack. Before we closed in, a wolf let out a piercing howl. The pack froze and bared their teeth. They growled, but as I stepped forward with my iron shovel, their aggressive posture suddenly vanished. They began to whimper and back away. Do even the wild beasts fear the chief? The men whispered. I decided to test a theory and mimicked a wolf's howl to summon their leader for a talk. A gray alpha stepped forward with its tail tucked, letting out a low, submissive cry in response. I demanded several pups in exchange for the deer. If they refused, I threatened to destroy them. My intimidation worked. I walked away with 5 fluffy cubs while the alpha took the meat. To the Shenju people, this was a miracle. I could see myself becoming an icon in their eyes. On the way home, we bagged 6 more moose and 4 deer, solidifying our haul. Bearing fangs and claws, the pack snarled as my hunting party drew their bows in unison. Shovel in hand, I approached the wolves. My presence alone turned their savage growls into whimpers. Their aggression melted into submission. Even wild beasts know a true alpha when they see one. "So, you do fear me?" I whispered. I reached back for those old beast-taming instincts. Mimicking a guttural howl, I signaled for their leader to step out and negotiate our terms. A massive gray wolf emerged, tail tucked low as it let out a long, submissive cry. I demanded 5 cubs in exchange for the carcasses. Refusal meant the death of their entire pack. Through threats and bribery, I secured 5 adorable, fluffy cubs as the alpha wolf retreated. The Kwong people watched, stunned. I was becoming something more than a leader to them. On our journey back, we brought down 6 massive elk and 4 more mountain goats. Returning with the kill, I dragged those snarling wolf pups straight into the shadow of the armored drake. Maybe 2 months old and full of spit, they snapped their tiny jaws at my hands every single second. If I could break their spirits now, these little monsters would eventually become the deadliest weapons in my arsenal. I threw them before the drake, hoping its suffocating aura would finally crush their reckless, primitive aggression into submission. To my shock, the 5 runts didn't flinch. They huddled together, baring teeth and growling at the massive beast. It was almost comical. The biggest pup actually stepped forward, snarling at a creature that could crush him by accident. He dared the drake to move, acting like a tiny king while the dragon just stared back with cold indifference. The massive beast sighed, ignored the yapping pests, and went back to grazing completely unimpressed by their hollow threats. I grabbed a thick slab of venison from hand stores, butchering it into small bits before pulverizing the meat. Rolling the paste into small spheres, I offered one. The pups just hissed, guarding their pride with empty stomachs. Soon their guts began to rumble. Newborns can't fight hunger for long, and the defiant growls turned to whimpers. One pup tilted his head, watching my hand with wide eyes, until he finally lunged forward to snatch the prize. He bolted to a corner to inhale the meat, and seeing him survive, the rest of the pack swarmed me. Those tiny bites weren't nearly enough to satisfy them, and suddenly, the fear in their eyes was replaced by longing. They weren't hunting me anymore, they were studying me, tails giving a hesitant, hopeful wag as they waited for more. When I pulled the knife to cut more meat, the 5 of them practically danced with joy, losing all hesitation. It became a chaotic frenzy at the stone pot, a dozen tiny jaws snapping at the air for another meatball. I spent the entire day in that cave, working every trick I knew to bind their loyalty to my hand. By dusk, the suspicion was gone. The pack was shadowing my every move, stumbling over their own paws to follow. Ligo and Kwong found me playing with the beasts and froze, their faces twisting from pure shock to sudden realization. "Chief," Kwong stammered, "you actually tamed them. If these things grow, they'll be the ultimate guardians for the tribe." They stood there paralyzed, realizing these predators would soon be the ones keeping our enemies at bay during the night. I cut through their awe with a sharp question, asking what urgent business had brought them to my cave today. Lio's face darkened. "The monsoons are coming, Chief. The caves are leaking, and the tribe is starting to panic. Every spring, the sky breaks for 30 days, turning our homes into damp, miserable graves that swallow our health whole." I just smiled at his fear. "We aren't running this year, Ligo. We're going to build something permanent instead." They stared blankly as I mentioned houses and a massive defensive moat to encircle our new world's stone walls. I ordered them to clear a massive stretch of flat land, signaling the end of our life as nomadic cave dwellers. As they left, I rubbed my temples. The brick kiln would have to wait while I played architect for primitives. I'm supposed to be a visionary leader, but lately, I feel more like a glorified nanny for an entire village. It sounds powerful on paper, but in reality, I'm juggling 1,000 crises while trying to build a future alone. Leading the pups to the half-finished walls, I found Kwong's crew waiting for orders on how to proceed next. After giving instructions, I checked the foundation where Lio's men were working, though the sight made me want to scream. They were literally just hollowing out the earth by throwing boulders at it, leaving the ground a jagged, useless mess. Lio ran up, looking proud of the chaos, but I just sighed and told him to find a massive log. I needed a tree trunk thick enough to require 2 men to bridge it, and he nodded. Sensing my frustration, I showed them how to square the wood and then personally demonstrated how to use it as a heavy rammer. We hammered the earth into submission, stroke by heavy stroke, until the jagged ground became a flat, solid floor. By noon the next day, the foundation was set. I sent Lido to haul the clay Kwong had excavated. I started splitting bamboo into long, thin strips, preparing to execute a plan the tribe couldn't possibly comprehend yet. I traded my last resources for a primitive chemical formula, specialized ash-based cement that could bind our world together. I had Lio gather every scrap of plant ash in the camp to begin the alchemy of modern construction. I did the heavy lifting for the first batch, while Ligo watched my every move like a hawk, mimicking me. Using bamboo frames, we packed a mixture of clay straw and stone into the gaps to create solid, gray blocks. Once the core hardened, I ordered the men to face the earthen walls with heavy stone to create an unbreakable fortress. Then came the slate sandwiching a core of monoliths and grit. We capped the roof, sealing our fate. 10 days, that is all it took to birth a 20,000 square foot behemoth from timber and mud. It loomed like a granite tomb. Twin rows of swatching the cement choked cobblestones below. My people were paralyzed. They had never seen a house, yet they knew exactly what this monstrosity was for. The completion of the first spire set the tribe's blood on fire. The Kuong they adapted with terrifying speed. With newfound precision, 3 more bastions rose from the earth mirroring the first. They formed a triangle around a central heart, the triple star guarding the moon, a lethal geometry. I designed this cluster to be a meat grinder. If the outer walls fell, the real nightmare began. 4 towers, 30 arrow slits, each providing a crossfire that would turn the courtyard into a graveyard. Cradled by 3 peaks in a trench, we were finally safe, or so we told ourselves. It was the pinnacle of primitive warfare, the best shield we could forge from dirt and desperation. A month of sweat. Now the sky was bruising, signaling the rains that would halt every hunt. We had to hoard. I took my 5 wolf cubs to the perimeter to inspect the deep trench. Groundwater was already bleeding through the sluices. The coming deluge would fill this hungry ditch. Such a vast moat seemed like a waste of empty space. Then a dark realization hit me. Dragon Lake was teeming with life. Before the ice surrendered, we needed to harvest its silver scales. A natural reservoir for fish and shrimp. A quiet life. I almost believed it was possible. I tracked down the wolves, trailing like shadows, to explain how we would turn the moat into a larder. The old man doubted spears. I just shook my head, pitying his lack of vision. Taole ho to weave the hemp. We need nets to drag the lake's bounty home before the thaw. He vanished. I headed south to the training grounds where the air smelled of sweat and cedar. 70 hunters, 50 veterans, and 20 fresh souls were being forged into a single weapon. Hendu's elite corps stood apart, few in number, but each man was built like a mountain. They were the long-range ghosts, masters of the silent kill from the shadows of the peaks. The second rank practiced the storm volleys of dozens meant to blot out the sun and the enemy. Then there were the 20 new recruits, the raw meat currently under Min Kwang's boot. Min Kwang pushed them while Hendu's men prepped for the ice. The cycle of war never paused. When I arrived with my wolves, the men did not flinch. Their focus was a physical weight. I demanded total immersion. In this world, a wandering eye is an invitation to the grave. I signaled Min Kwang. At sunrise, we march. We hunt for the soul of the tribe. His grin was feral. It had been 30 days since they had tasted the adrenaline of a real kill. We go deep this time, I said. We fill the pits or we starve in the rain. The commander asked if I wished to see their progress. I kept my face a mask of stone. I nodded once. He barked an order and the 70 became a single breathing entity. They snapped into 3 crisp lines. Min Kwang looked his prize pupil Sich Da. Show the great chief what you have learned, he commanded. Sich Da handpicked 3 brothers in arms. They stepped into the clearing, bows ready. 2 shafts each, Sich Da whispered to his men. He hurled a bamboo stalk skyward. 3 arrows sang in unison, pinning the wood in midair. As the splintered bamboo fell, Sich Da drew to his ear and shattered the remains with a final hiss. It was breathtaking. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my expression remained cold as ice. I had played the godkin for so long the mask had become my skin. Good, I uttered. That one word hit them like lightning. They were desperate for the approval of their creator. They were just primitives yesterday clawing at the dirt. Now they were becoming something else. They knew the bow was the bridge between a full belly and a shallow grave. Every breath they took was a meditation on the kill. But I wondered, what were we truly becoming? Precision is everything. That evening, Hendu led 20 men to Great Dragon Lake to set the nets. Enthu returned at first light. Every hunter gathered for training before 20 were picked for guard duty. The rest followed me into the wild. We even brought 5 wolf pups for their first real test. Hendu took the lead as our scout. Those 5 pups were pure chaos, bolting through the underbrush. Suddenly, the pups went rigid. Something was off. We were heading deep into wild wolf territory today. My plan was simple: find the wild pack and force an alliance. 50 Kikun-in warriors marched beside me. We carved through the thicket, nearing the hollows where we first encountered the gray hunters. The pups caught a scent, noses twitching before they let out a synchronized, bone-chilling howl. My men gripped their spears, eyes darting. I just signaled for calm. They were just claiming their turf. Why challenge their own kind? Min Kwang whispered. They were born from that very pack. The moment they joined us, they became outcasts. I replied, to the wild, they are now enemies. The only way to belong again is to kill the alpha and take his throne. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the sound of rhythmic, predatory footsteps approaching from the shadows. A massive wolf emerged, a jagged scar cutting across its brow. It stared us down with cold intensity. It dropped into a killing stance. The alpha, before I could move, my 5 pups stepped forward. The little ones snarled, baring their teeth at the giant. They were actually challenging the kin. The wild pack bristled, ready to tear them apart. If I didn't act, 50 men would be in a bloodbath. The tension was a coiled spring. If that alpha lunged, the pups would just stand a chance. I had to break the standoff. I barked a command, calling the lead pup back to my side. He gave the alpha one final, defiant growl before retreating. I stepped into the clearing alone. I mimicked their guttural calls, communicating a desperate offer, a joint hunt for survival. We provide the steel, you provide the instinct. I signaled, we share the kill tonight. The alpha hesitated, then let out a sharp bark. The wild pack went silent. The deal was struck. My people stood frozen in disbelief. We had actually negotiated with the forest's most efficient killers. A strange army of men and wolves began moving toward the white woods that Min Kwang described. The pups were unnervingly quiet now, shadowed by the looming presence of the scarred alpha. They stayed glued to my heels, sensing the lethal pressure coming from their wild kin. After 6 hours of tricking, the trees thinned out, revealing the edge of the great grassland. The wolves vanished into the tall grass instantly. I signaled my hunters to stay low and silent. I moved through the stalks, heart hammering against my ribs, until I reached the clearing. I gasped. Before us stood hundreds of wild beasts, a literal sea of shifting muscle and horn. Zebras drifted through the herd, their patterns blurring in the midday sun. It was staggering. This was our salvation, but one mistake would turn this grassland into our mass grave. A herd this size was a force of nature. One stray arrow could trigger a fatal stampede. I pulled Handlu close. Take your team, flank them quietly, aim only for the eyes. He nodded, his face grim, and led his group into the green shadows of the tall grass. I held my lead wolf back, whispering, wait for the stragglers, your time is coming. The pup flattened itself against the earth, eyes locked on a target, waiting for my signal. Finally, Handlu signaled from the far side. The trap was set, and the air grew heavy. I drew my heavy triple-layered bow, the wood groaning under the immense pressure. My arrow whistled through the air, piercing the lead wildebeest's throat. It collapsed without a sound. Then a flurry of arrows erupted from the grass, finding their marks in the herd's eyes. The grass exploded into chaos. The peaceful grazing ground turned into a thundering nightmare of panic. We kept firing, dropping beast after beast as the world dissolved into dust and hooves. The herd turned to flee, but they were running straight into the waiting jaws of the pack. A wall of dust erupted as a massive wildebeest herd charged, followed by zebras in a heartbeat. They slammed into each other, scattering wildly right toward the thicket, where wolves lay in wait. Within seconds, that stampede would crush the pack. The alpha let out a bone-chilling roar. He leaped high midair, intercepting the lead wildebeest. Following his lead, the entire pack surged forward. They howled, throwing themselves into the chaos. With one brutal strike, over 10 beasts were brought down. The lead animals tried to pivot, but the momentum of the zebras behind them caused a horrific pileup. Trapped and panicked, dozens were trampled into the dirt. The scene turned into a bloody, chaotic mess. That was our cue. My Kong tribesmen stood, and alongside Dematu, we let the arrows fly. The air filled with the agonized shrieks of dying animals. Watching them thrash, I signaled my people to halt. We had enough. Any more would just rot. We couldn't possibly haul it all back to camp. The final count: 6 zebras, 2 leopards, and 85 wildebeests. Carcasses were strewn everywhere across the plain. I looked at the alpha. We had a deal: 27 wildebeests, one for every wolf in his pack. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air from the distance. Fist-sized rocks began raining down on us. Protect the great chief, Min Kwang bellowed. I ducked, narrowly avoiding a stone aimed at my head. About 200 strangers were pelting us. A few of my men went down, crying out in pain. The rocks hit the wolves too. The alpha, mid-meal, bared his fangs, ready to tear them apart. Back off, this meat belongs to us, one of the attackers screamed from the ridge. Like hell it does, I growled. Archers, fire! The Kwang warriors raised their bows in perfect unison. Before they could even blink, 30 of them were pinned by arrows, their screams echoing through the valley. They had never seen bows. To them, these were just lethal, lightning-fast bamboo splinters causing mass casualties. Their leader panicked, shouting about sorcery and retreat, but Min Kwang and Handlu were already moving. Don't let a single one escape. My tribe drew their strings again, sending another lethal volley their way. The wolves, fueled by the rock-throwing insult, snarled and lunged toward the retreating group. A third wave of arrows flew before the wolves even reached them. Another 20 men fell instantly. In mere seconds, half their hunting party was wiped out, but the nightmare wasn't over for them yet. The vengeful pack tore into the survivors. 10 more men were shredded by teeth and claws instantly. Spears up, I commanded. We closed in, surrounding the wounded leftovers with the wolves at our side. Their leader was pinned, the alpha's jaws locked on his leg, blood soaking the dry earth red. I signaled the wolf to stop before he finished him. I stepped over and asked, "Who are you?" The survivor, still defiant despite the blood, spat, "I am Golden Bee Tribe. You just signed your death warrants." In this world, I only knew the Kwang. We were small, usually just trading hides for salt. We rarely dealt with others. But this fool kept barking about his tribe's 1,000 warriors and greatness. "We have real soldiers. You are all dead," he screamed. I looked at Min Kwang and gave the nod. End him. Min Kwang didn't hesitate. His spear went through the man's chest with brutal precision. I turned to my tribe. Remember this. Anyone who strikes us dies. No mercy, no exceptions. My people hoisted their spears, their war cries joining the wolves' eerie, triumphant howls across the plains. Tie the rest up, I ordered. They're going to carry our meat back to the village. I whistled the alpha. Stick with me, and we will always hunt like this. You will get your share. 10 extra wildebeest today. Just keep outsiders away from our borders. I negotiated. The wolf huffed in agreement. I smiled at the arrangement. Min Kwang, make these new slaves carry everything, every single pound. Min Kwang looked confused. Slaves, what is that? He did not understand the concept of owning people yet. Captives who work for us. I explained, they're not brothers. They're tools, they're slaves. He let out a dark laugh and nodded. We began the long march back to our village. The wolf pack followed, choosing a new den near our territory to solidify our deadly new alliance. When we walked into camp, the tribe was speechless, not just for the meat, but for the captives. 40 men were assigned to Min Kwang to clear land for a new perimeter and build basic shelters. I looked the slaves in the eye. You belong to the Kuang now. Workers starve in the dirt. Groups of 5 were tethered by vine shackles, 1 escape attempt, and you're dead, 40 lives on edge. If a group fails to produce, they all lose their rations. I turned to Leho immediately. I pointed to the far tree line. Tomorrow, we build that forest will be our 3rd defensive wall. Leho looked stunned at the distance. I laughed. My people want to be doing the heavy lifting. You and Min Kwang rotate the guard. Anyone resists, kill them. Don't bother asking me for permission. With the labor settled, I went to my cave and accessed the system to check my rewards. Notification, slave milestone achieved, 500 points added. My total reached 3,900 points in the bank. I spent 3,000 points on Great Earth Magic, gaining control over gravity and the soil itself. This mastery included 2 paths, heavy gravity and terrace sculpting. The power hummed beneath my skin instantly. I could now manipulate local gravity or reshape the Earth's composition with a single focused thought. Complex gray sigils and incantations flooded my mind. It took a moment to stabilize the mental strain. Then it hit me. Combining earth and wood magic could radically speed up any living organism's growth. I had accidentally unlocked the ultimate farming cheat code. I could revolutionize agriculture in this primitive age. I rushed to the maize field. The stalks were already 3 feet high, swaying in the wind. I pressed my hands to the dirt, eyes shut tight, channeling both elemental powers into the roots. My brow dripped with sweat as the energy drain spiked. This was taking everything I had left. When I looked, the stalks were heavy. Tiny ears of corn had sprouted and grown 6 inches. By tomorrow morning, we'd have a harvest. I rested briefly before heading back to the main camp. At dawn, I had hammed to gather every hunter. 78 men stood ready on the training grounds. That was 1/4 of our tribe. I stood before them, letting the silence hang in the air. The wild is dangerous, I said. From today, you stop laboring. Your only job is to train. You aren't just hunters anymore. I continued, you are becoming something new. You are becoming warriors. The crowd gasped. Warriors were a legend, a luxury only the massive, dominant tribes could ever afford. They wouldn't hunt or gather, just fight and protect. They were the tribe's elite, its sharpest blade. Today I teach you the essentials. I told them, the skills every true soldier must master. It's called martial arts, the science of combat. Everyone watched me, their eyes wide with intense curiosity. Min Kwang looked puzzled. Chief, we have spears for fighting. Why do we need this other skill? I smirked. And if you lose your spear, if your weapon breaks while you were being hunted? He scratched his head. I guess it comes down to raw strength, or I just run away. I shook my head and told him to attack me with his pike. He was terrified to try. I ordered him to strike. He lunged, but his form was sloppy. I stepped inside his reach easily. I grabbed his arm, swept his feet, and pinned him. His spear was in my hand instantly. The men were speechless. Min Kwang knelt on the dirt, looking up at me in total shock. Grand Chief, was it please? You have to teach us how to fight like that. I said, but your bodies are weak. Your reflexes and stamina aren't ready for this. What do we do then? A voice called out. I grinned. We start with physical hell. I detail the grueling training plan, strength, endurance, and reaction drills. No more easy days ahead. High performance required better food. I went back to the maize field to check the magical growth. The ears were huge. I pulled one, shucked the husk, and took a bite of the raw corn. It was starchy and sticky, not sweet, but it was incredibly filling. I gathered a large armful. I brought the harvest to Leho and Min Kwang. Taste this, I said, handing them pieces. It's different, Leho said, chewing. Sticky, but good. Min Kwang just nodded, eating his portion fast. We boiled the rest in a pot. The hot, steaming corn was a revelation. Everyone wanted seconds. I breathed in the steam, savoring the familiar scent before grabbing my earthen bowl. I poured the golden porridge for us, a simple, perfect moment of peace. The men finally understood. Our corn was now our second defensive line. I ordered the southern harvest saved for seed, ensuring our future survival. Remembering the wild hemp, I told Min Kwang to gather it all. Bring the roots and soil, I said, but leave a little for nature. We cleared land for the hemp, a plant more valuable than any grain. Leho was stunned. He didn't realize its power went beyond weaving. It was medicine, fiber, and oil. Every part of it was a treasure. By dawn, I was training 5 wolf pups for the long-range hunt. I taught them to hunt from a distance before entering the woods. We slipped past the second wall and into the deep, dark timber. The pups vanished into the brush while I waited. A silent predator. A howl tore through the air. The alpha was here to claim us. He had found his home and returned to honor our secret pact. He appeared like a ghost, and the pups immediately abandoned their play. They dropped low for bristling, ready for a fight that was teeth there. He stood alone, his eyes locking onto mine in a primal greeting. My people are safe, he signaled, and your hunters are being watched. His pack would protect our men in exchange for a bloody tribute. He pointed to a hollow tree. the altar where we'd leave the meat. I nodded, warning him that any strangers would be hunted and killed. He vanished into the green, leaving me to wait for my scouts. I stood my ground until Min Kwang's crew finally emerged from the trees. They were loaded with hemp and game, their faces bright with victory. Our new bows had turned the struggle of survival into a game. "Chief, why are you out here?" Min Kwang asked, looking surprised. "I was just checking our scouts," I replied, "the four-legged kind." They looked around, seeing nothing but the shadows and the wind. Could a beast truly be that smart? The answer came from the brush. Every bow was drawn as a sudden movement rattled the silent woods. It was the alpha, returning with a warning that chilled my blood. "A family followed your men. He signaled they'll be here any second." I whispered the warning, and the joy drained from their faces instantly. They remembered the last slaughter, the day our tribe was almost erased. We dove into the shadows as the first voices drifted through the air. We overheard the truth. The Hackup were coming with 500 men. These were just the scouts marking us for a total, brutal invasion. The news hit Min Kwang like a physical blow, his panic rising. "We have to kill them," he hissed before they can report back. "No," I said, "that just invites a war we aren't ready for." We retreated to the village, the weight of the coming storm heavy. Back at the wall, I personally planted the hemp in the dark earth. I summoned the council, the urgency in my voice brooked no argument. They walked in, their faces grim, knowing our peace was officially dead. Lahu's hands trembled in decision beside him. Hamshu looked calm, yet his eyes burned. "What is your take on this?" I asked Hamshu, observing his eerie, steady composure. "They have 500 men. We have 100, he said, "but they only have wooden clubs. Our arrows and spears will drop them before they even see the gates," he concluded coldly. I agreed. We were in hiding. We would ambush them in the thick brush outside our walls. My captains froze. Face 500 men in the open, without the protection of our walls. I shook my head. "Numbers lie," they both shouted. "Then tell us what we must do." "Lahu, take a team up the mountain. Cut enough bamboo stakes to fill the valley. Sharpen every single one. Mingguang, get the hunters ready to fletch 1,000 new arrows. Coat those arrowheads in filth. Uncle Han, start digging deep pits throughout the forest floor. Make them impossible to climb out of. Clear the brush so the traps are perfectly hidden. They will be here in 3 or 4 days. Speed is the only thing that saves us." The tribe roared. Li Hu asked if we should put the slaves to work on the pits. "No," I replied. "The slaves must never see our defenses. They have a different role tonight." The men hurried off to work. I walked to the perimeter and waited for the Wolf King. He arrived at dusk. I needed his pack to scout the woods and report every movement. "Alert me the moment they enter the valley," I told him, promising a sheep for every wolf. A heavy price, but a small one for our survival. I returned to find the village buzzing. Everyone was working. Young men chopped bamboo while the elders prepared heavy stones for the defense. Even the woodworkers were busy. I told Li Hu to gather the old stone weapons we captured. He was puzzled. "Why use those when we have bows?" I just smiled a grim smile. "The slaves will carry them. They will stand as bait to lure the enemy into the pits. We will line the bottoms of those holes with sharpened bamboo stakes pointed at the sky." The entire Chuong tribe worked through the night. After 2 days, the forest was a minefield. I walked the hunting party through the kill zones until they knew every hidden pit by heart. For the next 2 days, we rotated guards. The silence of the woods felt heavy and suffocating. On the third morning, a scout came charging through the gates, his voice cracking with fear. "They're here," my eyes sharpened. "Kuang warriors. It is time. Prepare for the coming slaughter." I signaled to Uncle Han and the hunters vanished into the shadows of the forest floor. I stood before the slaves with Li Hu and Mingguang, their faces masks of cold steel. "Listen close," I told the captives. "A rival tribe is coming to take this land today." I watched their faces. Some were gleeful at our peril, others burned with a dark hatred. I memorized every expression. In war, you must know who is a friend and who is bait. The trap was set. Now we just had to see who would fall into it first. Fear sealed the deal. "If I die today, take weapons, kill them." Tiger moved the bait. The trap was set. Heavy boots approached fast. Shadows broke the line. 200 men surged. I signaled the push. "Defend the tribe bright." Human shield stood exposed. Under the weight of every staring eye, Min Kwang scrambled backward, practically crawling in his desperate retreat toward our lines. In that singular heartbeat, the Black Crow warriors shed all restraint, their primal aggression reaching a fever pitch. Hundreds of them charged at those 4 lone souls like a plague of locusts descending upon a few isolated stalks. Someone among the captives let out a guttural shriek, winged a jagged stone, and bolted for his life. Facing down, hundreds had shattered his resolve, and the men flanking him broke just as quickly, their courage evaporating instantly. They cast aside their makeshift blades and sprinted, but the Black Crows were already closing the distance with terrifying speed. The raiders howled as they gained ground, but before the fleeing men could take 10 steps, the very earth gave way. A massive, hollow thud echoed through the clearing as over 100 warriors plummeted into the hidden trenches simultaneously. The air was suddenly choked with agonized screams as the first wave of attackers was impaled on the stakes below. Even with 100 men trapped, a dark tide of reinforcements poured from the tree line. Well over 500 strong this time, the trailing ranks tried to dig their heels in, but they were victims of their own murderous momentum. Those at the back slammed into the front, sending their own brothers cascading into the death pits one by one. The black crows realized they had walked into a slaughterhouse, their cries of triumph turning into desperate wails of realization. Seizing the moment from the shadows, I dropped my hand, and the first volley of arrows hissed through the canopy. Bodies folded like paper as the forest erupted in a symphony of whistling wood and the wet thuds of impact. My hunters didn't miss a beat, unleashing a second rain of steel that decimated the panicked crowd even further. Their captain shrieked for them to take cover, but the survivors discovered there was nowhere left to hide. The thick undergrowth they expected was gone, replaced by thin saplings that offered as much protection as blades of grass. I had ordered every bush cleared and every thick trunk to ensure they had absolutely no sanctuary. Every inch of this killing floor was engineered to let our traps bite deep and our arrows fly completely unobstructed. In under 60 seconds, the enemy's number had been butchered down to nearly half of what they started with. Baumok the Black Crow warlord bellowed in the trees, "Show yourselves, you Kuang cowards, come out and fight." Hidden in the gloom, I caught Uncle Han's eye across the clearing and gave him a sharp, silent nod. He signaled back instantly as I drew a jagged breath, feeling the lethal tension of the bowstring against my cheek. I released, sending a shaft toward the source of the shouting, while 4 more whistled from different points in the brush. The warlord's boast ended in a sickening thud. The leader of the Black Crows was dead before he hit the dirt. I kept firing, raining more death into their ranks as the realization of their total defeat finally took hold. Panic set in as someone screamed for retreat, and I roared, "Wipe them out," while leading the chase. I loaded my sling with a razor-edged river stone, swinging it with lethal force as we surged from the shadows. Hundreds of us launched egg-sized projectiles in unison, catching the fleeing raiders squarely in their exposed backs. The stones found their marks with bone-cracking force, dropping men who thought they had escaped the initial carnage. While slings lacked the sheer lethality of the pit stakes, their reach allowed us to strike from a safe distance. Bloody craters opened on their skulls as Min Kwang reappeared, laughing wildly with a spear gripped in his hand. "It has been an eternity since the Kong tasted a victory this sweet," he yelled, adrenaline fueling his voice. Suddenly we ceased fire, and our stones stopped flying, our pace slowing to a calculated and rhythmic halt. The Black Crows glanced back in confusion, but their lead runner stopped dead as a long, haunting howl erupted. The Wolf King emerged from the fog, flanked by over 30 hungry shadows that seemed to melt from the trees. This pack was larger than the last, their teeth bared in a lethal, silver crescent as they moved toward the raiders. A Black Crow warrior shouted in desperate hope, "The wolves are here for the savages, they want their revenge." They convinced themselves the beasts were on their side, frantically scrambling to get out of the pack's path. They pointed toward us, trying to direct the predators toward our lines as they huddled together in fear. The Wolf King ignored them, his amber eyes locked onto mine as he let out a low, resonant rumble. The raiders cheered, thinking the beast was targeting me, certain that our doom had finally arrived at their feet. Their cheers died in their throats when the great wolf tilted his head, waiting for my silent command. Hearing that familiar howl, I realized the king wasn't here to hunt us. He was here to finish the slaughter. The alpha's question caught me off guard, chilling check on my integrity that I never anticipated. I racked my brain that Wolf King was definitely pivoting back to our lethal little arrangement. The contract was simple. His pack provides the muscle. I provide 1 sheep per head. My heart hit the floor when I looked behind him. It wasn't T20 wolves anymore, but over 30. That furry bastard kept his massive family tree a secret, and now my livestock debt was skyrocketing. I glared at the Hexnaha invaders, fuming that these lowlives were costing me 10 extra sheep. My sudden outburst stunned the enemy warriors as I stood there tallying my looming debt. I let out a guttural wolf-like howl to seal the deal. My word is my absolute bond. The Eshanau raiders turned pale, the horrific reality finally sinking into their panicked minds. They realized far too late that the pack wasn't hunting me. It was hunting for me. With a terrifying roar, the Wolf King lunged, tearing into the nearest Epchina soldier instantly. The entire pack followed his lead, turning the battlefield into a literal meat grinder of chaos. Before they could even scratch one of my people, half their ranks were already torn apart. I rallied my tribe, spears leveled, closing the trap on the shattered remnants of the enemy. It was every man for himself as the invaders trampled their own to escape the jaws. The wolves could catch everyone, so I watched the stragglers try to make a desperate break. Spears away, I roared, and a rain of wood and flint decimated the retreating line. The bodies piled up as the cowards tripped over their dead, barely 100 making it out. My warriors charged forward like demons, screaming as they pursued the broken Hepchina survivors. The few who escaped never looked back, while those left behind literally shook with paralyzing terror. My tribe let out a collective victory cry, thump in their chests in pure adrenaline-fueled ecstasy. We ended up with 83 prisoners, including 18 from that treacherous Ian Nalong clan. I told Lei Laiho that those backstabbing and long rats were too dangerous to leave breathing. Finish them, I ordered, then told the others to bind the rest for the slave pits, leaving the bloodbath behind. I walked toward the pack waiting patiently at the tree line. I took a deep breath and barked a question. Should I deliver your sheep now? The Wolf King looked hesitant, his belly still full from our last big kill days ago. Piles of meat were already rotting. Adding 30 sheep now would just be a wasteful mess. I proposed a better deal. We keep the sheep and raise them until the pack gets hungry. The alpha weighed the offer for a moment before giving a sharp, knowing nod of agreement. I exhaled in relief, realizing my debt actually bought us a permanent, little security detail. As long as I owed them sheep, those wolves would stay close and guard our borders. Laiho was beaming when I told him we'd finally move into the new clay houses tomorrow. While he went to spread the news, I focused on the cornfields. The gold was ready to harvest. It was a massive haul, nearly 2,000 pounds of heavy, sun-ripened ears of corn. We sorted the best kernels for next year's planting, praying for the rains to hold off. The rest would be ground into flour for bread, the new backbone of our tribe's survival. By morning, everyone moved in. I took the master suite in the crescent-shaped main hall. I kept my inner circle, Laiho, Min Kwang, and the elders, right there in the central hub. Having them within earshot meant we could react to any threat in a heartbeat. Seeing the tribe finally settled under solid roofs brought a rare sense of peace to me. We had enough grain to survive the coming storms, though the margins were still razor thin. I didn't fight this hard just to watch my people scrape by on meager rations. My vision was 3 full meals a day and a tribe that feared no one. I stepped out onto the training grounds, signaling for a full assembly. The storm was coming. We need to stockpile tomorrow. The plains are our pantry for sheep and horses. I wasn't in the mood for a lecture. I simply pulled out a secret I'd been tinkering with. A 4-foot strip of hide, weighted at both ends with 10-pound stones. It felt heavy with promise. I swung it until it whistled, then let fly. It caught a thick branch with a sickening crack. 10 pounds of dead weight shattered the wood. My hunters just watched, paralyzed by the raw violence. I call it the stone snare. Aim for the ankles, not the skull. Ground them. Don't I pulverize them? Someone asked why. I laugh. You want meat or a pile of bone shards? Use your bows to kill. The realization hit them. Soon, everyone was stripping bark and braiding vines to make their own. 50 extra men were drafted. This was a hunt. It was a harvest. We moved out at dawn. I left the base with my deputies and 5 wolf pups. It was a gamble on wild instinct. Watching the trainer work them convinced me they were finally ready to earn their keep. We traveled light, moving like ghosts toward the White Meadows, armed for a total massacre. Passing the fortifications, 80 slaves were hauling rock under the scorching, pitiless sun. They didn't look at the spears, they looked at me. Their eyes held a specific kind of terror. I'd broken them a few days back with salted lashes, brutal, but effective for keeping total order. Salted hide doesn't just cut, it burns for weeks now. They tremble at the mere sight of lither. Deep in the woods, I whistled. The alpha emerged from the shadows like a gray, vengeful spirit. To the men in shock, the pack didn't snarl. They fell in line, a silent army of teeth. Man and wolf drifted toward the meadow, a unified force of predators ready to feast. The herd was there, vast and oblivious, grazing where we'd blood them just days before. They'd forgotten the danger. What's the play? My lead scout whispered, crouching in the tall grass. Everyone hit the dirt. The wolves were belly down, the alpha watching me for the final kill code. The beast was too smart. He knew that following my lead meant a full belly for him. I mapped the grazing patterns and gave a low, guttural signal to the great alpha. Flank them from the north, drive the whole lot straight into our waiting line of fire. Wait for my first arrow. Once it flies, unleash the absolute hell of your pack on them. He gave a sharp nod and vanished in the high grass with his shadow warriors. I positioned my squads 2 throws each. I ordered, make them counter Dante throw it all. Once the snares are out, switch to bows, ignore the fallen, keep eyes on the runners. My leads broke off their posts. 10 of us stayed center, holding our breath in silence. The wolves reached the perimeter. We lay in the weeds, watching a sea of antelope graze nearby. I pulled my recurve from my shoulder, knocked a shaft, and drew the string to my ear. The string sang, an antelope buckled, and the peaceful meadow instantly turned into a chaotic whirlpool. The alpha launched like a silver bolt, tearing into a throat before the herd could even blink. The rest of the pack exploded from the grass. The herd turned, a panicked wall of muscle. Now, I screamed, standing tall. We rained arrows into the oncoming stampede of terrified animals. The men behind me fired blind, a curtain of flint-tipped death meeting the charging prey. My flankers rose and launched 40 snares. 20 antelope vanished beneath the churning. Heavy hooves, even a few zebras got tangled, hitting the dirt with bone-snapping force. The trap worked perfectly. Another 40 snares took flight, though the sheer density of the herd made it hard to aim. Everyone switched to rapid-fire bows. 30 more animals went down in a hail of feathers and wood. I dropped my bow and whipped my personal snare, dropping 10 more runners in one fluid motion. But the tide didn't stop. 1,000 pounds of momentum was screaming toward our current position. "Break!" I yelled, diving for cover. The wolf pups were already gone, vanishing into the trees. The earth shuddered under the weight of the survivors as the stampede thundered through our line. The crowd watched the stampede in sheer terror, but I only saw the wasted potential of those fallen stallions. "Damn it!" I roared as my future caravan hit the dirt. Once the dust settled, I turned to my crew. "Bind the survivors now." 20 warriors scrambled to secure our prizes before they could catch their breath. 30 others kept their bows drawn, scanning the horizon for the shadows that haunted our last bloody hunt. We'd paid for survival in blood before. Today, we were the ones dictating terms to the wolf kin. Killing is the easy part. It's the living weight that breaks a man, especially these wild, thrashing beasts. 4 stallions fought their restraints like demons, nearly crushing the men desperate to hold them to the earth. Before I could even shout a warning, one beast snapped its cord and lunged for the open plains. Primal chaos erupted. Then a haunting howl cut through the air as the wolf king stepped in to assist. His pack hemmed the stallion in, freezing it with a snarl. I stepped forward, focusing my inner taming will. The horse's eyes darted between the wolves and me, its mind fracturing under the weight of my gaze. I grabbed the vine around its throat and buried my other hand deep into its thick, tangled mane. With a violent wrench and a shoulder shove, I threw my entire weight against its powerful, trembling neck. There was a sickening thud as the beast hit the earth. My warriors froze, seeing a monster in me. I didn't stop. I released the vine, closed my eyes, and began the low, rhythmic chant of the ancients. I pressed my palm against its skull, invoking the earth's grasp to pin the animal into the soil. It thrashed and clawed at the dirt, but the ground wouldn't let go. Terror finally bled into its eyes. Foam bubbled at its mouth. I released the spell, and it stood up, shaking, broken, and utterly silent. I didn't look at it. I just looked at Min Kwang. "Load 4 antelope on its back," I commanded. "If it kicks, break its spirit again." Min Kwang stammered a response, holding the carcasses over the horse. The stallion groaned as its hooves buckled. I gave it one look, one cold promise, and it went still. "Lead it back," I told them, "and remember, mercy is a luxury we haven't earned yet in this wild." I turned to the remaining 3 stallions, signaling my men to release the next victim of my will. This one thought it was a fighter. It tried to kick. I decided I was done playing games today. I grabbed its throat and drove my hand into its spine, forcing the massive animal down to its knees. It didn't just submit. It begged. In seconds, the wild fire in its eyes was extinguished by cold fear. It stood there, a ghost of its former self. I nodded, satisfied with the hollow victory of the hunt. "Load it up," I signaled. The other 2 horses fell in line soon after, broken by my hand. The warriors cheered for their leader, but even the wolf king's eyes held a new, jagged edge of fear. We were no longer just survivors. We were becoming the very things we used to hide from at night. The rest was just labor. Skinning, hauling, and binding, we moved like a well-oiled machine of death and efficiency. We marched back to the village, a grim parade of predators and the broken prizes we carried with us. At the crossroads, I paid the wolf king his blood tax, 2 horses and 5 antelope, as promised. He let out a long, haunting howl. "Salute to our dark alliance." Before vanishing into the gray forest mist, I answered with a howl of my own, a sound that felt less human than it did yesterday. The village elders stared in disbelief. We weren't just bringing back meat, we were bringing back tools of war. I saw the future in those 4 horses, a cavalry that would turn this tribe into an empire. If I could break these 4, I could break 40, I could break 100, I could conquer. I envisioned a legion of riders sweeping the plains, but the cost was being carved into my heart. My efficiency was soaring, but my humanity was slipping. Min Kwang broke my trance with a nervous question. "What about the antelope, great chief? Should we put them in the high pens with the sheep?" I shook my head. Never mix the weak with the wild. Fear is a sickness that spreads fast. Build them their own prison, far from the rest. Keep the breeds separate or the rot takes them. One sick beast can end a tribe faster than a winter storm, you understand? He nodded, visibly trembling. I walked away and hammered 4 stakes into the iron-hard ground, tethering our dark future to the dirt. The 4 stallions stood paralyzed with fear. I smirked, signaling my armored earth dragon to let out a deafening roar. The beast looked up from its grazing, confused, before rising to its feet and baring its fangs with a terrifying howl. The horses recoiled in unison. I stepped forward, offering a single carrot to the leader of the trembling pack. It sniffed the air tentatively before taking a crunching bite. I patted its head, grinning as the sweetness won it over. The stallion devoured the rest instantly. I repeated the process, bribing the remaining 3 into submission with the same treats. It was the classic carrot and stick method: obey and eat, resist and face the dragon's soul-shaking fury. They broke quickly. These 4 were our tribe's first real cavalry, and to me, they represented a new era. I named them spring, summer, autumn, and winter, paired with our 5 wolves. They symbolized a future of eternal harvests. I channeled my primal growth essence to mend spring-souled wounds. Suddenly, the horse's eyes flared with a new intensity. Once spring was settled, I turned to find Liho to discuss the tribe's future, but chaos erupted behind me. The air filled with frantic neiging, Summer and autumn were baring their teeth, ganging up on spring in a frenzy. What happened next was cinematic. Spring bucked, sending summer sprawling, before twisting mid-air to dodge a bite from autumn. He slammed his forehead into autumn's skull with a sickening thud. I realized then, spring had become something more than horse. The magic had supercharged him to confirm my theory. I called over my lead wolf, Ma, for a controlled experiment. I told him to jump. After several tries, he consistently cleared about 4 meters, a standard, impressive distance for his kind. I pulled him close, placing my palm on his head while whispering the incantation for the primal growth essence. Faint green light pulsed into his skull. After nearly 10 minutes, I withdrew my hand and gave him the command. Mao wasn't he finished. He paced back, lunged forward with explosive power, and soared through the air like a feathered arrow. He cleared 7 meters, my jaw dropped. The primal growth essence wasn't just healing, it was an evolutionary shortcut. Ma sensed the raw power coursing through his veins and howled triumphantly. I should have seen this potential coming earlier. If it could harden my body and force crops to bloom, it could clearly rewrite the biology of any living creature. It was a physical upgrade, but I wondered if the effects were stackable. I decided to push the limits further. I cast the spell on Ma again. This time, he cleared 8 meters. The gains were real, though clearly diminishing. He was improving, but the jump in performance was as drastic as the first time. Then I noticed the physical toll. He looked leaner, taller, and his fur had darkened significantly. This power came at a cost. It was burning him out. Despite the risk, the strategic value was immense. I announced that tomorrow, I would bestow this power upon one warrior. The elders were stunned. In their tradition, a power transfer was a final act, reserved only for the dying. They thought I was passing on my soul. Usually, this ritual meant the old chief was taking his final breaths. They stared at me with hollow eyes. "Great chief," they whispered, "why now are you leaving us for the ancestors?" I sighed, shaking my head. "I am perfectly healthy," I assured them, though their faces remained masks of doubt. "This won't kill me, I promised. It will only make you gods among men. It is a gift, not a goodbye." They remained skeptical. Finally, Liho and Min Kwang looked at Hemthuk. "Give it to the old man first. In case you drop dead," they added. I groaned. "I am fine, Hemthuk. Get ready, we start at dawn." They shuffled out, looking ashamed. By sunrise, half the tribe was huddled outside my door, whispering like murmurs. Our best warrior stood there, eyes wide, too afraid to enter. It felt more like a wake than a promotion. I woke up to a dozen pairs of eyes. Liho stepped forward. "The people heard you are passing on." I nearly lost my temper. "I am not dying everyone out. Now this is not a funeral, it is a training." I shoved everyone but Hamthuk out the door. They retreated slowly, casting worried glances back at their leader. I locked the door and faced him. "If I give you the strength of 10 men, what is your first move?" He didn't hesitate. "I would use every ounce of it, keep this tribe safe. Chief, I will be your shield." No more talk then. I placed my hand on his brow and began the ritual, channeling the raw essence. 30 minutes later, I collapsed into a chair, gasping for air. Hamthuk opened his eyes, his presence feeling heavier. He saw my pale face and panicked. "Chief, you are white as a sheet." I waved him off, just testing limits. "Try your strength," I wheezed. He grabbed a heavy 3-layered combat bow and pulled. The wood snapped like a dry twig. He stared at the shattered weapon in horror. I didn't mean to. I barely pulled it. I just grinned. "Perfect. That bow is way too heavy for you." Ham and I stepped out toward a 400-pound boulder. He gripped the stone and hoisted it effortlessly, hurling the massive rock 20 yards to crater the earth. Lai Ho and Min Kwang stood frozen with their jaws dropped. "Uncle, how did you get this strong?" Ham stared at his own palms in total disbelief. Finally, the other two snapped out of their shock. They dropped to their knees in unison. "Great chief, please bestow this divine power upon us as well." "I can do it, but I need several days of rest first." They beamed, thanking me profusely. The tribesmen moved everything into the earthen longhouses as thunder began to tear through the sky. Rain fell in absolute sheets. While the tribe rested, my mind refused to find any peace at all. I summoned my lieutenants. The monsoon keeps the other tribes trapped, but we cannot afford to wait. We have no idea what they are planning. We must use this storm to forge our own strength. They were visibly vibrating with excitement. Ever since I empowered Ham, the others were desperate for more. Lai Ho was practically shouting, "I will go and prepare the rest of the tribe for the ritual." Once they left, I entered the system mentally. My hard work had earned me 3,600 points. I considered hunting fire beasts, but realized that mastering the art of beast taming was far more vital. I spent 3,000 points on high-level taming. Ancient knowledge began flooding into my conscious mind. This wasn't just training, it was a psychic bridge that allowed me to bypass a wild animal's defenses. Success meant absolute loyalty and even granted me a small fragment of the beast's own raw power. I needed a test subject immediately. I grabbed my cloak and rope, heading straight for the dragon. The armored earth dragon sat chained by the cave entrance with thick ropes meant for 4 horses. Usually the creature just ate and slept like a massive, scaly pig. It was honestly a pathetic sight. I didn't rush this time. I extended my hand and chanted, sending a psychic ripple through the air. The dragon sensed the shift immediately, scrambling up and sniffing the air as it felt my presence. Suddenly, a mental link snapped into place. I could actually hear the creature's primal thoughts in my head. It bowed its head in total submission. After seeing the results, I ran toward the horse stables. I used the same technique on all 4 stallions. They were broken and loyal within mere seconds. They crowded around me, nuzzling my hands. I left the cave feeling completely covered in animal musk. I needed a wash. I headed for the steam baths, sinking into the water to escape reality. The baths were split by gender, including a private pool I had built specifically for my own use. I leaned back with a cup of hot water, wishing for something more from my old life. A simple cup of tea and a book seemed like impossible luxuries in this harsh, primitive world. A hunter burst in, gasping for air. Chief disaster, Magio is trapped by a massive sound of boars. They are pinned at the second wall. There are too many to even think about opening the gates. I remember the eastern slope sound, but we had already slaughtered most of them weeks ago. How did they find us? I was furious that a few pigs were holding my people hostage. I barked for my men to suit up. I threw on my gear and sprinted toward the cave. I called out to my new pet mentally, "Big guy, it is time for you to earn your keep." The scaled titan emerged before I even arrived. I vaulted onto its back as it rumbled forward. We tore toward the outer gates, the dragon's tail whipping as we reached the panicked guards. My lieutenants felt the ground shaking behind them and turned around, nearly falling over in sheer terror. Their eyes nearly popped out of their heads as they scrambled to get out of our way. At the second wall, I saw 5 of our scouts cornered by a sea of black bristles. At least 40 boars were screaming for blood. I roared at the gatekeepers to drop the bars. They obeyed, trembling with fear. Our resident wolves slipped inside first, terrified of the massive dragon. They huddled near my mount, looking at me in awe before turning to bark at the boars. It was the typical display of cowards acting tough now that they had a real monster backing them. 5 wolves with glowing red eyes were baiting the boars, driving the frenzied herd straight toward Liho and our men. A hail of spears cut through the air like lightning, but the charging wall of tusks and muscle barely skipped a beat. Only a few went down, the rest kept coming. "Chief, get back," Liho's voice cracked with pure, unfiltered terror. I triggered the high-level beast bond. "Show him what you've got, big guy," I whispered. My armored earth shaker let out a deafening roar. He swung his massive, plated frame between my people and the stampede, his skeletal tail whipping through the air like a scythe. 3 hogs were launched 3 feet high. Before the pack could even blink, the earth shaker pivoted with lethal, predatory grace. In a heartbeat, 2 more were crushed flat. He dove into the thick of them, a living tank of scales and rage. He roared again, a sound that made the earth tremble. The boars flinched, backing off a step, but they didn't break. A scared-up alpha emerged from the dust, grunting a war cry. The pack's eyes turned bloodshot as they surged forward again. My beast's tail was a sledgehammer of bone, swinging with sheer excitement. Another hog's skull shattered under the massive force. The tail didn't stop there. It swept low in a crushing arc, catching 7 or 8 of them at once. They swarmed him, teeth snapping against his armored hide. I heard the sickening, repeated crunch of breaking tusks and bone. But they were drawing blood. The earth shaker scales were starting to tear under the sheer pressure of their relentless hate. Seeing his own crimson spill sent him over the edge, he went berserk, plowing through the mud and the meat. He loved that ground sweep move. While he's distracting them, I vaulted off his back and dove into the fray. My iron spade caught a charging hog right between the eyes. It hit the dirt, squealing its final pathetic breath. Blood was everywhere. Hamthuk stepped up with a heavy bow, shouting for us to distract the boar king. Our arrows were like toothpicks against that monster's thick hide. It didn't even slow the king's murderous charge. Hamthuk took a breath, drew back to his ear, and let fly a streak of feathered death like a lightning bolt. The arrow buried itself deep in the king's right eye. The beast's roar of pure agony shook the very trees. Blinded and pissed, the monster lowered its head and aimed its tusk straight for Hamthuk's chest. Hamthuk swung his bone club, but the king was a freight train. It slammed him directly into the freezing muck. He tried to roll, but he wasn't fast enough. Those jagged tusks caught him clean in the gut, lifting him high. The king tossed him like a rag doll. Hamthuk lay there, coughing up crimson, soaked in the filth of the mud. One look at the hole in his stomach told me everything. He wasn't making it off this mountain alive. "Hamthuk," I screamed, lunging forward, but the men held me back. "Chief, watch your head," they yelled. "Boars don't forget a face." A hunter once told me these things carry a grudge to the grave and back. They don't just kill. They make it personal. If they can get you now, they will track your scent for miles. My buddy from the north once winged a hog and let it slip away. It was the worst mistake of his life. That beast found his village and tore the heart out of his livelihood, digging up every crop he had. It destroyed his entire harvest until the local men had to hunt it for 3 days and 3 nights. These things aren't just animals. They respite wrapped in fur. And this king was the most vengeful of them all. He was half blind now, but he knew I was the one who gave Hamthuk the chance to shoot. He wanted my head. I dropped my bow. It was useless now, and gripped my iron spade with white-knuckled intensity. I stood my ground, watching the beast's remaining eye behind us. The earth shaker was still holding the line. My beast was a whirlwind of scales and blood, leaving a trail of broken bodies in the churned-up dirt. He was wounded, sure, but the more he bled, The harder he fought, the pack finally started to hesitate. They were looking for a weakness, circling like vultures while the king focused his entire murderous intent on me. I started moving right, creeping toward the king's blind side, my heart hammering like a drum against my ribs. The king tilted his head, tracking me with his good eye. He wasn't nearly as dumb as he looked. He lowered his head, giving me nothing but tusk and bone to aim at. He was closing the gap. He was baiting me. I shifted left, feigning a stumble, trying to look like a man who'd lost his nerve. I let the terror show on my face. Boars are stupid, but they are in tea completely beyond saving their own skin. I turned to run, purposely exposing my flank. The king let out a guttural grunt. He thought he had me. This was the moment. One wrong move and I'm just another cautionary tale rotting in the mountain mud. Death when I danced. Straight runs mean graves. Tusk gray heels. I baited the trap. He overshot blinded. The dragon's tail waited. Narrow and smash. I hit. Steel scales crush bone. Spine pit screams echoed. The king thrashed, paralyzed. He died. The pack fled terrified. King got towards. My dog wildly. Easy, I calmed. The storm finally broke. Let the weak flee. I found him broke. He lay mud. He spat thick blood. I'm here, he wheezed. The leather armor held. Preparation is our shield. Just a bruise, chief. I checked for bleeding. Infection kills the slow. Clean this, I ordered. We cheated death tonight. 15 boars, 1 man. I dismissed the dragon. We needed some rest. I channeled the pulse. Magic men's whip breaks. He watched eyes wide. Pain ice gun. He stood up whole. I changed dry skin. The dragon was bleeding. Even titans feel pain. I touched his scales. Ivy got you, friend. He bowed his head. Emerald light glowed bright. The debt was paid. I felt a surge of energy through my hands as the power anchored itself within the beast. It found peace. Yet I felt a draining heaviness, realizing this creature was a bottomless pit of need. Mending this dragon drained my spirit far faster than any horse ever could, leaving me empty. It surpassed the toll of the wolf pups, or even healing the men like Hun and Min. Within 15 minutes, my eyelids turned to lead as my life essence evaporated into the air. I fought the urge to collapse, pushing through as the dragon's eyes finally began to spark. A new light filled its gaze, a lethal mix of deep respect and absolute, unwavering submission to me. Over 30 minutes later, the ritual broke, leaving me a hollow shell desperate for the void. While I withered, the beast surged with life. Its once dull stare now piercing and predatory. The deep, bloody gashes on its hide stopped weeping, the flesh knitting back together with unnatural speed. Its scales hardened into a darker obsidian sheen, looking more like forged steel than mere skin. As my power faded, the monster bowed its head in a gesture of total and final surrender. It nudged my hand with surprising tenderness. I patted its snout, whispering that it was finally whole. We hunt in 48 hours, I told it, and you will lead the charge for us. It nodded with uncanny intelligence, testing its newfound strength as if it were a god reborn. I confirmed its power had surged, its speed now vastly superior to anything we had seen before. Its spiked tail whipped the air with a lethal crack before it vanished and reappeared instantly. It vibrated with excitement, eager to turn our enemies into red mist on the forest floor today. They have already fled, I rasped, but don't worry. Their time is coming soon enough for us. My eyelids felt like lead. I ordered it to stay put while I crawled to my hut. Back at the camp, the hunting party had returned, dragging their massive day's haul through the dirt. 14 boars total. 2 were mangled beyond recognition, their skulls crushed in the chaotic forest stampede. 12 were the dragon's work, while the rest were chased into the pits we dug earlier. 3 survivors were pulled from the traps, spared only because the spikes had not been set. The carcasses went to the butchers. The 3 live ones were tossed into the holding pens. Lai reported a strange development. The existing herd was acting viciously toward the new wild arrivals. I realized our livestock was evolving, shedding wild instincts for a more organized domestic hierarchy of power. This territorial shift was a perfect sign. We were building a true stronghold, not just a camp. I told the men to relax, this was progress, and they needed to focus on tomorrow. Finish your chores, I commanded through my haze, because we move out the day after tomorrow. The men were stunned, pointing to our mountain of meat as if food were our only goal. They fear the coming storms, but I wasn't looking for food anymore. I was looking for power. Horses, I said, ignoring their confusion about the 4 animals we already possessed in the stable. 4 is a hobby. I want every able-bodied man in this tribe mounted and fully armed. When the raiders come, they won't find farmers. They'll find a wall of steel and hooves. I saw the fire ignite in their eyes as they processed the image of a Kain cavalry. They'd heard legends of the great tribes and their warriors, never dreaming they would become them. Why can we be the legends? I challenged, a tired smirk finally playing on my lips. But we are so few, they whispered, comparing us to the sprawling empires of the north. The previous floods had thinned our ranks, leaving us a skeleton of what we once were. Numbers matter, I admitted, but they aren't the only metric of a tribe's true power and destiny. I ordered a census. How many pregnant women and how many children under the age of 10? Lai He looked lost as I shifted the conversation from war horses to the tribal nursery. My train of thought was moving too fast for them, skipping from bloodlines to birth rates instantly. Go, I barked, give me the numbers for every man, woman, and child left in Katnu. I looked at the list of single men over 16. Lai Ho stared at me, confused why I was suddenly mentioning marriage. I offered a small smile. Uncle Li Ho, I started. I recall that then Nara and Sich Na have both reached adulthood, right? His face fell into a familiar gloom. Then his 20 and Sich's 18. 18. He sighed, but we have no furs to spare. We can afford to seek brides from other clans. It hit me then. In this brutal era, survival meant paying a heavy price. You either traded your life to serve elsewhere or brought wealth we didn't to have. Leaving meant our strongest men became another's property. Some men served just long enough to father a child, while others vanished into the horizon, never to be seen by us again. Our Kyong clan was already bleeding out, our numbers dwindling. I knew I could let another soul walk away from our home. We had to pay the bride price. It was a gamble, sending resources to secure a future, much like the dowries of old. But here, the trade was final. Once the livestock left, they belonged to the girl's tribe. She became ours, a living exchange. It was a cold, clear transaction. Peace kept the balance, but animosity turned these unions into a dangerous game of shifting bloodlines. If war broke out, a woman's children might one day raise spears against her own mother's kin. But we had surplus grain. I decided to use that grain to buy our future. This was the first move in my grand design for the tribe's expansion. Uncle, I said firmly, once the rain stops, take a party to the neighboring camps. See who is willing to trade with us. I smiled, though my heart raced. The Antelope have waited long enough. It is time we brought them wives to build homes. Lio's face twisted in total shock. You mean we pay for them? I nodded. Exactly, why else would we have grain? He was speechless, trembling with a hope he hadn't felt in years. Usually, at 17 for boys and 16 for girls, life begins. Those boys were ready to start families, but the old ways would have forced them to sell their labor just to survive. Being a guest husband was a life of shame. A father like Leho had no say in his son's fates. Until this moment, only the great chief, only I, could break the cycle. My predecessor was too busy just trying to keep everyone from starving to death. The tribe had been suffocating for so long, the labor shortage was a slow, agonizing poison that was killing our very future. Every decision back then was a desperate stall against the inevitable, but wasn't he just stalling? I was changing the entire game. Lai Ho couldn't believe I was keeping his sons home. The realization that they weren't leaving sparked a fire in his wary eyes. I wasn't finished. I leaned closer, my voice dropping to low command. From now on, no man of our clan leaves. We buy our brides, and our women— I paused, letting the weight hang. Our women stay, they never leave Gong clan. If a man from another tribe wants to join us permanently, we will even give his family 2 sheep for his service. What? Leho gasped. Chief, 4 sheep is a fortune for a bride, but you want to pay for the men too? I nodded. This was how we would forge alliances. By treating outsiders well, we would buy their loyalty and their entire bloodline. We would raise their children as our own. Slowly, the bitterness of neighboring tribes would dissolve into a shared future under Mir. It was a soft conquest, an absorption that was stable and quiet, far less bloody than war, but every bit as effective. Even if a rival tribe was strong, they wouldn't dare strike the family that held their daughters and sons in such regard. These marriage ties were golden handcuffs, but Leho hesitated, his brow furrowed with a sudden, chilling realization of the danger ahead. Chief, he whispered, if they see our wealth, they might not just ask for more. They might come to take everything. I felt a cold shiver. He was right. Success breeds envy, and envy breeds violence. I looked him in the eye. Hardening, a reasonable demands we meet. I replied, a few extra sheep is a small price for a new life. But for the greedy, if they come to rob us, we show no mercy. The warriors of the Kuong clan are not made of soft clay. My voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a sentence. Leho stood taller, the invisible yoke of submission snapping. For generations, we lived on our knees, begging for scraps. Now, for the first time, he saw a future standing perfectly upright. I understand, great chief, he said, bowing with respect. I will bring this word to every member of the tribe immediately. Go. I dismissed him, a wave of exhaustion hitting me. I needed sleep before the real storm of my ambition began. Laiho worked with a frantic efficiency. By the time I woke, he was already back with the grim reality of numbers. 22 women are pregnant. He reported 5 will give birth within 2 months. We have 18 children under 10 years old. 31 able-bodied men and 23 eligible women. I massaged my temples, the way those lives pressing down on me like lead. 22 new lives were coming into a world that didn't want them. If they survived, our tribe would double in a decade. They were our only hope for a future. But with our primitive medicine, I knew the odds were stacked against every child. I stared at the dirt floor, wondering how many infants would actually see their first winter. The stakes were life and death. We're breathing, but barely. The real killers stalking our children are this filth and starvation. I remember the statistics from before. 30% of newborns never survived the primitive dark. It wasn't just birth. Those who lived faced a decade of plague and absolute squalor. A famine and disaster claimed the rest, but I refused to let birth be a death sentence. I cannot stop the god's wrath, but I can master the safety of the delivery room. Hygiene is my weapon against the ancient shadows that keep our survival rates so low. If I lack the natural skill, I'll trade my very soul for the system's mastery. Gender taboos burn away when the tribe's future hangs by a blood-soaked thread. My secret arts shield me. giving me the nerve to fight the infections of this world. I'm hunting every root and leaf, bracing for the diseases we haven't even named yet. Now comes the debt. 54 souls ready to wed and drain our resources dry. Recruitment through marriage sounds perfect until you calculate the crushing cost of 54 unions. The Kanji clan is a fragile thing, unable to bear such a sudden, heavy burden. 4 sheep per bride, that's 124 sheep we simply do not have. That debt would slaughter our entire flock and leave us with nothing but ghosts. Add 46 sheep for the visiting gifts, and our wealth vanishes into the dirt. Those were 2-year-old prices. The market for a life never stays cheap for long. 2 years, I realized then that marriage is a cage that bleeds men dry everywhere. My old world was no different. Single wedding could hollow out a family's entire existence. Houses and dowries costing millions turn hard-working people into beggars in a single heartbeat. It's a joy for the young, but a cold-blooded haste of the parents' survival. If it costs 4 sheep, then the price today must be a king's ransom. Damn it, I need more wealth, or I'll be leading a tribe of lonely bachelors. I won't lose face by letting my warriors rot in isolation while I talk big. I nodded to Light A. Our growing numbers demand a massive sea of livestock. To keep them here and keep them fed, we need to hunt like demons. We need every beast in the forest. Hunt harder, or we starve in silence. Light A finally saw the ghost I was chasing. The survival of our very bloodline. He looked ready to bleed for me, sensing the weight I carried for them all. I waited for my gear to dry, then cornered the cook to change the menu. I told Seppi G that offal is gold. Trotters and bamboo are our new medicine. Feed the mothers the fat. Give the children salted liver to keep them strong. Don't question the science. Just make sure they eat every scrap of iron I find. Use the tails for the toddlers and cartilage for the men with broken backs. Roast it all with salt. Even the smallest scrap is a weapon against death. Shout DNA stared as if I were a gold devouring the filth of the earth. I'm just a man haunted by the spices of a world I'll never see. A massive pig head is a treasure we're too primitive to even cook correctly. My mouth waters for a feast we can't afford, even in this wilderness. I warned her, wasting a single scrap is a crime against our collective future. She bowed in shame, realizing she'd been throwing our survival in the dirt. I drilled the lessons home until I knew she wouldn't waste another ounce. Then my commanders arrived, their faces heavy with the burden of our young. We began the count, every boy from 12 to 16. Ready for the fire. 12-year-olds held steel. 30 kids, I do a quick count, round them up, I command. Men Kwong, teach them to track every beast, every habit, every single footprint. He looks lost, diet, speed, habitat, they need to know every creature's secrets. How to hunt, how to strike, teach it all, he nods, sensing the urgency. Yes, sir, sir. I turn to Han Vu. Teach them bow making and weaving, start now. Archery practice on the field, rain or shine, they must master the bow. Spears and blowguns too, everything. He nods, dazed by the weight of it. Laiho asks of me, I reply, break them, use my training methods. Push-ups, sprints, core work, every single day until they're made of iron. He hesitates, they are so young, is this necessary? I look him dead in the eye. I shake my head, train them now or bury them later. We do not wait. He is stunned, but who will help the women gather fruit in the woods? No more foraging, I snap. We will transplant the entire forest here if needed. If there is a grove out there, we dig it up and bring it home. Understood. Laiho stops arguing. Understood. I will get them ready right now. Go bring them to me. I have something to say. They rush off. Soon 30 boys stand trembling under the eaves of the great house. They look terrified. Their parents' warnings about the great leader clearly worked. I stand before them. They are not the starving wrecks I saw in my memories. They are thin but healthy. The better rations are finally making a real difference. They stare at me. I meet their eyes with the weight of a king. This is my welcome to the end of your childhood speech. I begin. Listen up from today. The survival of this tribe rests on your shoulders. You are 12. Soon you are men. Your families will look to you for protection. The wild is a killer. You either master it or it masters you. Some animals are prey. Some are predators that will hunt you like meat. Learn to track, learn to kill. It is the only way you survive out there. Enemies are coming. I am here to turn you into the shield of this tribe. Obey these 3 men. They are your masters. I scan their frightened faces. They look confused. One boy speaks up, but leader, we cannot even hunt. Why learn this now? I give him a dark, knowing smile. If a tiger finds you tonight, do you know how to survive? He looks down. No, I lean in closer, my voice like cold ice. Exactly. If you wait until the hunt, you are already a dead man. When you are gone, what do I tell your mother? He turns ghost white. It will eat me, he whispers. I grin. Only if you let it. I won, T says, trembling. The adults around us share a dark laugh. Good, you have learned your first lesson. I turn back to the group. You follow my orders or you leave, do you understand? They shout yes. Every morning you are mine. Lateness is a crime. Discipline is your life now. We will have trials. The top 3 will earn my personal secrets of power. I lay out the law. They listen like their lives depend on it. Their faces are grave. No more games. The weight of reality has arrived. I step back and signal the trainers. The transformation of the tribe begins. I whisper to myself, the school of survival is now in session. The academy's day but paralyzed the tribe with pure, unadulterated shock. We gathered the youth flanked by our deadliest, most seasoned killers. At dusk, the kids raced home, whispering forbidden survival secrets. Their tiny faces glowed with a terrifying hunger for tomorrow's hunt. Class ended. I pulled my 3 lieutenants aside for blood-level truth. I needed a cold debrief, a reflex from my previous life ghost. How was it? I asked. Did the burden of teaching break you? Min Kwang sighed. I know the kill, Chief, but not the words. I just smiled. Giving in the answer would be a fatal mistake. You own the forest. If you can teach it, the tribe dies. Think, find the path. I know you won't fail my trust. He felt the weight of my belief and gave a sharp nod. Hando shrugged. I just shoved raw bark into their small hands. He was right. Theory is for the dead. Practice is for survivors. Hand in the real steel. Show the vein. Keep it brutally simple. Youth ignores logic but worships action. Hando had mastered the game. Laiho looked like he had swallowed glass, his brow deeply furrowed. You said punish failure, but they just fail harder under the lash. I saw his error instantly. He was hunting shadows, not the light. Stop staring at the losers. You are just teaching them how to die. Praise the killers. Watch the rest scramble to be like them. Understand? He did not get it, but he obeyed. I watched the dawn break. In this primitive dirt, we had planted the seeds of a bloody empire. I was not just leading, I was the architect of their very souls, grooming instructors to forge warriors. I was the phantom principle of war. I thought of ancient Spartan blood, children bred for the shield. They abandoned the pen for the sword, a trade I willingly made. Science is for later, breathing is the only prize that matters. We live in a black age of ignorance and sudden, violent death. I do not care about culture. I care about the tribe's lethal edge. Our children will adapt, becoming the apex predators of this savage land. I am building a future on a foundation of grit and bone. The raincoats, I snapped back to reality. Are we ready to move? I looked at my best men. Tell me the roster is locked. The elite are ready. Min Kwang confirmed. Best archers in the tribe. Good. We take the earth dragon and the 4 stallions in the deep. He flinched. Then remember the dragon's gore-stained hide from the boars? That monster is our shield. Without it, the forest eats us whole. The horses, Chief, they will bolt the moment they smell their kind. They carry our weight now. We save our strength for the kill. But if they run, if they choose the wild over our fire. I let out a low, chilling laugh. They are not going anywhere. He looked lost. He did not know the secrets of my dark art. Between the magic and the sweet grain, their wild hearts were broken. The wild is a nightmare to them now. They belong to me. I just nodded and made the call. Should we wait for the rain to break tomorrow, or just push through at dawn? We go at dawn. I'll have the cooks brew some hot chicken soup for the men. We need to warm their blood before they step into that freezing downpour. Do not worry about the weather. Even if someone catches a fever, I have the means to heal them. I said it with absolute certainty. The 3 of them agreed in unison. By the next morning, the hunters gathered at the crescent-shaped earthen house, ready for the long haul. I scanned their faces. Every man looked sharp and eager. There was none of the soul-crushing fear that Liho and the others had expected. Honestly, their confidence didn't just come from my word. It was a bold defiance of the storms that used to keep them locked away in fear. In the past, a single rainy day meant being trapped in a dark cave. They were prisoners of the weather, waiting for the sky to clear. They used to shiver from the cold and the gnawing itch of hunger, but this year, everything changed when I took over as their new chief. In a heartbeat, I had pulled the Kuning tribe out of that cycle of starvation. We were no longer victims of the seasons or the cold. Not only were they fed and warm, but I had led them to crush the Mang Long tribe and seize control of their future. We took over 90 slaves. After surviving so much under my lead, why would they hesitate to follow me into a bit of rain? When I finally emerged from the mountains, riding the earth dragon, I towered over them. The sight of me was enough to silence the wind. Standing at the entrance of the earth house, I felt like a titan. They looked at me as if I were a living god among men. 4 horses trailed behind my mount. I looked at the ready crowd, raised my hand high, and gave the signal to move out into the storm. For people in this primal era, traveling in the rain is a gamble with death. A simple chill often ends in a shallow, muddy grave. They died because they didn't know how to stay dry. To them, the rain was a curse from the heavens that they couldn't escape. Their primitive beliefs were built on fear of the elements. They worshipped the sun, the moon, the wind, and the terrifying crack of thunder. They bowed to things that could kill them. Dragons, bears, and wolves. It was a religion born out of survival and the terror of the unknown. The Kainai tribe didn't even have a totem. It wasn't because they were faithless, but because they were simply too small to matter, according to the old ways. If your tribe has fewer than 500 souls, you don't have the right to claim a divine protector. They lived in constant awe of the world around them. In their hearts, a totem was the ultimate sign of power and tribal identity. To earn one, you need the numbers to sustain it and the strength to challenge the gods of other tribes. It is a blood-soaked climb. My arrival had skipped the line for them. I brought the tools and the fire that made their dreams of a totem a near reality. My straw coats meant we own the rain now as our population grows. Claiming our own divine spirit is only a matter of time. Once we have that symbol, the smaller, broken tribes will come crawling to us for protection. We will become the center of their world. The kinder now will grow into a powerhouse, a massive alliance that will dominate the landscape. I can already see the empire we are building. Before we left, Leho pulled them aside. He told them I'd declared that our men and women would no longer be traded away. That news spread like wildfire. Everyone knew that being married off to another tribe was usually just a polite word for lifelong slavery. They would be forced into the hardest labor, fed scraps, and dressed in rags. It was a slow death in a strange, cold land. That was the fate of our tribe before I stepped in. Without my intervention, that miserable cycle would have continued until we were extinct. Min Kwang walked up to my earth dragon. He looked up at me with a mix of reverence and a hint of practical concern. This beast is powerful, chief, he said, but we are going after horses. Won't this monster just slow us down on the open plains? I don't know if the dragon understood his insult, but it suddenly snorted and whipped its heavy tail with a violent thud. It smashed a nearby tree, sending a cascade of freezing rainwater directly on Min Kwang. It soaked him from head to toe in seconds. The water drummed against his straw hat. I couldn't hold back a laugh as I watched him sputter and wipe his face in shock. You should watch what you say, I joked. He's smarter than he looks, and I think he understands every word you're complaining about. Min Kwang stared at the earth dragon in disbelief. The beast turned its massive head and locked eyes with him, showing a chilling intelligence. It gave him a look that was undeniably human, as if it were telling him to mind his tongue. Min Kwang was completely taken aback. He dropped his ego immediately. I just meant he's big, he said carefully. I wasn't too sure if he could actually keep pace with a horse. Don't worry about his speed, I said with a smile. Unless we're racing the absolute fastest stallions, he can run down anything on this grass. Min Kwang looked puzzled. Why can he catch every other horse but not the lead stallions? What makes those few so much faster? I didn't feel like explaining the mechanics of it. I just turned my gaze to the horizon, focusing on the mission ahead of us. How is the scouting report? I asked. Min Kwang snapped out of his daze and told me the Hando had already left with the wolves. They are a step ahead of us, he said admiringly. I still don't know how you got those wolves to act as our eyes and ears. I just smiled and shook my head. It's not magic, my friend. It's all about the nose. Their sense of smell is our greatest weapon. A wolf's nose is a lethal radar, sniffing out the kill before the first strike. They signal the pack instantly. I just used that. I've hunted forever, Kwang said, humbled. I caught cubs but never knew they could scout. I laughed. It's never too late. Think harder next time. Suddenly, a runner broke through. The scout had returned to us. Dudu was back. I stopped mid-sentence as the wolf bounded toward us like a maniac. He splashed through the mud and whined low. I felt my tension snap into excitement. Kwang saw my face light up. Chief, what is it? What did the beast find? He found them. A massive herd is hunkering down under the big trees just ahead. Hiding from the rain, Kwang froze. They should be on the plains. Why the forest? Animals hate the cold too, I countered. He scratched his head, finally catching on. I signaled for total silence. Stay low, I whispered a command to the lead wolf. Show us the way. Dudu wagged his tail and melted in the thick brush. He led us perfectly, glancing back to ensure we kept pace. The wolf was our guide. He's actually leading. Leho gasped. I smiled. Loyalty is a powerful thing, my friend. Horses know paths. Wolves remember the hunt. Kwang looked completely lost in thought again. Dogs, Kai chuckled. They were just future versions of these. Killers' evolution is a long game. I must teach the children this, Kwang whispered. I liked his new passion for the young. We hit the timber. I dismounted and crept toward our scout, who was shivering. Where's the prey? He pointed toward the shadows. Too close. I didn't want to die. Good call, I nodded. What are we dealing with? Give me the numbers and types. Mostly elk on the edges, some horses. Two, I frowned. No rhinos in the bunch. He shook his head. Something new. Something that does belong in these dark, wet woods. New beasts. I gripped my spear. What kind? He shuddered. Bigger than any warhorse. Do they have trees growing from their skulls? I stared. Take me to these monsters. I ordered the men to stay, keep the horses quiet, then I moved toward the brush. The pack was already in position, billies in the dirt. Watching the clearing with hungry eyes, the lead wolf threshed his tail once, a silent greeting. He knew the hunt was on. They were professionals, silent as the grave. Not a single leaf rustled as we drew closer. I knelt beside the wolves and slowly parted the ferns. My breath hitched in my chest. There they stood, titans frozen under the giant leaves, oblivious to the killers in the shadows. Elk guarded the perimeter, but the creatures behind them were unlike anything I had seen. My heart hammered. Jackpot! I hissed, we kill these, we'll eat for a year. Moose, I breathed. There were at least two of them huddled in the heavy downpour. Their antlers were massive, jagged shovels of bone, trees on their heads, the scout said. I stared at the beast. Some animals are just bad jokes played by a cruel nature. Like baboons, half horse, half monkey, but these moose, they were built for pure slaughter. They had the muscle of a stallion and the grace of a deer. A lethal combination. They weren't peaceful, they were aggressive, short-tempered tanks that lived for the fight. But the size was wrong in my old life. They were big. These were nightmares. I remembered the wildlife books. 5 feet at the shoulder was the standard for a bull. These monsters laughed at standards. They towered over the elk like gods among mere mortals. The book said 1.2 to 1.4 meters was normal for them. 1.7 was the limit, but these beasts were easily 1.8 or more. I am 1.78 meters tall, a giant here, yet I felt small. Their shoulders towered over my head. This wasn't a hunt anymore, it was a suicide mission. My chest tightened. These weren't Timur elk, they were prehistoric titans. These beasts stood worlds apart from their smaller kin, massive and lethal. Their antlers flared like jagged cacti, wider than a rhino's hide. These giants dwarfed everything in my memories, pure raw power. Most elk are docile, easily broken to the plow or cart, but these were born wild and intended to stay that way. They are the ghosts of the forest, famous for their hair trigger tempers. Have you seen them gut wolves without a second thought? Total killers. Watching them from the shadows, a dark ambition flared within me. If I broke them, I'd have an unstoppable cavalry for our tribe. We wouldn't even need steel. Their sheer mass would crush everything. This was it, the jackpot. I signaled the men to hold. I whispered to the wolves to stay put while we retreated. What are they? Min Kwang hissed, his eyes wide with unvoiced fear. A bigger than horses I breathed, my adrenaline reaching a fever pitch. Min Kwang frowned, sensing the madness behind my sudden obsession. He saw the danger, I only saw the crown they deed by me. Imagine us riding those into battle. I countered his silent doubt. No tribe could stand against us, we would be absolute gods. The power in those muscles, it's 1,000 times a horse. He crept closer to look, returning with a face pale as death. Chief, he choked out, we can take those things alive. He was right, one wrong move and those antlers become bayonets. They don't just kick, they disembowel. It's a guaranteed one-way trip. We only had sticks and stones. This was a suicide mission. Out here, nothing hunts them, even the predators give them space. Arrows might kill one, but capturing them, that's a fool surrand. Min Kwang looked at me like I'd finally lost my mind. Walking away felt like burying a fortune in the mud. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't let this miracle slip away. Even 5 of them would change our destiny forever. I needed them. Ignoring his terrified expression, I began to map out the trap. Dig the pits I ordered fast, and for God's sake, be quiet. I told the lizard to stay and guard the rear flank. Come with me. I told Hantho, we're getting the pack. I grabbed the others, my voice a low, frantic command. Reinforcements. I threw myself onto the horse and barked for him to follow. We had to move. I pushed the beast to its absolute limit. My magic kept the horses steady as we blurred through the rain. Hantho clung to the mane, his first time tasting true speed. The wind screamed past us, a cold blur of gray and green. I leaned into the gallop, focused only on the path ahead. I struck the horse's flank, demanding every ounce of its soul. We flew a desperate race against our own common sense. But as the mud splashed, a cold dread began to sink in. I shouldn't have come alone. If I backtrack now, those moose will vanish. This was a golden opportunity, I couldn't lose them. Faster, Dak Xuan, I urged. I promised him a feast of carrots, and he surged forward like a bolt. He kicked into high gear. My heart was racing as fast as his hooves. Rain sends her to the tree line. I'd hoped for wild horses, nothing more. Stumbling on moose was a shock. They looked like something from a fantasy epic. I'd always wanted a moose mount. Vicious, powerful, and absolutely lethal in a fight. And there they were, a small herd huddling under the canopy, a hunter's dream. I felt a pang of regret. I should have brought the wolf king along earlier. My own greed tripped me up. I didn't want to share the prize. Being thrifty is fine, but being cheap in the wild is a death sentence. If they bolt before I return, I'll never forgive myself for this blunder. I dug my heels in, pushing Dak Xuan. We had to hit the Rendevis. Luckily, the wolf king's haunt wasn't far. We made it in 30 minutes. I didn't even dismount. I just let out a long, piercing, desperate howl. I was calling him out, but only my own echo mocked me back. Damn it, I cursed. If that wolf stood me up, I was finished. I tried again. Wolf king, get your pack. We've got a massive score. Still nothing. He was messing with me. Payback for my earlier selfishness. Don't he do this now? I muttered. One last time, I let out a howl. Come hunt or lose the prize. I decided 3 minutes, then I go solo. It was a suicide mission alone, but those moose were too tempting to quit. Just as I was giving up, a haunting response cut the air. The wolf king emerged, followed by 30 fierce members of his lethal pack. He growled, questioning why I was alone. Just the 2 of you, he asked. My horses nearly lost it, shying away from 30 sets of hungry eyes. I fought to keep them steady. The others are waiting ahead. I lied. There's a massive herd. Deer, horses, and giants. We need you now. Then I saw it. A fresh, jagged scar ripped across the wolf king's muzzle. It ran from eye to jaw. It looked familiar. Too familiar to be chance. I'd seen that wound recently. The boar king, I whispered, blood turning cold. You fought the mountain hogs, didn't you? I asked his battered, scared warriors. Nearly 10 wolves were chewed up, from missing and skin torn from battle. This wasn't just a hunt. They'd been in a full-blown war for territory. It clicked. The wolves pushed the boars off the mountain toward my home. The boars, seeking revenge, had decided to siege my tribe's front gates. That explains the chaos 2 days ago. We were their accidental backup plan. Hell, I muttered. I was fighting your battles while you were hiding here. My guilt vanished. We were even. I'd saved his hide without even knowing. I killed a dozen of those tusked bastards. I signaled, now help me. The wolf kin did he hesitate. He looked me in the eye, ready to kill. Follow me, I told him. Drive them toward the pits, and we feast. I added a sweetener. Help me, and I'll heal those wounds of yours. His eyes sparked with predatory intelligence. He was in. My heart finally soared. I wheeled my horse around. Let's move. The pack surged forward like shadows. Years of stalking turned us into ghosts that move without a whisper. I led the pack toward the tribe, two predators becoming one shadow. We exchanged a single look before vanishing into the hidden pits. 30 men had turned the forest floor into a perfect grave. Everything was set. We only waited for the herd's final mistake. I watched the narrow gorge, a throat carved for the forest. The terrain was a funnel designed to swallow the panicked herd. I signaled the Wolf King, showing him the beast in wait. Circle them, I hissed. Drive the antlered ones to the mouth. The alpha gave a human-like nod and vanished into the mist. 15 men left, I ordered. Keep the vine nets ready now. Target the giants, let the small ones run through the chiaos. Use the stone bolas, trip them hard, no second thoughts today. My second signaled as I split the team to the right. Watch those horns once slip and you are a dead memory. I spoke to the armored beast anchored in the rear shadows. Crush the escapees, but leave the antlered ones alive for me. If the creature rumbled, shaking the mud beneath my heavy leather boots. Go, I commanded, watching the shadows reclaim my little forest army. We knew this dance of teeth stone and calculated tribal blood. Silence returned as every killer found his place in the wait. 50 horses and 30 elk grazed on the edge of extinction. I weighed their lives against the hunger of my ancient tribe. The horses meant nothing. I only wanted the kings of forest, a modern man leading a prehistoric slaughter. It felt like a dream. I silenced my mind and gripped my cold, heavy wooden bow. I targeted a buck, holding my breath against the freezing rain. He was nature's masterpiece. I was his sudden and violent end. The arrow hissed, dropping the forest god into the cold mud. I roared as I broke cover, followed by the pack's howl. The Wolf King answered with a scream that froze my marrow. The herd shattered, a wave of panic hitting the damp earth. The horses broke first, charging blindly toward the narrow death path. Screams and hooves filled the air in a gray, chaotic blur. The wolves became a wall of fur, biting at their heels. I wanted them terrified, funnel it into the mouth of our lies. The noise was our weapon, forcing the beasts in the gorge. 30 wolves surged, steering the stampede toward the hidden death pits. Hunters rose from earth, throwing bolas that hissed like deadly snakes. Animals tumbled as the stones wrapped around their frantic, breaking legs. Hold your fire, I roared, stopping the arrows from flying out. 3 massive elk fell as the first 2 volleys hit home. Trapped and terrified, the herd dove into the only open path. I kept the pressure on, driving them toward the dark bottleneck. Then came the thuds as the earth swallowed its heavy prize. Dust blinded us. We could tell how many beasts hit the pit, especially those late-moving moose. Most moose lagged behind, but 4 wild horses plunged straight in. I felt a sudden, chilling dread. The stampede halted, bellowing in terror before they fractured, scattering into the wild in total panic. Disaster erupted as the mixed herd splintered. Deer, horses, and moose all fleeing for their lives. It was every beast for itself, but while the others ran, the moose did the unthinkable. They turned back, eyes wild, charging straight toward our lines and the circling wolf pack. Fearless, I screamed, leaping and dodging as those massive beasts thundered toward us. Watch out, I yelled. I laughed. Their sheer aggression was incredible. Far tougher than anything we'd ever faced before. They dared to challenge wolves. After our tribe launched their weighted cords, the target became clear. Only the moose charged us, and our bolas brought 6 of the giants crashing down instantly. Dodging hooves, I watched them fall and laughed like a maniac. We were finally hitting the jackpot. The wolves froze for a heartbeat before crouching low, ready to tear into the charging moose. Panic flared in my chest. Over 30 wolves were about to massacre the remaining dozen moose. It would be a bloodbath. The moose did to stand a chance against that many hungry predators. I whistled a sharp, long command to the Wolf King. Dun-Tee touched the big ones with horns. The king barked back, dodging a charge. Then we have to let them pass us by. It killed me to let that prize go, but I had to swallow the bitter pill, let them. One howl from the king and the wolves parted, letting the moose bolt through the gap. They immediately pivoted, surrounding the trapped deer and horses that hadn't escaped the circle yet. The moose didn't look back twice. They vanished into the brush. Hurry, I roared to my crew. Secure those moose now. My team ignored the thrashing deer, focusing entirely on the bigger prize. Armed with clubs and thick hemp, they swarmed the downed giants, binding their legs tight. Only then did we turn back. Some deer tried to break for it, but the wolves pounced. Suddenly, the pit erupted. 2 trapped moose actually managed to leap toward the rim to escape. Out of nowhere, a massive, armored tail whipped through the air, smashing them back down. Furious, helpless bellows echoed from the depths. Then, a wild horse attempted a desperate jump. It leaped incredibly high, aiming to land right on top of a massive, scaly shadow. That shadow was our earth dragon, a living fortress of scales and muscle. And it was pissed. The beast roared, its heavy tail swinging like a wrecking ball, swatting the horse mid-flight. The horse hit the dirt, bones shattered, struggling vainly to rise. It wasn't getting back up. Damn it, I yelled. Just as another horse tried to clear the pit, there was another heavy thud. The dragon's tail flattened it. That horse didn't even twitch. It was stone cold dead on impact. Stop, I screamed, my heart sinking. You were killing them all. That's a total waste. You brute. I wanted to cry. I had told the dragon it could smash anything except the moose. I thought the pit was deep enough that the dragon was just a backup. I was wrong. Horses actually jumped, and that beast showed zero mercy. 2 swings, 2 dead horses. My horses, I groaned. I've learned my lesson. Be very careful what you tell a monster. Big guy, quit it, I shouted. Leave me at least 2 of them alive, please. Bored. The dragon swatted a nearby tree instead. It snapped, falling right onto another horse's head. Are you kidding me? I stared. The creature's raw power was terrifying and completely reckless. The dragon grunted, waddling off to sit and splash its tail in the mud. looking utterly bored. I gave up on the beast. Secure the moose first, then the horses, deer come last. My hunters moved like lightning, grabbing every living thing that was still breathing in that mess. The final count, 17 deer, 11 alive, 5 horses, but the dragon had slaughtered 2. We kept 3 horses alive plus 12 moose, 8 bulls, 4 cows. With only one minor injury, my shins were shredded, but this haul was incomparable to anything before. This win was massive, though greed made those escaped elk haunt me. I knew chasing them was a death wish without heavy dragon plate. Wolves could bring them down, but I needed these beasts breathing. I let the runners go, mercy or pragmatism. 12 remained as my prize. 4 cows meant a future. They were the heartbeat of my tribe. The crisis, how do I force these monsters to follow me? I decided on a brutal lesson. Fear is the only universal language. I signaled Min Kwang. He released a wild stallion for the demonstration. No words, I moved in, aiming to break the stallion's spirit instantly. He lashed out with lethal hooves. I just laughed at his rage. 3 times I slammed him into the dirt until he chose silence. The other horses watched, their eyes wide with a new, jagged terror. Their whinnies were prayers for mercy now, for the real devil. The bull up bolted the second the ropes went slack. The wolves snarled him back. I stepped in the kill zone. Ready? He saw me, no exit. The air turned heavy with his realization. He bellowed, brandishing jagged branch like spears meant to gut me. Watch out, Min screamed. I was already dancing with death. I dodged the lunge by a hair, seizing his crown horns in midair. Mine, I roared, pulling. He felt like a mountain of granite. He moved a single yard before locking his neck in pure defiance. Rage flare, I grabbed both horns down. You bastard. The earth shook. He fell dazed, but the fire remained in him. I mounted him before he could breathe. Then the earthquake started. He bucked with a violent, bone-snapping force to hurl me off. I buried my face in his musk, my legs acting like a vise. He roared in agony, jumping higher to shatter my very soul. Finally, the mountain broke. He stood there, heavy and defeated. I felt his spirit crumble under my weight and finally smiled. Your turn is over. Mine now. I floored him once more. He rose, but the fight had been drained from his eyes. Trapped, nowhere to run, I pointed toward the other captives. Using my will, I commanded him, go, stand with the others. He looked confused, then submitted. The crowd gasped at his obedience. He walked with a heavy, human-like shame toward my lead horse. Big Spring, my old stallion, puffed his chest to bully the newcomer. The elk froze for heartbeat. We thought he would submit. One headbutt, fast, cruel. Big Spring's ribs sang a death rattle. No escape, the elk rose like a god. Gutting the horse, he bit down, tearing hide. The horse's pride became a scream. A mouthful of gore later, I just stood there, completely paralyzed. A dying king is still a king. I'd underestimated his soul. He spat the hair out and roared, feral, excited, and still dangerous. My taming skill translated his truth. Back off, nag. I only bow to him. Think those puny humans can take you. The elk sneered. The boy scrambled away in terror. I froze. Was this beast mocking me? My first tamed moose stood firm, but others fled. No one dared approach, even a wild horse that didn't to know better tried and got bitten. The horse bolted instantly. My jaw dropped. These beasts were aggressive, but this was pure insanity. Handling this at camp would be a nightmare. Taming one took every ounce of my energy. Taming one was hard enough. Would every elk be a nightmare? Then my armored dragon stood up. It shook its massive frame, swinging its tail like a heavy mace toward a dead horse. Crack, the carcass was instantly pulverized into a heap of red pulp and shattered bone fragments. The elk recoiled, recognizing that one blow meant certain and very messy death for any creature. The dragon rumbled a telepathic message. This runt is too loud. Permission to flatten its head. I remembered how it wanted to kill my friends before just for being noisy near it. I moved to intervene, but the arrogant moose was suddenly a statue, paralyzed by pure dread. It was a classic bully. I smirked and used my high-level taming skill to speak to them. The Titan thinks you're re-annoying. He wants you dead. I mean the only thing standing between you. Follow me and live. A massive bull moose let out a low, defiant, and guttural protest. You were the one who kidnapped us. We will never go back to your camp with you. I frowned and looked at the dragon. Show them your power. They think you're just weak. The dragon's eyes turned red. It huffed and slammed its heavy tail into the wet earth. Boom, a crater opened. Mud and rain exploded everywhere, nearly knocking me off my feet. I scrambled away, but a huge glob of filth hit the lead moose right in the face. The bull went berserk, neck straining against the ropes as it tried to charge the Titan. It was a hopeless display of rage. I looked at Min Kwang, gave the command. Cut him loose. Min Kwang hesitated, but eventually sliced the ropes. The bull was finally free. It looked for an escape, saw none, then looked at the dragon. Its courage died instantly. It shrank back. I realized I'd underestimated its brains and the dragon's terrifying aura. Having Big Guy here made this simple. I told Min Kwang to untee all the moose. He was shocked. Chief, what if they flee? I shrugged and the dragon gets a feast. Min Kwang complied. Every elk was free. They considered running, but the dragon loomed very close. They stood frozen, the wolves were circling, and the giant monster was ready to strike again. I projected, carry our cargo, my people. You will never have to hunt for food again. Refuse, and I want to stop this Titan from crushing you. The elk's eyes went wide with fear. The rebellion died. Every single one stood obediently, clearly accepting their new life as servants. I had to admit, these beasts were pragmatists. They knew when they were totally beaten today. I turned to the remaining horses. Seeing the moose's fate, they surrendered without a single fight. I signaled Min Kwang Kwan to load the deer onto their backs. It wasn't about the weight. I wanted them used to being pack animals. They resisted at first, showing some wild spirit. But after the dragon slammed the ground again, they went silent and accepted the heavy packs. With the job done, I turned to the Wolf King. Your turn. What's your price today? The deal stands, he replied, 1 sheep per wolf for our help in this hunt. And heal my wounds. I almost laughed. Done. You'll get more than just 1 sheep. We began the trek home, a strange caravan moving through the pouring, cold, dark rain. The forest seemed to watch us, acknowledging the brand new power dynamic we just established. My dragon led the way, a constant reminder that nature's laws had been rewritten today. My people would be stunned to see us return with such a formidable and reluctant force. We marched toward the village, leaving the echoes of our victory deep in the wild. Throwing a wild boar along with that sheep, I was feeling generous, mostly because the wolves had done the heavy lifting. It felt wrong not to tip them for such hard work. I stared intently at the alpha, considering the deer we had. We were short on livestock, just 2 deer and 1 horse left. Should we take from the survivors, or should I head back and swap them for pigs? I watched the alpha's reaction. Maybe it was hallucination, but mentioning boars hit a nerve. He looked like he was literally grinding his teeth in frustration. I gave a firm nod. Fine. Let's patch you up first. I reached out toward the massive beast. He hesitated, then went still, allowing me to rest my palm against his skull. My eyes narrowed as I whispered the healing chant. My people had seen me mend broken men, but never a wild predator. This was a first for the tribe. They watched in stunned silence as I began the ritual on a creature of the forest. They couldn't understand why the alpha was so submissive, resting his head in my hand as if he were a common pet. In their eyes had transitioned from a great chief to the master of wolves. My mutated beast watched the scene too. The creatures I had already empowered, Dixwan and Urxe, instantly realized I was upgrading the alpha. Their eyes went wide. They began frantically pawing at the dirt, clearly envious. Each one was desperate to be the one under my hand. Only the tribesmen remained frozen. It wasn't the tea. They were slow. Their minds were just struggling to process the impossible sight. It never occurred to them that the mystical arts I used on them could be applied to the animal kingdom as well. I finished the ritual and pulled away. Just as my hand left his fur, the alpha's eyes snapped open with new life. His gaze had shifted completely. There was a spark of kinship and profound trust there now. The jagged scar was already healing. He could feel the raw power surging through his veins. He was stronger, faster, and more formidable than he ever dreamed possible. He knew this transformation came from the man standing before him. Before I could speak, he turned back to the forest. He sprinted to his pack and let out a bone-chilling howl. The entire pack answered, their voices echoing through the valley. I couldn't help but grin like an idiot. The alpha had just signaled his stance. From now on, I was part of the pack. Since he had shown such loyalty, I couldn't be cheap. After reaching our camp, it was time to settle the bill. I handed over 6 deer and 1 horse. Then I sent a runner back for 5 pigs and 5 sheep for them. The alpha accepted the tribute as a gesture of peace. I headed home with 11 deer, 7 horses, and 12 elk. We marched from the outer defense line toward the main gate. The slaves huddled in their sheds, watching us pass by. Their faces were masks of pure terror. They had never seen such a massive haul of prey brought in at once. They whispered among themselves, baffled that a hunting party of only 50 could achieve something so legendary in one trip. They realized just how powerful we were. To think they once considered raiding a tribe of this strength was sheer madness. Our new weapons must be terrifying. Every slave felt a wave of regret as they watched the mountain of meat pass. Any lingering thoughts of escaping into the woods vanished. Being a servant here was better than being dead in the wild. Hard labor was a small price to pay for survival. My reputation for being a ruthless leader had clearly reached their ears. They knew none of them would survive a pursuit if I turned my sights on them. We finally breached the inner wall. I ordered Hanshu to lead the horses and the heavy beasts to the stables while I handled the new elk. The armored lizard went back to its den. I took charge of the 12 elk, as they were the highest priority. I told Mingguan to gather everyone available. We needed to build a massive enclosure near the eastern mountain caves immediately. Mingguang hesitated for a second. You mean the cave where we store the dry hay? I gave a sharp nod. That cave was the only one big enough to hold the herd. It would serve our primary elk ranch from now on. He gathered the hunting team and got to work. They were experts at building pens, so they moved with practiced efficiency. The only challenge was the location. Building a massive structure against a cave wall required a much sturdier design than usual. These weren't sheep. They were powerful elk. The walls had to be fortress level. Mingguang took the task very seriously. Having seen how high these beasts could jump, he wasn't taking any chances. He personally oversaw the heavy timber placement. They buried thick black timber 3 feet deep into the earth, leaving 10 feet of solid wood towering above the ground. The logs were polished and tight. If an elk tried to ram them, their antlers would simply slide off the slick surface. We finished the exterior with stone reinforcements and a layer of spikes, the gold standard for cutting the tribal defenses. I watched every single post go into to the ground. We worked well into the evening because these animals were far too valuable. These elk were the foundation of my vision. They were the key to building the most powerful cavalry the world had ever seen. Persistence finally paid off, pen secured, released. The wild beast paced, eyes full of hatred. Antlers cracked timber until bone finally gave up. Strip the bedding, let the cold hunger bite. No soft hearts, heat-tempered spirits need iron hands. Break them like hawks, deny them every rest. No food, no sleep, only total submission. 19 mounts total my small little war party. The carrot and the stick, ancient proven ways. I ordered the hunters into the hot springs. 2 cauldrons of mutton stew to fight frost. Roots and broth, armor for the lungs inside. Monsoon season kills more than any enemy blade. One fever could bury this entire lineage tomorrow. I fed the great beast fresh, peeled bamboo. Why is a vegetarian creature so damn violent? Even pandas kill when the world turns cold. His savage temper was our salvation today. 12 moose caught, 2 days until we ride. 7 horses, 12 moose, 19 riders total. 19 demons of war, a bloody, beautiful vision. Small numbers, but they will fear our charge. To plains next, more hooves, more power. My dream of cavalry is finally breathing now. Armor is life, a naked rider is dead. Protect the mounts or lose the entire war. Stupid rhinos, standing there in the freezing rain. Do they have secrets or just mindless skulls? I brought spears for hide and for bone. Rhino skin is better than any metal shield. I remember the boar king's lethal white tux. Leather saved Hanlu's heart that bloody day. We missed the rhinos but found the deer. My fist tightened, the hunt continues forever. I checked the children before the night fell. School at dawn, death by the late afternoon. My generals are hungry, no one argued today. No one is sick, the front line holds. My grass coats defied the heavens themselves. The elder approached me with very grim news. Only 60 coats, we are dangerously exposed. We used to mistakes, the women are still learning. Forget it, the woods are deadlier than before. 60 warriors, we move out now. The rain won't hide our enemies today. The sky bleeds cold rain, masking the scent of the predators closing in. 3 men stare at me, their eyes desperate for a reason to live. I tell them the storm is a gift, a shroud for our ambition. While others cower, we hunt, we build our legion in the mud. We will emerge as steel-clad ghosts that no man dares to challenge. When the clouds break, the plains will belong to the ruthless. Let the weak sleep. We take the world they were too afraid to keep. Our sons want to be sold. Our daughters will never know exile again. No more begging for scraps. No more trading blood for a full billy. We arm ourselves, we grow. That is the new law. Do you understand? I asked. Look into their hollow, hungry souls. They nodded. I held their children's slubs in my calloused hands. I saw the fear in their eyes turn into a dark, violent hope. Years of being hunted were ending. The tide was finally turning. My word was final. This tribe is the only home they will ever need. Yes, great chief, they move with a terrifying, newfound purpose. Bring back the rhinos and the stallions. Bring me everything that breathes. I sent them into the gray abyss, then turned to the shadows. Is the hemp processed? I whispered to the old man waiting there. Cleaned and dried, just as you commanded, he replied, trembling. Good, today we weave the fabric of a new empire. 2 suits for us, the rest is bait for the greedy. He knew a single bolt of cloth is worth more than a life. 1 shrug can buy a dozen kings, he muttered in awe. Prepare the timber and the sinew. I will build the machines myself. He didn't know the words, but he felt the weight of my power. My mind is a graveyard of technology from a dead world. I see the gears turning in the dark, grinding against my sanity. The system demanded 400 achievement points, a heavy, digital toll. I didn't hesitate. In this hell, the slow already buried. I had the points, I had the will. I paid the price. 600 left, the cost of playing God is rising every hour. I closed my eyes and signaled the cold, invisible machine in my head. Task finished. Give me my blood money. I hissed into the void. The interface flickered blue, a ghost light in this primitive dark age. Confirm, use 200 points for the secret of the spinning wheel. Confirm, use 200 more for the mastery of the loom. I gritted my teeth as the forbidden knowledge burned through my skull. Then a new window bled across my vision, red, predatory, hungry. Tier 2 reach, you have spent 10,000 lives, I mean points. Credit limit unlocked, 2,000 points, interest is 5%, accept. Alone, a lifeline, a news made of neon and light. 10 days to pay it back, I whispered, a devil's bargain. You want to own my soul, done to you, I asked the silence. I reached for the button, power now, a price I can imagine later. So that's the deal, damn, I spat, this is robbery back home, usury is a crime. Annual rates can top 24%, you're recharging 5% for 10 days, you're a shark system. The why flicker, those are Earth's laws. Chief, you read in my world now, I set the terms. Think of it as a black market credit card, use it or done tea. The system's arrogance was suffocating. It was a take it or leave it ultimatum. I was the chief, but here I was just a debtor. I recalled a friend, 15 credit cards deep, living a nightmare on borrowed time. Now that was me. I hit activate with a grim laugh. I never imagined in Raw Peak's system would offer subprime loans. It meant I could skip the grind and buy skills now, even with a zero balance. Borrow today, pay in 10 days. Simple, but the what if note at my gut. A ruined score, slashed limits, or total termination. It was corporate hell in a new dimension. It was a twisted mirror of old world debt traps, surprisingly sophisticated and twice as dangerous. I stared at my measly 500 achievement points. In this high stakes game, I was practically broke. Even with the credit line, the elite skills were still tantalizingly out of my price range. I needed 3,000 points for metal arts. If I didn't demodernize our defenses, we were dead. Stone tools belonged in the past. Leho returned then, hauling the materials for the next phase. I accessed the spinning wheel blueprints in my mind, visualizing every gear. It was time to build. I followed the mental schematic, substituting hemp rope with cured animal tendons for maximum durability. The machine finally took shape. It looked primitive, but the engineering was centuries ahead of its time. I fed the raw hemp in. The wheel whirred, spitting out uniform cord faster than 20 men. The first spool was finished. Leho and his men stared at it like it was gold. Building it took a full day of sawing and sanding. Most of my time went into fabrication. I walked Leho through the second machine. He was slow, but the necessity of survival coached him. Eventually they caught on. The rhythmic clicking of spindles began to echo through the settlement. Next came the loom. It was a beast compared to the spinner. Larger, complex, and far more demanding. 2 days of drilling and carving left my hands blistered and my patience wearing thin. By day 3, the loom was ready. Leho's team had processed every scrap of bark. I loaded the spools and threw the shuttle. The first inch of tribal fabric began to materialize. It was grueling work. After 30 minutes, my back was screaming. I called the women to learn. I watched them master the rhythm. Once the production line was steady, I moved to other tasks. They say men plow and women weave for a reason. This precision was torture for me. I'm done with the loom. But for the tribe's women, this is a portal to a revolution. They were wide-eyed. They'd heard I was ending the trade of daughters. No more selling our children. The fear of their daughters suffering in foreign tribes vanished. In its place was a fierce loyalty. They worked with a desperate intensity. I wasn't just giving them cloth. I was giving them hope. I retreated to my tent and pulled up the interface. System mission report. I whispered. Spinner complete. 200 points. Loom points. The blue light washed over me. 900 points total. I'd spent 400 to earn 400 a wash. The fabric would yield more points soon. But first, I had to check my high-risk investment. I headed to the pens. Minquan had been pulling double shifts guarding our captured deer. They were on a hunger strike. Initial terror had been replaced by a cold, wild spite. These beasts chose starvation over the cage. They were wasting away, their rib cages pressing against hides. They were trapped in high pens, their wild nature clashing with the wood and the loss of freedom. 2 stags lunged at me, their antlers crashing against the timber like a heavy hammer. The defense held. Now they stood skeletal and defiant at the cave entrance, visibly wasting away. They just stared at Minquan and the guards with hollow, haunting eyes. Unbroken but dying. Bamboo jarred them awake. Tormund paused. I arrived. Broken pride pleased me. Brine hollowed their guts. Hunger silenced their spirit. They stopped fighting twice. Their rebellion finally died. Dull eyes met mine. Bring the hot grain. The salty maize. Hatred turned to void. Submission was a bite. I tossed green betrayal. Pride fought empty guts. Scent worked its magic. Steam carried salty lure. Nostrils flared for scent. Suspicion warred with hunger. Eat and lose yourself. Frozen before tempting defeat. Once meant chains, I waited for collapse. Biology broke iron wolves. Water couldn't stop starvation. I stripped their world. Their agony was comedy. Aroma fueled their desperation. The weak broke first. One bite infected everyone. Stomachs roared like drums. Hunger drowned the rain. Dignity vanished with corn. Greed replaced their rage. Traitors chewed with shame. Chaos for the scraps. 2 fought for scraps. Chaos over 2 bundles. Strong shoved the weak. Kings became my cattle. A trail of honor died for food. Into my dark shadow. Stairs turned to begging. Full blaze hollow souls. We did it. I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. I scrambled down the ladder and signaled Mung to Kwang to unbolt the gate. I hauled out the massive Sika buck, the one with the mangled leg. Just minutes ago, it had been a pathetic, broken thing. It was the run of the herd, constantly bullied even by the does. If I had secretly tossed it extra greens, it would have starved by now. Still, the stubborn beast fought the lead, its neck muscles bunching as it tried to bolt. Stop playing the martyr, I hissed with a cold smirk. You already ate my bribe. I jerked the line, forcing it to heel. I gripped its mane with one hand, locking its head in place. I could feel its wild, frantic pulse beneath my palm. Let's see if this changes your tune, I muttered. I closed my eyes, focusing the raw, buzzing energy at my fingertips. I began the ancient wood path rite, chanting under my breath. The buck bucked once, then went stone cold still as the surge hit. A wave of pure, unnatural vitality flooded its system. The animal's rag breathing slowed in a deep, rhythmic hum of power. Its eyes snapped open, glowing with an eerie, intelligent clarity. I slowly pulled my hand away and loosened the rope. There, that leg should be better than new, I said. To my surprise, the beast didn't T-bolt or try to gore me. The aggression had vanished. Replaced by a strange, haunting curiosity, it leaned in, sniffing my jacket with a soft grunt. It was thanking me. I reached out and scratched that sweet spot behind its ears, and it actually leaned into my hand. The buck closed its eyes, completely surrendered to the moment. My plan was working. I was building something far more than a pet. You've tasted power now, I whispered. Done make me regret this. You're my pioneer. The first of a superior breed. I led it back to the enclosure. From this moment on, I declared, your name is Spring, the season of rebirth. The buck let out a sharp, resonant call, almost as if it understood the weight of its new, manufactured identity. I shoved it back into the pen and latched a door. Min Kwang stood there, looking completely lost and slightly terrified. Boss, you went through all that trouble just to play vet? He asked, scratching his head in the dim light. "Just watch," I replied, a cold grin spreading across my face. We both scrambled up the ladders to witness the aftermath. Below us, the enclosure was about to become a battlefield. Spring didn't he look like the limping loser he was 10 minutes ago? He paced with a lethal, fluid grace. The other bucks sensed the shift immediately. The air in the pen turned electric. They circled him, confused by the lack of a limp. When Spring moved, he didn't just walk. He owned every inch of dirt. Two large males approached, sniffing the air. They caught the scent of something alien. Something that didn't belong in nature. They recoiled, sneezing as if they'd inhaled ash. That slight was all the provocation Spring needed to unleash his fury. With a guttural roar, he lunged. He slammed his skull into the buck on his left, sending it sprawling into the mud. The buck on his right tried to counter, lowering its jagged rack and charging with everything it had. The sound of clashing antlers echoed like a gunshot. They stayed locked for a second, muscles quivering under the strain. Then Spring surged forward. The other buck crumbled, stumbling back 5 paces while Spring barely moved an inch. In the wild, there's no mercy, only submission. The loser tucked its tail and slunk away into the shadows. But Spring wasn't done. He turned on the rest of the pack, eyes burning with a newfound, terrifying dominance. He became a blur of brown fur and bone. He struck left, then right, giving them zero time to coordinate an attack. One by one, the champions of the herd fell. Min Kwang gasped, his eyes wide with disbelief at the carnage below. "What did you do to him?" he whispered. "Why are they all so afraid of one deer?" "I just watched, mesmerized. I didn't just heal him. Man," I said softly, "I rode him. He carries my spark now. And they know it. I remember how the horses had reacted when I first used the right. Nature doesn't like it when you cheat the system. The strong don't just survive. They rewrite the rules." Spring was now the law in this pen. Whether they liked it or not. Min Kwang looked worried, "But if he's different, won't they eventually team up and kill him?" he asked. I shook my head. "Look at him. He is faster, stronger, and meaner than anything born in the woods. He is the future." Before I could finish, the pen erupted again. 7 bucks had challenged him, and 4 were already face down in the muck. Spring stood in the center, head held high, looking for the last 3 holdouts. He was goading them into a fight. "Not bad," I chuckled. "Let I see who breaks first." Power is a heavy crown, even for a beast. The creature I'd named Spring was no longer just a deer. He was a weapon. He moved with a terrifying, singular purpose. By the time the dust settled, he stood alone. A single scratch on his shoulder was the only price he paid for the throne. He stood tall in the drizzling rain, steam rising from his flanks. He looked up at me, a king acknowledging his creator. I stood there, drenched and grinning like a madman. That trek through the downpour wasn't for nothing. I signaled like H to throw the gate open. Min Kwang hesitated, his nerves clearly on edge, but seeing the massive bull, Lepek Swan, practically gloating inside changed everything. His worry turned into raw adrenaline. Had I really broken the entire herd in a single session? It seemed like a miracle. Hope flared in his eyes. I'd told him my plan. We were going to build a mounted unit that would change our fate. I'd promised him these giants would outclass any horse on the battlefield. If this worked, we would be unstoppable. He wondered if I'd let him ride one, but his loyalty kicked in first. He was terrified for my safety. A dozen enraged moose could trample a man to pulp in seconds. He was ready to be my shield if the beasts turned. The clan could survive without him, but not without me. He watched, breathless, as I stepped into the enclosure. To his shock, the herd did charge. Led by Lepsoon, every massive creature bowed their heads in total submission to me. Lepsoon let out a triumphant cry and trotted over, nuzzling my shoulder. He was like a proud soldier seeking a promotion. I patted his massive skull. "You did well," I whispered. Then I turned my attention to the rest of the submissive herd. Lepek soon had clearly beaten them into line already. I pointed to one bull and signaled Min Kwang to bring it over. He wavered, terrified the beast might suddenly gore him. I just laughed and told him to relax. Min Kwang gingerly reached for the lead. The bull's instincts flared, and it lowered its head to strike. I let out a sharp grunt. Beside me, Lephapson let out a thunderous bellow, ready to crush the rebel. The bull instantly went limp, surrendering completely to Min Kwang's grip. I nodded. "This one is yours now." Min Kwang's face lit up with pure joy. "My own mount." I nodded again. "Take him for a spin. If you can handle him, go fetch Han and the others. Everyone gets their own ride today." He was ecstatic, but as he looked at the towering animal, he scratched his head. "Chief, he's too tall. How do I get up?" I couldn't help but laugh. He was barely 5 feet 7 inches. He didn't even reach the creature's shoulder. I realized I'd overlooked the logistics. "Go grab some leather hides and padding," I ordered, "and bring the whole crew back here. Don't keep us waiting. Get on the and then immediately he sprinted off, fueled by excitement. While he was gone, I turned back to the rest of the herd. I walked toward a slightly smaller bull and placed my hand on its head. Without a word, I channeled the life evolution art, flooding the beast's system with raw, revitalizing energy. The creature trembled with fear at first, but then it went unnaturally still, absorbing the power I forced into it. The transformation was swift. When I pulled back, the bull's eyes held a new, chilling clarity. It looked at me with the same eerie devotion as Latupswan. It knew exactly what kind of godlike gift I just bestowed. Like his leader, this bull was suddenly brimming with aggressive energy, eyeing the others as if looking for a fight. It began provoking the nearby males, itching to test its new strength. It wanted blood. blood, and it wanted it now. Only the presence of Letupsoon and myself kept the peace. Damn, I thought this was supposed to happen. My evolution art was acting like a lethal stimulant. It was turning these peaceful herbivores into hyper-aggressive predators. Was there a dark side to this power? Was I accidentally breeding monsters instead of mounts? I thought of my other beasts. Aduzu, the earth dragon. They all shared this burgeoning bloodlust. Yet, the humans I'd empowered didn't seem affected. Why were the animals turning so violent? I couldn't wrap my head around it. Hunda and the boys were fine, so I decided to push the worry aside for now. If the side effect was just a bit of aggression, I could live with that. We needed fighters, not pets. At least they'd have the guts to charge in a battle against rival tribes or jungle predators without flinching. Their new combat drive would keep them alive when the world turned cruel. They'd be the edge we needed. Min Kwang returned shortly, trailing Li A, Hunda, and the rest of the elite guard behind him. I'd summoned them because they were the strongest warriors we had. They were the foundation of our new era. They were vibrating with excitement, sensing the shift in power. Min Kwang handed me the supplies I'd requested. Right there in the dirt, I sliced the hides and rigged a makeshift stirrup and saddle. I strapped it onto the first bull. I took the reins and decided to show them how it was done. Watch closely, I told the stunned crowd. I grabbed the mane, planted my left foot in the loop, and swung my body up in one fluid, practiced motion. Within a heartbeat, I was perched firmly atop the massive beast, looking down at my men like a king. The beast's hot breath hit my neck, a humid promise of violence if I let go. It bucked wildly, but I wrenched the leather straps, forcing its primal will to shatter. It reared up, a towering titan of muscle, before finally falling still under my command. I slid off its massive back, telling Min Kwang his new weapon was finally broken. Spend time with it, I warned. Once the storm breaks, we ride for blood. His eyes gleamed with greed, while the others watched with a hunger bordering on madness. He grabbed the reins, desperately trying to mimic the dominance I had just displayed. The creature flared its nostrils but stayed grounded, its spirit successfully crushed by my hand. The wild had been shackled, turned into a mindless tool for the coming slaughter. Take your pick, I said, gesturing to the restless herd of monsters behind me. They stared at the beasts like starving men staring at a feast of raw meat. They hesitated, their fear masking their ambition as they looked to me for guidance. I pointed to the largest one, Letupsoon, whose veins I had secretly infused with power. It was the alpha, a perfect match for a man blinded by his own pride. He bowed in gratitude as I turned to Liecha, selecting a resilient silver buck. This one fought the longest, I noted. It has the heart of a survivor. I promised to strengthen its bloodline once he had finished breaking its soul. I signaled to Than Na, offering him the second beast I had magically forged. Careful, I whispered to him. This one has a taste for human rebellion. They moved in unison, shadows claiming their respective monsters as the air grew cold. The animals stayed frozen, paralyzed by the aura of the horror I carried within. They mounted up, feeling the raw, unnatural power thrumming beneath their heavy saddles. They climbed down breathless, pouring out empty words of gratitude for their new toys. Min Kwang asked if I would name their new weapons, as I had the others. I decided to name them after the shifting cycles of a dying world. Lepksoon Viathi, Kin Trap, names for the seasons of our inevitable destruction. Then Mun Sipis Yurab, the list went on, marking the countdown until the end. 12 beasts for 12 months, a calendar written in blood and heavy hoofprints. They cheered in unison, but I only smiled at the weight of the news. The cavalry was born. They asked why I did not claim a beast for myself. I have no need for these, I said, glancing toward the dark, silent cave. Min Kwang paled as the realization of what I truly rode finally sank in. He remembered the earth dragon, a living mountain that ground human bones to dust. Who gets the rest, he stammered, his voice shaking with sudden, sharp realization. The trials, I replied coldly, only the strongest will survive the final selection. The winners get more than just beasts, they get my blood and my steel. Performance is the only currency here. The weak can wait for the rotting scraps. The 4 leaders looked smug, unaware of the target I'd just painted on them. They thought they were chosen. They didn't realize they were just my first experiments. Tell the men, I commanded. Their rank in the hunt determines their survival. I didn't tell him that every man was destined to be changed forever. Every soldier in this tribe was eventually going to become something entirely inhuman. I used the competition to feed their bloodlust, making them into sharper, deadlier blades. The village became a factory of war, humming with a dark and desperate energy. They spent days riding their monsters, oblivious to the price of their new power. They swarmed me, eyes wide, chanting about beasts they've finally broken. My elk riders are home. One brags about a near-death kick, another about staying upright. It's a chorus of desperate pride. These grown killers report like toddlers with new toys. I nod, the weight of their world on me. Their boastful noise gives me a migraine. 3 days for one beast, it's pathetic. Really, if I took the reins, I'd make those elks fly in seconds, but I keep the mask on. I can't crush their spirits. I have the cheat codes, they only have their calloused hands. While the riders gloat, the rest of the pack is starving for a chance. Training in the shadows. They know the stakes. My tournament is coming. 3 crowns for the 3 strongest. It's not just about the mounts, it's the power. The meridian awakening only I can provide. Throw in a custom-built bow, and these men would kill their own shadows to win. Dust rises from the compound, small, violent circles forming, testing bone against bone. They're full now, warm and fed, which makes them more dangerous. They know the value of the man beside them. No one wants to draw blood yet, but the bloodlust has already leaked down to the children. The boys used to just follow the masters. Now, they're hunting for a scrap of glory. Rebellion or ambition, a few ringleaders are pushing the limits, and the vibe is shifting fast. I dropped 200 points into the system, a lethal military curriculum for these little monsters. I hand the scroll to Henthu. I won't do it myself, not again. I spent a lifetime giving presentations and writing reports. That soul-crushing boredom stays in my past life. The kids are literal ticking bombs of energy now. They learn the kill strikes, then look for targets. They're tearing the longhouses apart. Too much food, too much training, not enough war. I see the chaos in their eyes. Time to give the devil some work. I summon Laiho. Laiho looks at the stampeding children and flinches. He thinks I'm about to snap. He offers to lock them away. I shake my head. This isn't anger. It's an opportunity. They need to hit something, I tell him. He stares back, completely lost. Why use kids when we have men? He doesn't get it. I'm building an army from the roots. I order him to wrap massive logs in 18 layers of hide, hang them under the eaves. 10 or 8, he asks, squinting. The stupidity is almost physical. 10, I growl. He scurries off before I lose my mind. I'm surrounded by idiots. A primitive sandbags, a place for their knuckles to bleed until they're too tired to scream. The men train, the women weave. The jeers of a civilization are finally starting to grind. We're moving from survival to a system. Everyone has a role. Except for me? I'm the ghost in the machine. Too much time to think. Too much time to remember. I go to find my grandfather, looking for a tether. I find a hollow shell instead. My healing magic mends the flesh, but the mind, it's a void. The light is gone. Biology I can fix. The soul is out of my reach. I'm a god with no answers. The secret's locked in his head. The memories of our lineage are dying with him. Is this some ancient inheritance, or just a glitch in the simulation I'm living in? Honestly, who cares? I have the system. I can buy destiny for 200 points. But the silence in that room haunts me. I need noise. I need a distraction. I move the tournament up, no warning, just like a pop quiz in a nightmare. The tribe erupts, fear and adrenaline. They're rolling up sleeves, ready to prove they exist. The first gong, the games begin today. A whim of a bored leader. Everyone crowds into the central courtyard. 78 hunters, stripped and ready. 6 group, 13 men each, archery, heavy lifting, and raw, unfiltered wrestling. Only 12 will survive the first cut. Let's see who really wants to be a god. 3 rounds remain, 3 survivors left to claim the final crown. The stakes are lethal. I rigged the brackets to save the best. I split the titans, kept hanging at sea, and the sharks separate today. One rule holds. Challenge the legends if you dare to step up. Champions need rest. I control the clock and the chaos here. No killing allowed, spill blood, and you are exiled from our clan. I built this circus, judging this madness is draining my soul. Every prop was ready, I moved like a spinning top all day. Finally, I sat, the grand judge watching his own creation breathe. No anthems today. I skipped the speeches to find the cold truth. You are our shields, you feed us or we all starve. Show the tribe your worth, prove why we still deserve to live. The prize, my own bow, plus a power you cannot imagine. Pick your beast, the hunters roared and beat their chests hard. Hope is a drug, the crowd cheered for their new champions. I signaled the start, first blood. The archery range, focus now. 20 square meters of hell. The targets look miles away here. I gave them toys, flimsy bows to test their real skill. Hemp strings, no tension, they had to fight for every inch. Accuracy would fail, that was the point, adapt or die today. Space was tight, the lesson was control, not just distance. Feel the wood, master the weakness in your own shaking hands. Real hunters control strength, brutes just break things. I watched closely. This wasn't a game, it was a cold senses of survival. Changning stepped up, the commander barked, 6 arrows flew. Clumsy hands, 1 arrow fell short in the mud, pathetic. Too much force, the arrow sailed way over the mark. Snap, a broken bow. I didn't even blink at the failure. Next round, 3 shots to prove you are not a child. Best score wins, some hit 9, most were barely close. 7s and 8s, no gold, the pressure was eating them alive. Min Kwang looked ashamed. Chief, these bows, they are just wrong. I nodded. Tang Nasi was holding it together, a true professional. That kid to see, he has the spark. I watched him. Min Kwang was sweating. Next group, or should we switch? Keep shooting. I said I needed to see them all break. Not a trophy hunt. I was mapping their very souls today. Min Kwang didn't get it. He just waved the next forward. Then Na hit 9 better, but still far from perfect. The rest were a mess. Then the third group arrived. Sun Chifeng was there. The boy had heart, but skill. Min Kwang was shaking. His own son was on deck now. A miracle shot. Sekfeng at 10, first gold today. Min Kwang beamed. Look, Chief, my boy did it. Gold. I stared at the target. Sagu Feng and the Amaziasi. Hope. He's nearly as good as Han, but Mew's youth and raw power give him the edge over Feng. Feng might hit the bullseye now, but the heavy lifting and wrestling will crush him. Kwang's lobbying hard. I had to laugh. It is just a local tribal contest. Yet Kwang is already playing favorites in politics. I kept my face like stone, just a nod. I told him I would watch and see. That is the trick. Being a leader taught me one big thing: stay neutral. Do not say yes. Do not say no. Keep them guessing. It works every time. Kwang started sweating, looking like a man standing on thin ice after my silence. He scrambled for words. Chief, is not what you think. I just wanted you to see the boys hustle. I could not hide the smirk anymore. Relax, I get it. He looked unsure, caught between hope and pure fear. He did not dare push it. I shook my head. We are one tribe. No backdoors here. Everyone gets their shot. The archery round wrapped up. Everyone was pretty close, mostly limited by the quality of their bows and arrows. The best shooters hit the 9 ring. Only 8 elite warriors managed to put it right in the 10. I had the full picture now. I knew exactly who had the steady hands and who was just lucky. Those 8 in the 10 ring, they are my ghosts, my snipers. I will teach them the art of shadows, especially with our terrain. Then there are the 22 guys who hit the 9 ring. They are my main line. I will mold them into a wall of iron, whether hunting or at war. I need them to be lethal. 1 shot, 1 kill, that is the standard. The rest of them, well, they've got a long way to go. The tribe was hooked. Before, they were just trying not to starve. Now they have got time for some sport. Not everyone could compete, but the sidelines were packed. The cheering was loud. The energy was getting pretty wild. They started heckling, laughing, shouting, trying to rattle the shooters. I just sat back and let it happen. The noise escalated. Hey Mo, you skipped breakfast. You look weak. Hey Stone, where is all that muscle gone? Quad, watch your aim or you will hit a tree. The chaos was deafening. Kwang and the others looked annoyed. They marched over to me, faces red. Chief, it is too much. The shooters cannot focus with all this screaming. I ignored them. I was watching Leaf. This little kid was literally jumping in front of him, making faces. The kid was screaming at the top of his lungs. Big brother Leaf, look at me. Look over here. One of the hunters barked at the kid to shut up, but Leaf just gave a calm, dangerous little smile. Hey kid, you better hope I hit the mark. If I miss, this arrow is finding your backside hard. The kid turned pale and bolted, hands over his butt. Leaf just drew his bow back, smooth and steady. He let it fly, a clean whistle through the air, thwack, right in the 10 ring. Perfect. Not bad. I looked at Kwang and the rest. You really think I should make them be quiet for the shoot? They both nodded fast. Yeah, the noise is a distraction. They cannot concentrate with all that yelling going on. I shook my head. You think a tiger is going to wait for silence? You think an enemy stands still? The world is loud. Beasts run. Enemies throw stones and scream for your blood. They will not give you peace. If they cannot handle a little heckling, they're dead in the field. They realized then. The noise was the test. Archery ended, and we moved to the weights. It was simpler, just raw power versus heavy stones and iron. I needed to see the baseline. I needed to know exactly how much gas was left in their tanks. Most of them crushed it. A third of the guys were actually asking for more weight on the bars. They did not know my real plan, so when I said no to more weight, they just shrugged and moved. The main event was wrestling, but the sun was dropping fast. Everyone was drained from the first 2 rounds. I called it for the day. We would finish the wrestling tomorrow. I wanted them fresh for the real fight. To celebrate, I ordered a slaughter. Chickens, sheep, and wild boar. We were going to feast like kings tonight. We built a massive bonfire in the yard. The tribe sat around the flames, eating meat and drinking deep. I stood in the center, the firelight catching my face. They looked at me like I was some kind of god. I had a leg of lamb in one hand and a clay cup in the other, but inside, I felt heavy. Death dance in firelight. Cold Sul. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. One moment I am modern, the next I am a ghost in this primitive wasteland. I stand among these savages, forced to drag them towards civilization while my soul feels like it is drifting in time. Life is a heavy drama, yet there is not a drop of grain alcohol to dull the constant, etching edge. I remember my days as an archaeologist in Tibet long before this world swallowed me whole and spat me out here. I can still taste that Highland barley wine. I was never a heavy drinker, but that flavor is etched in my mind. Pale gold liquid with a floral scent. The first sip was a chaotic war between tartness and a sharp, bitter bite. Then came the fire, a spicy warmth blooming in my throat, chasing away the cold with every heavy, burning swallow. But the finish, that lingering sweetness rising back up like a ghost, left me with a warmth I simply cannot even describe. Corn liquor might work too. Once the harvest is in, I will build a still and find my solace in grain. Alcohol kills infections and masks this bland diet. For now, this makeshift feast is all the luxury I can afford. It is an imperfect celebration, but perfection is a ghost. The Jiang people do not demand much from this hard life. They have full bellies and a warm fire, which is more than they ever dreamed of having in this wilderness. Watching them laugh while the rain hammers the world outside, this is a happiness they have never known until today. After breakfast, the tribe flocked to the great house, buzzing with the raw, nervous energy of today's wrestling matches. Yesterday was a warm-up, today is blood and bone, one-on-one combat where there is nowhere for a man to hide. I lined the arena with thick hay. I want them tested, not broken. We cannot afford any permanent casualties here. My rules were absolute: fight hard, but do not kill your brother. Cross that line, and you are cast out. I let Men Kwang and Leho take the lead from the first pairing. The room's energy reached a fever pitch. Tang Ro growled at Huangshi, reminding him of the meat he had sacrificed. He better not lose this fight. Wang Yi promised a bribe of extra rations if he won. The air was thick with playful high-stakes threats. Keep dreaming. Yin Shang laughed. If your father hears that, he will skin you alive before the sun sets tonight. I taught these hunters some basics, but muscle memory is a slow learner. They had not mastered the art yet. Wrestling was foreign to them. To these men, a struggle was usually a desperate fight to the very death. What should have been technique quickly devolved into a chaotic, primitive brawl of pure, unadulterated, and raw physical strength. They squared off in pairs, locking arms like titans, trying to move mountains with nothing but their bare hands. Then that Feng shifted, he caught Thano off guard, throwing him over his shoulder in one fluid, violent motion. I called the win for that Feng. The crowd went silent, realizing the game had just changed in a heartbeat. They saw it then, no lethal blows were allowed, but every dirty trick was fair game for the ultimate win. Min Kwang looked horrified, scratching his head. Chief, I will beat some honor back into him later, he muttered. I laughed. Min Kwang thought winning with a trick was a stain on a warrior's pride, but he was wrong. So next time we hunt a rhino, I countered, should we just stand there and let it gore us fairly? He went pale. No one survives a rhino charge. That is suicide, he admitted, shaking his head in confusion. Exactly, if you cannot win head on, you win however you can. He still looked uneasy, clinging to old ways. I cut him off. He followed my rules. He won. That is the only lesson that matters for our survival. Silence fell as he chewed on my words. The Feng had just rewritten the rules of their entire existence. The matches shifted instantly. The raw brawling vanished, replaced by a tense, predatory caution that chilled the room. Every move became a probe. They waited for the slightest blink, then struck like vipers when the opening appeared. This was my goal. I needed them sharp, suspicious, and ready for a world that shows no mercy at all. The Feng's dirty win was the perfect catalyst. I just sat back and let the lessons sink into them. It took 2 days instead of 1. The stakes were too high for anyone to rush into a fatal mistake. They knew only the top 2 from each group would move on to the final glory, and my blessing. The prize was more than pride. It was the chance to lead and master the new weapons I promised. By the 3rd day, the dust settled. 12 men stood tall, the survivors of a brutal, psychological meat grinder. Tang Ro, Huang Xia, and the others. The Elite 12, these were the monsters I had forged for the tribe, the strongest force we had. Now, it was time for the second phase of this deadly and necessary game. We sailed through the first 3 rounds, but suddenly the target ring shrank, turning the match into a nightmare. 10 pairs of eyes locked onto me as I tested the bow. They all just shook their heads in doubt. No one believed we could hit a speck that small. Then stepped up first, his voice tight with frustration. This bow is too stiff and the target is invisible. I didn't answer. I just scanned their defeated faces. Anyone else think they can do it? More head shakes. I turned my gaze toward Han Thu, our best shot. How about you, Han? He rubbed his neck, grabbed the bow from Thana, and took a deep breath. He leaned into the string, muscles taut, eyeing the distant plate-sized target before letting the arrow fly with a hiss. It struck the mark. An 8, everyone knew Han Thu was elite, but the pressure today was on another level. To hit an 8 on a target that small was incredible, yet he looked like he had failed us. He bowed his head in shame. I waved it off. You did fine. You proved it can be hit. Give me the bow. The air practically sizzled. Most of these warriors had only heard rumors of my skill. Only a few veterans had actually seen me hunt. To the rest, my accuracy was just a campfire legend. Now, they were finally going to see the truth. I took the weapon from Han Thu, my heart racing. I felt a twinge of nerves. These bows were replicas of the light trainers I used back in my old life. My old coach gave me these to build muscle memory. Tools for a beginner, not a tribal war chief. My men were used to heavy longbows and massive targets. This game of precision was completely foreign to them. But for me, this was muscle memory. I left my judge chair and stepped up to the firing line. I took the spot then and just left. One breath, I notched the arrow and let the world fade. A soft exhale, a slight tilt of the head, and I let it rip. Bullseye, the fletching hummed. The crowd gasped. From the moment I stood there to release, it hadn't even been 3 seconds. It was effortless, a total contrast to Han Thu's struggle. The gap in our skill was a vast canyon. How is he that good? Someone whispered. Another reminded them that I was the one who taught them. Han Thu snapped out of it first. Chief, I have practiced for years and I am still blind. Teach us. They all leaned in, eyes wide with a desperate hunger for the secret. Teach us how to shoot. Chief, I offered a small smile. I can show you the way, but your foundation is still too weak. Wait, what? They looked at each other in total confusion, unable to believe what they were hearing. I ignored their disbelief and kept my voice low. The secret to mastery is actually quite simple. You must learn to see the small things. Look at that quiver over there. How many arrows are inside? I pointed to a basket near the targets. Every head turned, eyes squinting at the bundle of bamboo. People started shouting numbers 15, 16, 17. I just glanced once and said 16. The man who said 17 counted the cracked one twice. Then Na frowned, his mind racing to keep up. He ran to the quiver and dumped them out, exactly 16. One had a split tail, deceiving the eye. Han Thu looked at me like I was a ghost. Chief, what does counting wood have to do with archery? Everything, I said. There was once a master named Yang Yuji who knew the secret of the eye. I told him his legend to shoot straight. You done T, look at the target. You look through it. Start by counting every leaf on the trees outside your huts. It seems impossible, but you must try. Stare at a single grain of corn from across the yard. Do it until that tiny speck looks massive. When that grain fills your entire vision, you will never miss a shot again. I kept the rest hidden. If you can see a fly like a wagon wheel, the arrow will find its home. I felt focused. I returned to my seat and signaled for the match to go on. The warriors remained dead silent. Some looked enlightened, while others were still lost in the fog of my words, struggling to understand. But they got the point. It was Teeth the bow. It was their own perception that was holding them back. The excuses stopped instantly. They went back to the line, humbled by the sheer depth of the craft. The scores did improve that afternoon. In fact, most of them shot worse than they ever had before, but no one walked away. They finally saw the mountain they had to climb. Tomorrow, the real work begins. The archers' focus sharpened while the grunts and slams of wrestling echoed louder than ever. Out of everyone, these 12 stood at the top. We had hand-picked the best from every squad. Fate, however, had a twisted sense of humor, pairing Thana against Thek Fong in the ring. They stepped into the circle, and Thana flashed a grin. Guess it is time to settle this, he teased. Thek Fong just looked miserable. Look, big brother, Thek Fong started. But Thana did not wait. He lunged, his fingers locking onto the kid's collar like a vice. In one fluid motion, he swept Thek Fong's legs and torched his balance with a hip toss, slamming him into the dirt instantly. The crowd went silent. Nobody expected Thana to use Thek Fong's own signature move against him with such brutal efficiency. I could not help but chuckle. Talk about a taste of your own medicine, I muttered. Beside me, Min Kwang looked like he had swallowed a fly. He glared at Lei Ho, his jaw tight. Your boy is a snake. He definitely learned those dirty tricks from you. Did he not? Lei Ho just laughed it off. Do not blame me. Because your kid got played? He tried that move first. It is just poetic justice. Knowing he had lost the argument, Min Kwang went quiet. His eyes burned as he watched the Fong scramble up from the dust. Surprisingly, Thek Fong took it well. He just rubbed his sore rear and gave his opponent a nod. Fair play. Nah, I am done. We are even now, Thana replied, waving him off. The matches continued until the sun began to dip, thinning the herd. Finally, the dust settled on our champions, Tang Nuuk, Thana Makdep, Vong Da, Hongdach, and the Dark Horse, Bach Tho. It was a bloodbath for the favorites. Sichna got crushed by Hongdach, and then Mok was dismantled by Bach Tho's relentless pressure. Back in my old life, they would call those massive upsets. Seeing Sech no fail actually seemed to cheer Min Kwang up for a moment. He even started smirking, offering Lei Ho some fake sympathy since they were now in the same boat, such as the game of winners. The archery rounds were not delivering the fire we needed, so for the finale, I combined raw strength and combat into one gauntlet. When the smoke cleared, only 3 remained. Then Makdep, and Bach Tho. Bach Tho defied every single expectation to get there. The tribe was buzzing. Lei Ho and Min Kwang were mourning their son's losses, but their grief was overshadowed by pure, unadulterated shock. Everyone knew Sich Na and Thek Fong were the heavy hitters. Seeing them fall meant only one thing to the rest of the tribe. The victors were on another level, and in the Kong clan, where we were desperate for elite warriors, that power is exactly the goal. After 4 grueling days, the atmosphere was electric. I stood before the people to announce the birth of our newest legends, Than Nao, Makdep, Bach Tho. I shouted, you 3 are the victors of this trial. You have earned your place in our history. I promised them the world Meridian Awakening, custom forged bows, and their choice of the finest mounts in the entire herd. A roar erupted from the Kong people, shaking the trees. The 3 winners looked like they were about to float off the ground. That is enough for today. Go. I signaled, then I turned to Lei Ho, get the schoolhouse ready. Lessons resume at sunrise tomorrow. Lei Ho nodded and headed out. I caught Hendu's eye next. Take the winners to the deer pens. Show them how to ride. Once they have picked their mounts and learned the ropes, bring them to my quarters. He saluted and led the boys away. Finally, I turned Min Kwang. He looked defeated. I cannot believe my boy choked like that, he sighed, shaking his head. I offered a small smile. You had high hopes for him. Did you not? He just shrugged, the weight of disappointment heavy on him. The competition was just too fierce. He admitted those 3 are monsters. Thek Fong never really stood a chance against them. Then his eyes narrowed, but Bach Tho, that kid is a ghost. He never says a word, yet he fought like a demon today. It is a blessing for the clan, he continued. Having someone that lethal come out of nowhere changes everything for our future. I nodded slowly. The stronger they are, the safer we all sleep. I paused, testing the waters. What about the ones who lost? Min Kwang thought for a second. Sichna has heart and power, but his aim is trash. He is a brawler, not a marksman. Vong Day is solid across the board. He added, good with a bow, decent strength, but he does not have that killer instinct yet. Than Mok is the best shot we have besides Han Thu, but he's physically brittle. That is why he folded under the pressure. Then there is Hongdach. The man is a tank, but he is aging, and his precision with a bow is average at best. I listened as he dissected the top 12 with a soldier's eye, nodding along until he finally ran out of breath. If I had one more slot, I asked quietly, one more mount, one more bow, who would you give it to? He blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. He searched my face, trying to find the catch in my voice. If I had to choose, he said tentatively, I would go with Than Mok. You cannot teach that kind of accuracy. We need eyes. I shook my head, a grin tugging at my lips. Wrong, it is Thek Fong. He froze, looking at me like I had lost it. Thek Fong, he repeated. I just nodded. He is not the strongest or the best shot, but he is a sharp thinker. His mind is sharp. He just has not found the right focus yet. Otherwise, with that talent, he would be a total beast. Truth be told, if he actually went all out against Than Ai, even the big boss would struggle to win. Min Kwang's face turned crimson as he panted. He knew it was true, but immediately felt overstepped and bowed fast. A great leader, I didn't mean, please. I waved him off. True talent shouldn't have to hide behind fake politeness. He gripped his fists, eyes burning with new fire. Chief, don't worry, I'll push Shuofeng to hit that top 3. I just smiled and shook my head. Don't wait for next time. We are doing this right now. But why? Min Kwang stammered, completely blindsided. You said only the top 3 winners get the prize. I laughed. Rules are for the dead. I meant for the living. If it helps the clan, why follow old scripts? We are growing fast, and time is a luxury. Why wait for a next time that might never even come? Then, what about Than Mok? He asked, still hesitating. I sighed, looking at the boy's slight frame. He is too light for the deer. He can handle the kick. Let him pick from the horses or the does. Min Kwang looked lost. I explained, Than Mok isn't a brawler, but his aim is terrifyingly precise. Putting him on the front line is a death sentence. But in the shadows, he's a goddamn ghost. A ghost, Min Kwang muttered. I just laughed. He didn't need to understand the art of the sniper yet. Just wait, you'll see. He nodded, his mind racing as he realized I was playing a different game. So we're giving away all 8 ISEKAI'd deer and 7 horses. I gave him a firm, final nod. Hand them all out, but keep the 4 does back for breeding. We need a future, not just a moment. The horses are tools for war, but those deer are a legacy. We can use them all up at once. Min Kwang's eyes sparkled with realization. Understood. I leaned in to finalize the roster of warriors. Then A.S. set, Shuofeng and the others take the stags. The rest get the horses. Get it done. Han Tho led the group to the elk pens. Since he and Than were already set, they supervised. The 4 men were buzzing with adrenaline as they approached the giants. They were picking their own destiny. They chose names like Summer Solstice and Moon Watcher. You could feel the pure joy radiating off them. Han Tho walked them through it. The stirrups, the mounting, and how to breathe in sync with the beast. He taught them exactly what I had mastered. It was the birth of a new kind of power. They were like kids with new toys, obsessed and unwilling to let go of the reins for even a second. The afternoon vanished. They didn't come back to report. They were too busy becoming one with the animals. I didn't care. I told Min Kwang take the next group to the horse stables instead. Chief, 4 horses are named, but what about the other 3? He asked, looking for guidance. Let them name their own. A man should know the name of the beast he dies with. He stared. I waved him away before he could ask more. He left with a confused look, unable to grasp it. I took a long, deep breath. One hurdle down, but tomorrow I have to pass on the gift. It's going to be a long day. The next morning, the whole crew showed up, eyes burning with hunger. They knew today the great leader would finally reveal the secrets of the bow and the inner power. I threw on my best furs and sat there like a king. In this world, image is everything. 15 people shoved into my room. It's the biggest house in the village, but it felt tiny today. Chief, they roared, bowing in unison. I could feel the weight of their loyalty pressing against me. Listen up, I said, cutting the silence. The rule was 3 people, but the world is changing fast. We need warriors, not just winners. So 9 of you are getting the training today. Frontliners get the elk, the rest get horses. I've matched each beast to your specific strength. Understood, they shouted back. I saw the tension finally bleed out of several men's shoulders. They finally saw the logic. It wasn't tied about the contest anymore. It was about building a legion. It's a lot of work, I added. I can do everyone at once. We will go in shifts. 4 a day, training first, then we craft your bows. No shortcuts, no complaints. Nobody said a word. Then, Shuofeng, you re-up first, the rest of you wait outside. The air turned cold as I prepared to share the power. The real work was just beginning. To maintain a fragile peace, I handpicked 2 horse riders and 2 elk riders for the ritual. I couldn't risk petty jealousy poisoning the ranks this early. The others were dismissed immediately. Han Tho led the rest away to bond with their beasts, leaving the chosen 4 trembling. Then, step forward. I commanded. He dropped to his knees, head bowed in total submission. I sighed inwardly. This deification was dangerous, but their blind faith was my only leverage now. I gave a cryptic nod to the others, sending them out before I began the grueling process. My palm pressed against his skull. 30 minutes of soul-draining energy transfer later, I was gasping. It is finished. I whispered, go feel the change. Send Sakfong in to face me. I repeated the agony for Sakfong, then Thenma, and finally Vong Die. I felt hollow. When the last one left, I stood up on shaky legs, testing my own fading reserves. I could likely empower 2 more, but doing so would leave me bedridden for a week. I had bows to craft anyway. I needed to see what kind of monsters I'd created. Outside, the 4 were twitching, feeling the raw power vibrating under their skin like a fever. They looked at me with a terrifying kind of awe. I was no longer their leader. Well, I asked, masking my exhaustion. Then a step forward, his eyes burning with dark light. I'm a Titan, Chief. My pull is heavier, my fists are lightning, and I feel invincible. I nodded slowly, turning to the others, and Sakfong grinned, teeth white and sharp. If I fought Than again right now, I'd break him. He bragged, the air curdled. You want to bet your life on that? Then challenged. The tension became a physical weight. They vanished toward the training grounds. I turned my heavy gaze toward the remaining 2 men. Denmark stared at his hands. My old bow, it feels like a brittle toy now. Vongda just nodded, his muscles rippling unnaturally. Their humanity was fading, replaced by something sharper. Try this one, I said, handing over Handu's massive recurved bow. It was built for giants. They recognized the weapon instantly. It was a legend, something no normal man could even flex. Danmok took it, his fingers tracing the grip. He planted his feet and hauled back. The heavy wood groaned. He pulled it into a perfect crescent. Vongda let out a gasp. That bow was a beast. Nobody but Henla was ever supposed to bend it an inch. It was a custom-made monster. Most men in the tribe would tear a muscle just lifting it. Seeing him bend it like a twig was chilling. Then Mok didn't stop at the halfway point. He took a breath like a storm and yanked it back even further, past the limit. His strength was unnatural. He held it steady while the bow screamed under the immense pressure. He handed it back, his eyes glowing with a dangerous ambition. I turned to Vongda. He'd been hesitant, but seeing his peer's success lit a fire of pure envy in him. My turn, he hissed. He snatched the bow and pulled it wide, his knuckles turning white. It's true, he whispered, looking in his hands as if they belonged to a powerful stranger. I'll build your new weapons tonight. I promised, though my heart felt like a lead weight. Nearby, Therna and Sakfong were tearing into each other. It wasn't a spar anymore. Then Know-how was more experienced, but the raw hunger in the younger man was closing the gap. He dodged a haymaker and planted a kick into Sakfong's ribs with bone-shattering force. He swept the kid's legs out and pinned him. The fight ended, but the hunger did too. Sakfong spat blood and glared. One day, oh man, I'll be the one standing over you. Damna just smirked. I'm looking forward to it. You've got a long way to go. First you, then hand those phone growled. Then I'll be the one calling the shots. They were already carving up the throne. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was feeding the wolves that would eventually devour me. My gift was my death warrant. Who wants the crown? No one wanted hell. They backed away fast. Too much weight, they said. I'd rather just... I laughed, feeling bitter. Leader just rot. They stood frozen silent. We need your strength. Their oaths were desperate. Forged of steel. I tested their grip. Metal my call. Precision saves our lives. Narrow frames fly faster. Only the stronghold. Fire wasn't enough. They defail without me. I had the secrets. Triple layers killed better. Their hands were clumsy. Mount I ordered. Find our future wives. Honor, not just theft. Hope flared in them. The village was dying. No girls remained here. The old ways failed. No future, no hope. The math was cruel. Food was running low. I changed the laws. No more living shadows. Yes, Commander, they shouted. One boy stayed behind. Can I pick strong? I asked him why. Strong blood breeds giants. He knew the math. Ask Scout's kid. He ran off, cheering. I sighed, giving in. He turned back once. Who's your queen? I just watched. My mind drifted to fantasies of a tall, elegant woman while the world outside rotted in the rain. 3 days ago, I passed my strength to the riders and handed them their new bows. Every man is desperate to prove himself, but the endless storm keeps us all pinned down. This gray misery has lasted 72 hours, trapping me inside these damp mud brick walls. The cold has settled in, turning the dirt floors to ice and stalling the children's progress. I kept the central fires burning day and night, fighting to keep the tribe's spirit from freezing. Every 2 days I slog out to the slave huts to ensure our laborers haven't died yet. The captives are huddled in the wet straw, too broken by the weather to even think of running. I spent the downtime breaking the remaining elk, binding them to my wool one by one. They're wild and stubborn when I'm away, but they turn into lambs the moment I appear. With 8 elk and 4 horses ready, we finally have the mobility to change our destiny. My men spent every free moment bonding with their beasts, waiting for the sky to clear. By the 4th day, the downpour finally let up, and the heavy gray clouds began to thin. We've been living in this gloom for 17 days. The elders say the rains usually last 20. A sharp sense of dread hit me as I realized how little time we have left to act. When the mud dries, we have to secure wives' meat, and more mounts before the winter hits. I need to find crops and livestock before the other tribes emerge from their holes, starving. We used to hunt in shifts to avoid trouble, but this hunger will bring everyone out at once. Once the rain stops, the woods will be crawling with every desperate hunter in the region. The prey stays close to the forest for now, but they will vanish into the plains soon enough. When men are this hungry, blood spills easy. I can already feel the coming conflict. The grasslands will explode in green, and the herds will surely start the migration south. Everything is coming to a head. I have to move my people before we lose our chance. It's a race for food and power. We either strike now or we die in the mud. I gathered my captains and looked them in the eye, asking if they were truly ready to ride. My lead scout grinned, reporting his beast could finally handle a steady gallop without throwing him. The others nodded, claiming their mounts now understood every hand signal and whispered command. I told them if the beasts were ready, then we moved today. Rain or no rain. The room practically hummed with excitement. These men were starving for more than just meat. I gave them one rule: kill what you can, but done to you dare lose your mount. We train in the mud because when the sun comes out, the world becomes a battlefield. I expected them to be afraid, but these men have forgotten what it's like to feel fear. They rolled up their sleeves, radiating a dark energy that made my own blood run cold. They boasted that with our new steel and our beasts, no one in this valley could touch us. One yelled that any fool who tried to rob us would end up in the slave pits. They cursed the dragon tribe for selling out. wishing they could have hunted them down instead. Then they started eyeing the black crows, talking about taking their people as if they were cattle. I stood there in silence, realizing I'd turned my young warriors into something truly dangerous. High morale is a blessing, but this kind of bloodlust is a fire that can consume us all. I cut through the noise, reminding them that we were hunting animals, not neighboring tribes. I told them to settle down. We need to grow our own strength before we go looking for trouble. The room went quiet, and I could see the disappointment etched into their hardened faces. They aren't just looking to survive anymore. They want to dominate, and that realization was chilling. I gave them a cold smile, promising that while we start the fight, we will finish it. The light returned to their eyes. Savage, predatory spark that told me everything had changed. Fine, I signaled Drizzle sending strike now. Snag horses and elk alive need livestock. No catch. No laughter erupted. Quiet prep nets and bolas move. Any cowards no good. Let's hunt it. Mount up 50 lates only go big. Their eyes burned. Our halls were legendary. I knew every head yet in these woods. With armor and mounts we felt godly. Dawn broke dry. The dragon was ready. It's a ruse. 5-day storm is coming. A tactical gift. Move before the mud. Sludge everywhere. I'll pave this village later. 50 killers followed. Why these men asked. Dry now doesn't mean dry later. I snapped. Look up, Grey Tom's death is watching. Others out, he asked. I scanned shadows. Only the desperate. Most are hiding, shivering. Hunger drives them. We are the exceptions. He smirked. We refed, armored, and ready. Cloaks aren't magic. Storms still kill you. In real floods, you hide or die. We have you. They have nothing. He boasted. Arrogance, a virus was blinding my men. They treated other tribes like dirt today. My drills worked. Unity became lethal pride. Modern tactics turned humble men into monsters. Overconfidence kills. We needed to stay humble. My people were becoming the raiders now. I prayed for silence. Then I howled, calling my shadow the Wolf King's fury. After the elk, I never hunt alone. 20 shadows emerged. Big kill today, I said. He agreed. Our pact was written in blood. His face is a map of war. That scar was a crown of steel. Suit you, I signaled. He loomed closer. Want one I can match your set. I laughed. Pass, he huffed in challenge. Healed fast. My medicine worked. I noted. I'm faster, growing stronger. I feel fire. I nodded. Remember who saved your life. He circled me. Brothers in blood always. Good, then let's go. The harvest began. 50 men and 30 wolves entered fog. We moved like shadows through the brush, eyes fixed on the step. The alpha must have vouched for me. He gave the signal, and 4 scouts fanned out a mile ahead. They were the tip of our spear. These wild killers were testing the great woods. My own boys, led by Boss, wouldn't be outshone. They trailed the wild 4, eyes narrowed in silent competition. This wasn't a team, it was a powder keg. The wild pack bared teeth, but Boss just trotted past. He didn't care about their primitive posturing. They sniffed the air, claiming the earth. I saw the alpha watch them with cold, murderous hatred. He looked at me with respect, but in my companions, pure malice. They were traitors to the blood. They smelled like humanity to a wild god like him. That scent was a goddamn insult. I felt the friction between the 2 packs, a low-frequency war. One day, the alpha will realize. He will realize I didn't make him a partner. I made him a pet. I kept that thought buried. For now, the arrangement worked. He hunts, I lead. We share the kill. Simple, no strings attached. I do not feed them or vet them. They stay wild. I stay safe, or so I thought. Suddenly, the scouts returned with Bean. The air grew thick. Something big was waiting in the shadows. The wild scout growled at the king. Bean chattered back at me. It was a bizarre, fractured report. They shook their heads and rolled in the dirt. A strange, frantic pantomime. It looked almost wrong. The alpha locked eyes with me. He had seen the prize. I saw the hunger reflecting in his pupils. Bean and the wild scout were locked in a staring contest. Neither was willing to blink first. The intel was clear, a massive herd ahead. Horned beasts, some with 1, some with 2, some many. A sea of ivory and muscle. I cannot tell the species from Bean's frantic gestures and growls. The king understood his scout perfectly, same blood. I was just a translator of shadows. Bean was smart, though. He described the shapes with terrifying precision. He knew what I wanted. Single horns meant rhinos, double horns maybe cattle, no horns meant horses, fast and elusive. But the multi-horned one is. Elk or moose were the real prize. I needed them as mounts for the tribe. My heart hammered. This was a conquest. I had to see them myself. I could not wait. I needed to map the layout, count the heads, and plan the strike. Ambition is a dangerous drug. The alpha sensed my hesitation. He knew the value of a plan. He was waiting for my move. I patted Bean's head and turned to the king. I need a closer look before we kill. Are you with me, or do I go alone? I challenged. The beast tilted his head, weighing me. Let us go. He seemed to say. We stepped forward, man and a monster, walking into the tall grass. Behind us, the 2 packs followed in a tense, unnatural truce. Anyone watching would have been horrified. It was a freak show being pushed ahead, trying to outpace the wild scout, showing off his rank. He was playing the lead dog role too hard. It was arrogant. It was a fatal mistake. The wild scout did not growl. He just watched Bean with a cold, predatory indifference that chilled me. I felt a knot tighten in my gut. Silence is more dangerous than a roar always. Like the saying, the dog that bites does not bark. The wild scout struck like a coiled viper. 1 second, Bean was boosting. The next, the scout's jaws were inches from his throat. I gasped. The king did not move. He looked like an old judge. Their fight, he signaled with his eyes. He expected Bean to die. He wanted the traitor purged, but I knew something he did not. Bean was not just a dog. He was a monster I'd forged in survival and speed. Just as the teeth grazed his fur, Bean launched himself 3 feet into the air. Pure gravity. He evaded the strike and came down like a hammer, pinning the scout into the dirt. The scout tried to roll, but Bean was faster. He locked his jaws onto the wild wolf's neck. The scout froze. He felt the raw, lethal power of a superior predator. Bean was not playing. The king let out a low, warning rumble. Bean finally let go, baring bloody teeth at the kin. My blood ran cold. Bean was not just defending himself. He was challenging the throne. God help us. I knew my crew was cold, but Bean's savagery didn't even shock me when he dropped that scout. Bean looked small and malnourished, but unlike those street dogs, he'd been fed well at my table. He was stronger than he looked, plus I'd used every trick to turn him into a lethal weapon. The kid was a natural-born shark, probably faking weakness just to lure the other guy into a trap. But when he barked at the boss, I nearly lost it. I knew Bean was a backstabbing snake. He's the type to hide in the shadows and strike when you're bleeding, but now he's acting tough. Luckily, the boss had too much pride to squash a bug and just growled at the kid instead. I almost cracked a smile hearing the boss rumble a warning that sounded like a death sentence. He basically told the brat to watch his back. The scout just crawled away, tail between his legs. It was pathetic. Bean had clearly left a permanent scar on that man's ego and his will. The standoff ended there. I could feel the friction between the old guard and my new recruits. I gave Bean a sharp look, and he immediately fell in line, acting like a loyal little soldier. The other scout looked completely broken as he followed us. I chuckled as we hiked toward the objective. We finally met up with the heavy hitters and the rest of the crew. They stayed far apart. I was blown away by the pure venom they had for anyone they considered a traitor to the cause. I pushed through the brush and saw the target. It was a massive haul, bigger than last time. 20 heavy trucks, maybe 100 luxury sedans, and dozens of smaller bikes were all lined up. There were at least 180 smaller transport vans too. But one thing was missing from the report. 30 armored couriers were there too. I was gutted though. No high-value bullion trucks in the mix. I guess I was dreaming. Getting that lucky twice in 1 year is basically a statistical impossibility. Those big hauls are usually buried deep in the city or heavily guarded. I let out a long sigh. It was a shame, but we had enough transport here to move the whole neighborhood if we had to. The specs matched our needs perfectly. Most of these models were identical to the ones we'd already stolen. I pivoted the plan immediately. We grabbed the vans and the sedans and leave the heavy trucks alone. No point wasting hours on the armor when we could secure the fleet and be gone in minutes. For a crew like ours, mobility is everything. If we have the wheels, we own these city streets. I'd thought about taking a heavy truck, but the risk of getting caught was just way too high. I've seen what happens to guys who get greedy. I looked at the layout of the loading dock. No easy exits here. Just a single wall of thick, overgrown hedges where we're currently hiding out. I had it all mapped out. I looked at the boss and gave him a quick, sharp nod. He got the message. He stood up and followed me back to where the main team was waiting. The boss just sat there, waiting for my orders like he'd finally accepted I was running this show. I wondered if these guys were actually learning strategy or if survival just makes everyone act the same. We didn't have time for complex traps. We'd have to pin them against the hedges from 3 sides. Mun, take half the guy's left hand, take the right. Keep the engines quiet as you move. Use the mufflers I gave you, 1 loud rev, and this whole score goes up in smoke. The riders prepped their gear. The boss led his crew around the front to cut off the exit. First wave takes out the guards on the perimeter. Then we move in and hit the locks. The men shouted their agreement. I turned to my muscle, the guy we call the Iron Wall. Listen, don't just break everything. There's sensitive cargo in there that we need to sell intact. He perked up immediately. You tell me what to hit and I'll make sure it stays down. Stay in the shadows. I told him if the heavies move, let them. Just stop the runners. He agreed with a toothy grin. I led 10 of my best guys toward the main entrance. It was a long trek to the front of the lot, right where the highway began. By the time we hit our marks, the trap was set. The news was finally beginning to tighten. I crouched low, brush masking my face as an armored dragon prepared to ambush from the shadows. I signaled Tang and Fong. My team was ready to strike. I drew my bow and sighted the herd, giving the final knot. Arrows hissed. Not a single shot missed its mark that day. Flitting bodies hit the dirt. The herd descended into total chaos. I vaulted up and slung a heavy stone into the deer. I roared. My warriors followed, screaming and throwing stones in unison. Even the Wolf King changed his tune, letting out a massive howl. The pack joined in, charging hard at the panicked Sika deer. He had learned exactly when to be loud from our previous hunts. Our cries and howls collided, sending the herd scattering in terror. Mows and horses ran blind. Go get the deer, I yelled. 10 riders charged, thundering straight into the panicked, massive herd. We were on them instantly. The panic became absolute and uncontrollable. With the plains blocked, they had to turn toward the side flanks. Horses and deer circled back, but the giant mows were lost. Those giants aren't built for running through the thick, deep woods. Archers cut down 30 more animals from both the left and right. Stones rained from above. The forest screamed with neighs and bleats. The rhinos stayed calm, slowly looking for a safe way out. They charged toward the only quiet thicket left in their path. It wasn't their favorite spot, but it was their only hope. I grinned, forget the rhinos, secure every other beast. Yes, chief, they yelled. They ignored the heavy, lumbering beasts. We snagged dozens of horses and deer on the outer flanks. The sheep in the middle were much harder to trap. The herd followed the rhinos into the brush, seeking any escape. But the gap was too tight. They jammed together, tail to nose. Fire, I barked, targeting the outer circle of the bottleneck. My tribe unleashed a volley into the crowded, panicked mess. Every arrow hit. Some animals took 3 arrows at once. The screams faded. Most sheep and deer were already down. Only the horses stood. Use the slings, I commanded loudly. My warriors swapped weapons, snaring 15 horses in an instant. I saw the chance again. Get everyone a mount today. The men went wild, throwing ropes into the heart of the fray. The Wolf King played it smart, patrolling the outer perimeter. He ignored the fast ones and picked off the weak links. Anything trying to escape met a wall of sharp wolf fangs. Small deer and even mows were dragged down and finished. I didn't mind the male mows dying. I kept commanding. The trap tightened. The herd had nowhere left to run. They waited for the rhinos to clear the path out. Suddenly, a deep, angry rhino grunt echoed from the thicket. A dragon's roar answered, shaking the very earth beneath us. I watched the final rhino vanish, but the drake's roar signaled a nightmare. My eye twitched. The beast was causing chaos again. I just knew it. No time to check the dragon. I saw a better chance ahead. The herd hit a bottleneck in the brush, slowing to a dead crawl. My eyes lit up. Now throw everything, catch them all. We threw the bolas. The field became a mess of tangled limbs. Over 100 were down. Many more were hit by our arrows. I scanned the field as the rest pushed through the scrub. 60 horses and sheep remained. I wanted every single one. Take them all, I barked. 30 horses were already on the ground. We hit the jackpot. I cheered and ordered the tribal warriors. Half tie the prey, the rest help the Wolf King surround them. The men froze, all of them. Yes, these are your future mounts. Focus on the horses. Don't let a single one get away. How do we move them? Just shut up and surround them. An incredible hunt began. We trapped 60 beasts in a tight ring. None escaped. We finally had the mounts our party needed, but as we finished, a furious roar erupted from the thicket. Frantic rhino bellows echoed first. They sounded cornered and dying. Then the drake's irritable growl. I cursed that armored idiot's name. Those are rhinos, I whispered, terrified of the impending massacre. Don't he die, lizard. I ordered the horses tied and sent help. I told Mine Kwang to take 30 men to assist the wolves. I grabbed 2 men and sprinted toward the drake's furious roar. I broke through the brush and the scene stopped me cold. The drake was battered, but he blocked 7 rhinos alone. 4 others lay dying nearby in a pool of fresh blood. The drake had attacked the herd and killed 4 in seconds. He was a wall. The rhinos charged him in a blind rage. That is why he was bleeding. Bows up, aim for the eyes. I signaled my men to fire before the drake was crushed. 20 men fired at the 7 rhinos, hit their eyes. I roared. Most arrows bounced off, but 2 found their marks perfectly. The blinded rhinos went berserk. Scatter, I yelled to my men. I screamed at the drake to move. He snorted and stepped aside. The healthy rhinos bolted into the trees and vanished instantly. 2 wounded ones tried to flee. Don't let them escape. I cried. The drake perked up and smashed a rhino's gut with his tail. A loud crack echoed. The beast fell, wailing in pure agony. I pointed to the last one. The drake leveled it instantly. 6 rhinos lay defeated. I was stunned by the drake's power. I marched over, glaring. I told you to hunt easy pre. The drake grumbled. I lets him go, but the bird isn't here. Where is the egg-laying bird you promised me, human? I stared at him. You killed them because you wanted a bird? My fuse is short today. If these eggs aren't crushed, someone's getting leveled. The chief's temper is a wildfire. After soothing the beast, we start butchering. We pack the horsemen high, then head back to regroup with Min Kwang. The kill floor is organized chaos. We've got the live ones penned tight. Min Kwang's eyes light up. Chief, you're back. What's the final status? 31 elk and goats down, 3 giant birds, 2 horses that sit. He's practically vibrating. We didn't just kill. We captured a literal fortune. 20 goats, 34 elk, 4 birds, and 57 horses all live. I blinked. Sure, I misheard that impossible number, 57 horses. Truly, I'm ecstatic. Have 57. Every soldier finally gets a mount today. The men stare in awe. I led them to the jackpot of the century. But reality sets in. How do we move an entire army of animals? I wave off the worry. We caught them. We'll find a way home. You want to tame 50 horses in this forest? That's pure suicide, chief. Storm's coming. I look to the Wolf King. Time to call a favor. We're brothers, right? I asked the alpha. He huffs a breath of iron. Herd these elk and goats back to my tribe. Do this for me. We done visit tribes. He growls. My pack won't end up broken. He looks at our captive beasts with disgust. He fears losing his edge. I get it. He doesn't want his hunters turning into pathetic village dogs. Just get them close. I'll pay you triple. The wolf's ears finally twitch. He's a negotiator. He wants more meat than we ever agreed on before. Blood brothers or not, the price just went up. This wolf knows value. He can't count, but he knows a raw deal when he smells one. I've got a debt mountain anyway. What's a few more carcasses to me? Fine, I tell him. Name your price. Just get the herd moving now. I want more, he says. Just more. I hide a smirk at him. If you can't eat it all, store it with us. We'll keep it. No storage. I've got pups to feed right now. Then he catches scent. He's suspicious, but I keep him focused. We have a massive job here. Surround the horses. Keep the elk tight. Don't let a single hoof slip. All the dead game is yours. I point to the piles of meat. Every bird and scrap. The Wolf King tilts his head and finally agrees. With the pack as our muscle, the impossible trek home looks doable now. We strip tendons to make ropes, binding the captives in rows of 3. It's a chain gang of beasts, 10 rows deep, locked tight and heavy. 20 rows of horses follow, a massive interconnected pulse of muscle and fur. If one tries to bolt, the weight of the 100 anchors them down. Coordination is hard for men. It's impossible for wild things. They're stuck. The brush is too thick for a stampede. Nature itself is our prison. 40 warriors flank the line in pairs, spears leveled and eyes sharp. A wolf shadows every 2 rows, a wall of teeth on either side. We're an armored convoy. Nothing in this forest is stupid enough to attack. It's a slow, agonizing crawl, but we're saving every ounce of our strength. I signal the scouts to move out. The long walk home begins now. The Alpha and I anchored the center, managing a convoy that looked bizarre but moved with lethal precision. We pushed off immediately, though a few stubborn elk at the lead initially fought the rhythm of our march. Our pace through the thick timber finally smoothed out, just as the sky decided to turn against us. The clouds broke into a heavy downpour that stalled our progress, forcing the elk and horses to a dead stop. They wouldn't budge an inch despite my prodding, leaving me no choice but a call for a full halt. We scrambled to build makeshift lean-tos from spears and animal hides, sheltering the men and our prizes from the deluge. We had to wait for the storm to break. Those horses were the future of our tribe, and far too valuable to risk. Fortunately, the torrential rain lasted less than 1 hour before it finally began to taper off in a light mist. With the skies clearing slightly, the herd grew restless and ready to move, so we resumed our journey home. We hadn't traveled far when the entire column suddenly buckled to a stop, leaving me confused and on edge. Before I could demand an explanation, Min Kwang came charging back from the front on his mount, looking worried. He hissed that our scouts had spotted trouble. A group of strangers was lying in wait just off the trail ahead. I asked for a head count, but he just shook his head, unable to get a clear report from the wolves. The beasts were snarling in warning, but their complex vocalizations were a language Min Kwang couldn't yet decipher. Even if he understood the growls, wolves don't exactly have a concept for numbers or counting enemy combatants. I turned to the Wolf King, communicating through low guttural sounds to explain that an ambush was likely imminent. I told my 4-legged brother to stay back and guard the herd, ensuring our hard-won prizes didn't bolt during a fight. I requested 10 of his strongest hunters to join me, and the Alpha gave a sharp, understanding nod of agreement. He circled the pack, barking out rapid-fire instructions to the chosen 10 who would serve as my lethal vanguard. Those wolves fixed me with a knowing gaze, clearly accepting my authority under the Wolf-kin's specific orders. I then turned to my armored behemoth, commanding it to crush any animal that dared to break rank and run. On second thought, I realized I needed that heavy muscle up front and signaled for the creature to follow me. I mounted the beast and reached the front, ordering the men on foot to stay low while the riders prepared. I told everyone to ready their bows and spears, and then began moving through the ranks to set our defense. 10 riders detached from the main group and flanked me, their faces grim as we moved toward the potential kill zone. I leaned in and whispered that we had hostiles waiting for us just a few yards up the road. I asked them what they thought the strangers wanted, though the answer was written in the tension of the air. Every man gave the same answer. They were here to rob us of everything we had worked for. I told them we'd check it out. If they were just travelers, we'd pass, but if they moved, we'd strike. A low chorus of agreement followed as we crept forward, ready to turn the hunters into the hunted. I gave a low signal to the 10 wolves, and they vanished into the brush, flanking the trail like ghosts. As we advanced, we first crossed paths with 1 scout wolf, then 2 more further down the path. The final pair of scouts was positioned perfectly, showing that the pack had already organized a sophisticated reconnaissance web. My confidence grew seeing the wolves' coordination as we neared the spot where Min Kwang had spotted the intruders. Peering through the leaves, I counted 60 or 70 figures huddled in the shadows, waiting for us to pass. They thought they were hidden, but their attempt at an ambush was amateurish and painfully easy to spot. Each man was trying to hide behind a trunk, but they were leaving huge gaps in their cover and profile. I had personally trained my men in the art of forest stealth, and these amateurs didn't stand a chance. Looking at their sloppy positions from our vantage point, I almost wanted to laugh at their childish lack of skill. Min Kwang pointed toward a dense thicket, noting that the furs they wore looked strangely familiar to him. I followed his gaze and spotted a patch of bright blood-red animal skin poking out from behind a bush. The sight of that specific color triggered a memory, and I felt a cold surge of recognition hit me. Min Kwang whispered that those specific pelts were identical to the ones we kept in our own tribal stores. It clicked then. These were raiders from the Black Tooth tribe, likely looking for revenge for their captured kin. That scarlet fur is unmistakable. It only comes from the red foxes that prowl the deep woods to the west. Fight I smirked, debates over. Krause identified, no talk, Min is stunned. No mercy for invaders. At our kill them. Cold rage, they tried once. Rocks missed, I'm no saint. Neither saint nor pushover strike back. Vengeance is history's lesson. Some souls are born rotten, like the Manglong traitors. Spared once, they raided twice. Krause are lazy, parasitic filth. Hiding again, they never learn. Spineless cowards since ancient times. Thieves and invaders, always shameless. I'm done, no more patience. Fool once, ever twice. Spare them once, my mistake. Smile, watch them fumble, charge. Minza terrified of me. My eyes wanted blood. Chief, too many shivered. Last bunch is bigger. Watch. Mounted, my beast, game's over. No traps, pure power follower. Hunters roared, I kicked hard. The beast knew blood time. Roar, charge, ground shaking. Spurred mouth pronounce absolute chaos. Silk surge finally free. Come dodge, I screamed. Pinned, flushing them out. Panicked rats, they broke cover. How did he know, they shrieked. Stand fast, their leader lied. Then they saw the monsters. Riders, demons, fear broke them. No more hiding, clubs gripped. Desperate, they stood almost sad. Weak cries, I laughed loose. 11 bows, death rained down. Bodies dropped, leaders scream and charge. 60 men with sticks, pathetic. They want death. Volley fire, next spears out. 6 fetly. 50 left, total slaughter. Rain meant kill or starve. Mud makes wounds fatal. We needed their meat. We were dead wrong. His spear found. Brother died mids. He never even looked. The dragon's tail roared. 3 shattered, none rose. The trap snapped shut. Their mounts were demons. Hooves crushed our skulls. 10 men, endless blood. Guts spill, skulls cracked. I've died in seconds. Blind rage took over. Sticks against fate, suicide. He howled, wolves answered. Great death from shadows. The wolves were theirs. Too late. He mocked our end. Trap, no way out.